Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it, thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description. Dragonslayer by KitsuneDragon. He said he saw great potential in my small body and he raised me. Because of him I lived, I learned, and I finally found someone I could call friend, even if he didn't call me the same. I am his son. I am his student, the Dragonslayer of Acnologia. I don't own anything. Adios.
Crocus, Fury, year X784. It's been a whole week, Shukaku stated. Yup. Kakuo replied with a nod. We've flown all the way from Namikaze's castle and made several stops in several towns over that time so he could meet up with some of his connections. Yup. We have no information whatsoever on Kurama's whereabouts. Zip. Nada. Zilch. Zero. Kakuo and Matabi emphasized Shukaku's point with the various words which defined their situation. And also, Yugito's sister still can't remember shit or she refuses to tell us where Kurama is, simply to watch Namikaze squirm. Shukaku finalized. Did I miss anything? Just that we somehow ended up in Crocus. Kakuo stated. Oi, Naruto. Why are we here in Crocus? The blonde Dragonslayer looked away from the numerous buildings and other forms of architectural marvels that littered the capital of the Kingdom of Fury. Naruto's captive turned to him with an equally curious gaze. Yeah, why are we here? Altair asked. Naruto turned and glared at her, his anger towards the younger Milkovich twin still burning within him since she was one of the reasons they were in this situation, that Kurama was now missing. We are here to meet up with two of my contacts. They were busy looking into the situation of dark guilds across the kingdom, but having once been members of Phantom Lord, they also have some links that delve deeper into the underground than most and have information that only they themselves know regarding the Balam Alliance members, Tartaros included. Naruto explained. Also, in order to not rouse suspicion, I have had the network make a call to one of the many hotels within the capital and booked a room for us to stay in. Altair scowled at the thought of being forced to stay within the same room as the despicable blonde. But, she thought, if I'm being held hostage, at least I'll be hostage in style. Glamorous lifestyles did appeal to her. The small group then proceeded to continue their trek through the massive capital city, Naruto taking the lead since he was the one who knew where their new, temporary living establishment was located amongst the throng of buildings. After an hour of weaving through the crowds of people, and some stopping to admire the various types of street performers due to the feline-based sense of curiosity by the Biju Exceed siblings, they finally came to a stop. We're here, Naruto stated as he glanced back at his traveling companions. Dot and Altair and the siblings all stood behind Naruto. Their eyes started at the massive revolving door before them, a few people walking in and out, while two sharply dressed doormen stood on either side of the revolving door to hold open the manual doors for those that did not wish to enter or exit through the revolving one. The shining jade color that outlined the glass doors shone brightly and was what made up the vast majority of the tower-like hotel's external appearance. Everyone's, signs Naruto's, eyes widened and their mouths gaped as they followed the lengthy structure's path that seemed to literally scrape the skies. What is this place? Kakuo asked. The Jade Tower, the most expensive and tallest building in all of Fury, as well as all of Earthland. Naruto replied. It stands at a height of over 72 stories and covers over 40,000 square feet of space. It contains 1608 rooms, 1380 standard guest rooms, 240 suites, 4 presidential suites, a banquet hall, an auditorium, 18 shops, 19 restaurants and a spa. Also, they allow pets. Are you calling us pets, Namikaze? The Ichibi sibling growled out, his golden eyes shining with mild rage. Far from it, Shukaku. However, you are all, in essence, cats, therefore, should we have stayed in some other sort of establishment, you would not have been allowed inside the premises. Naruto led his small posse into the hotel where they were graced with the massive lobby room which was so large that it looked like they were standing inside a shopping plaza. The lobby floor stood at a massive 4 floors in height with a few electric lacrima-powered escalators leading people from the shops to the restaurants on the upper areas. Numerous plants and small trees were placed at strategic, eye-catching locations to appeal to the guests who entered, and the walls were lined with paintings in every type of style you could imagine. Cubism, abstract, realistic, the list could go on indefinitely. The pride and joy of the lobby floor's decorum, though, was the mural painted on the ceiling. The ceiling was constructed to be dome-shaped, and as per the order of the King of Fury, bore a massive mural depicting a flock of trumpet-playing angels flying in a wide expanse of sky, surrounding a small green-haired baby with jade-colored eyes being held within a pair of massive hands. The baby was outlined in a heavenly aura as if it were a messiah being born. It was quite a beautiful painting. That baby. Altair tilted her head slightly as she looked at it. Is the image of the princess of the Kingdom of Fury, Hisui. Fury. The blonde Dragonslayer responded. It is only natural her image be there. After all, the king created this entire hotel in order to commemorate the birth of his daughter. He hired the greatest architects in Earthland to make the Jade Tower, even going so far as to request a few guilds to aid in the process. As a result, it took 2 entire years to complete. As luck would have it for the architects, it finished building on the exact day of Hisui's 2nd birthday. You know a lot about this place, Matabi muttered. I make it my business to know everything about certain things, Matabi. The son of Agnologia walked up to one of the front desks and rung the small bell, gaining the attention of the young woman standing behind the desk. Brushing back her light brown hair with a gloved hand, she proceeded to perform her introduction for the small group. Hello and good afternoon. She spoke with a tone of voice and sweet smile that was obviously practiced, her piercing emerald eyes meeting Naruto's sapphire ones. Welcome to the Jade Tower. My name is Elizabeth. How may I help you today? Yes, I have a reservation for one of the suites, Naruto informed Elizabeth. May I have a name? It should be under the company name of the Kuna concern, I believe. Kuna concern? Elizabeth asked with a raised eyebrow. You're associated with the people that managed to make a business negotiation with the stubborn tycoon that is Jude Heartfilia? My dear, I am one of the people who orchestrated that contractual agreement. My dear? The Biju exceeds siblings and Ultir blinked in confusion and surprise at what the blonde Dragonslayer just said. They glanced back and forth between each other and the son of 2 wizard saints. Really now? Elizabeth's green eyes widened in surprise while Naruto bore a small smirk at having his efforts being recognized in such a positive light. I must say, that is very impressive. Thank you, and actually, the contract I devised is actually quite ingenious. Is it now? Elizabeth leaned over, her chin resting in her hands as she looked over with genuine interest mixed with a mild bit of attraction. Quite, for you see, my fiancé and I have to get to our room and prepare for our evening events. Isn't that right, Naruto-kun? Elizabeth and Naruto raised their eyebrows as they looked at the younger Milkovich twin. Elizabeth then turned to the blonde man. Oh, your fiancé is it? Elizabeth then faced Ultir with a challenging gaze. Well then, if you are who you claim to be, then why is it that the front desk was called requesting a twin bedroom? For the cats, obviously, Ultir replied with venom in her tone. I hardly doubt a distinguished individual such as your Naruto-kun would be attracted to a cat-crazed tramp like yourself. Yeah, well, tell that to the rain, you little bellhop bitch. Ultir raised up her ring finger on her left hand to reveal a shining ice blue ring with a dark violet ice crystal present on it. Ultir then dropped her ring fin, raise her middle one. So fuck you, bitch. Elizabeth seethed with fury, her pale skin turning cherry red as blood rushed to her face. I see. Well then, here are your keys to your room. Suite 130 located on the 65th floor. The room keys were slammed down harshly on the marble countertops and Ultir snatched them up before latching onto Naruto's arm. The dark violet-haired woman then proceeded to drag Naruto away from the desk and towards the elevator. Pressing the up button, the jade-colored doors immediately slid open and the small group proceeded to enter the lift. With a press of the button to go to the 65th floor, the doors closed, but not before Ultir got in one last middle finger to the glaring Elizabeth. Soft orchestral music then began to play throughout the elevator as the 4 Exceed and Naruto stared at Ultir with incredulous looks on their faces. What the hell just happened? Kakuo asked. Milkovich, why did you proceed to take such a course of action? Naruto asked. Ultir rolled her eyes as she made the ice ring vanish from her finger with a flick of the wrist. That woman was obviously flirting with you and you were flirting right back. Had I not stepped in and got her to back off, we'd be stuck there for hours on end waiting for you two to stop having a conversation and get to the rooms. First off, she was not flirting with me because flirting usually involves some sort of attraction between 2 or more parties. Secondly, I could not possibly have flirted back, nor would I even indulge in the act as I am not concerned with such acts. Oh, you cannot possibly be that dense. Ultir replied. She was obviously flirting with you. Despite what you may believe about yourself, and even though my hatred for you still burns, you are a very attractive, young man. Is that why you chose to use the scenario in which you placed us in a marriage-based situation? The blonde Dragonslayer asked. Yes. Ultir nodded. I couldn't say close friend nor girlfriend because it is within human nature to want things that we like, women especially. Girlfriend gives that little bellhop bitch an idea that she still has a shot at you with the possible outcome that our hypothetical relationship would end. However, a ring banishes all hope for most women and men when they decide to go after someone. It shows that you were actually willing to commit, and everyone knows that most people are very afraid of commitment. A period of silence passed within the elevator as the blonde Dragonslayer looked at his captive. Even though the mere idea of such a relationship taking place between us is quite off-putting, I will admit that to use such methods to get your way is quite ingenious. I'll ignore the first part and take the compliment. The ice make user stated with a nod. As soon as she said that, the elevator released a soft ding through its speakers before the doors slid open to reveal that they had arrived at their floor. The small group exited the elevator and made their way through the brightly lit hallway towards Suite 130. Naruto inserted the key into the door and pushed it open. Ultir and the Exceed siblings followed right after him as he entered, and their eyes widened upon getting the full view of their room's interior design. The mahogany hardwood floor shone from being recently cleaned, the bright golden lights from the electrical lacrima in the chandelier above them serving to enhance the shine. Large windows at the far end of the room gave an excellent view of the capital city's urban landscape. There was a relatively large kitchen area to the left that contained a table set for four, a fully stocked fridge Shukaku made sure to check, and a mini bar, and to the right there was a work-study area that was to be used when the hotel had to accommodate for their more business-oriented customers. There was also a lacrima vision screen attached to the wall near the kitchen area. "The bed is mine," Chomei and Shukaku exclaimed with childish glee. The two Exceed leapt into the air and somersaulted before landing on the massive king-sized bed with an audible plop. They sank into the soft mattress as if it were made of marshmallow, and Ultir, upon sitting herself down on it, marveled at it. "Wow, you really go all out, Fujin-kun." Ultir smirked. "You should kidnap me more often if this is what the accommodations are like." Naruto growled, his eyes glowing with white light for a split second. "Do not get comfortable, Milkovich. Besides, you're coming with Chomei, Matabi and I to get you your clothes for tonight." Ultir, Chomei and Matabi raised their respective eyebrows in confusion. "What? Today is June 26th. Am I supposed to care about what the day is?" Ultir interrupted him abruptly. "If you'd let me finish, you annoying woman," he growled. Ultir motioned for him to continue, something which made him grit his teeth in annoyance. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose. "You need her alive to find Kurama." "You need her alive to find Kurama," he reminded himself. He then took a calming breath before speaking once more. "As I was saying, it's June 26th. The alleged importance of today is that it is Princess Hisui Fiore's birthday, and tonight, her father, King Tomoe Fiore, is having a very exclusive gathering of people coming from across the continent to celebrate her turning 21. I am meeting my contacts at that party, and though I would go to it alone, I will not allow you to leave my sight, nor will I leave you in this room alone with the Exceed, thus you will be accompanying me to the castle." "You saying you don't trust us to keep the bitch in line if you were to go to this party by yourself?" Shukaku asked with a hint of venom in his tone. "That's exactly what I am saying. While you are all more than capable of supervising her should I not be here, the fact of the matter remains that too much has happened in such a little amount of time, and I honestly will not be willing to take the chance of losing my only possible source of information in trying to find Kurama," the Apocalypse Dragonslayer explained. "We care about finding Kurama too, Naruto," Kakuo said, "but your level of paranoia is understandable given the situation we are in." The blonde Dragonslayer nodded to the dolphin horse costumed Exceed before turning to Chomei, Matabi and Ultir. "Come on. Can you at least explain why only Matabi and Chomei get to go?" Shukaku asked. "I want to see hot stuff here model in some clothes." Ultir narrowed her eyes at the sand-colored feline, her magic flaring violently as she prepared to summon an ice blade and run him through with it. A strong grip on her shoulder, obviously from her captor, kept her from committing to her current thought of impaling Shukaku. "I need a female opinion on the matter of choosing Ultir's dress for the princess's party. We're winged cats that can transform into giant demonic beasts of destruction. What would we know about human clothing?" Chomei asked. "He's running on the stereotype that females are better at judging clothing, which is actually quite true," Matabi replied to her older sister. The dichromatic-eyed feline smiled widely to showcase her fangs to the blonde Dragonslayer. "You do realize the repercussions of your actions, correct?" Naruto sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose to vent some of his feelings of annoyance. He then nodded before opening the door. "Don't remind me. Now just shut up and let's go." "Kakuo, Shukaku, be good while we're gone," Chomei said. "Yes, Chomei." The two male Exceed replied in a monotone to their eldest sister. With that, Ultir, Chomei and Matabi exited the room, Naruto following immediately after them and shut the door. Kakuo and Shukaku hovered in the air as they silently stared at the closed door. The silence was positively deafening as the brothers glanced around the room in hopes of finding some form of entertainment. Shukaku's golden eyes then brightened as he caught sight of the room service menu alongside the vision lacrima used to contact the staff. The Tanuki Lukili, an act which warranted a perplexed look from his dolphin horse-dressed brother. "Shukaku. Why are you smiling so creepily?" The level of perplexity only increased when Shukaku turned to face him. "Namikaze's paying, so I was thinking. Wanna call and order every single expensive piece of food on that menu for lunch and eventual dinner?" "Shukaku, I cannot stress just how much food that we would be ordering. Naruto would be furious, and not to mention we'd be stuck with a mountain of food that would not be eaten in its entirety by the time Naruto has to go out later tonight." Shukaku gave Kakuo a deadpan stare. "What's your point?" Kokuo's green-blue eyes narrowed in annoyance at his younger sibling's reply, but he merely sighed and held out a paw. Just gimme the damn lacrima. Attaboy, Kakuo. Kakuo scowled as his youngest brother gave him a rough pat on the back. I always knew there was a reason for why you were my favorite big brother. Shukaku chuckled as he handed the white furred exceed the vision lacrima. I hate you, with all of my hate, Kakuo hissed. You know you love me, you little horse shit. Shukaku replied before he sprouted his wings and hovered over to the menu and picked it up, his golden eyes gleaming mischievously. Now how about we start with this expensive looking salmon? Streets of Crocus, Fury Ultir and Naruto walked beside each other, the tension between them being almost palpable. As a result, the people that also occupied the streets of Crocus suddenly split down the middle, giving the two mages a rather wide berth. Chome and Matabi flew above the two criminals' heads and turned to each other. If Old Chan and Naruto weren't who they were, I'd say it would be rather embarrassing for them to be in this situation. The Hellfire-using Exceed said, a sweat drop forming when she saw a man nearly trip over his own feet in an attempt to get out of Naruto's way. I'll say, it's like the parting of the Red Sea is going on in here. It's interesting that you actually remember that. Matabi gave her sister a rather impressed expression. You're one to talk, Spitfire. I paid attention to Hagoromo Gigi when he taught us stuff about Earthland's history. Chome pouted, unlike you. Matabi nodded with a small laugh. That's true, Chome. I mean, the nine of us and Hagoromo Gigi practically lived in that history. Edelus's history is literally things that we lived through, so of course Earthland's history would be a lot more interesting to learn. Speaking of history though, that was a really big burst of nostalgia you just gave me when you called me Spitfire. It's been years since you called me that. You were always a Spitfire. I guess it makes sense you'd be a hot mouth since you're literally made of fire.
Chome giggled alongside her sister. We all called you our little Spitfire up to the point when Kurama sent us through the anima to escape. A period of silence passed between the sister Exceed as they recalled being shoved through the opening in space-time. The multitude of humans screaming for magic energy and blood haunted their minds, Kurama and Yuki holding them back so that they would have had enough time to get through the portal.
Those damned humans. Matabi growled, her paw clenched tightly. Wanting to imprison us for our magic energy. We aren't weapons nor tools for them to use at their leisure. We could have easily killed them all.
We could have, but then that would have been an insult to Hagoromo Gigi's memory. We escaped with anima because Kurama was so adamant in keeping to that old sage's words. Besides, like Shukaku implied, Edalus will always be home.
I guess. Matabi muttered. Chome flew over and patted her little sister on the head as a sign of comfort. We'll get Kurama back. I promise you that. Chome stated with a matter-of-fact tone. Chome descended to the level of the two humans and looked between them. So, do you guys know where we're going? Yup. Ultir spoke before the blonde Dragonslayer could even get a word in. The violet-haired woman came to a stop as she pointed at the shopping complex a few buildings down on their left. Right here. Once they reached the complex's location, Chome tilted her head in confusion along with Matabi and Naruto. There were quite a number of people leaving and entering the complex through its revolving doors, many of whom were women carrying a number of bags. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer lightly sniffed the air as if said women walked past him. His face twisted into a look of disgust and annoyance as he picked up on the concentrated scent of over half a dozen types of perfume and clothing fabrics all melded into one. Smells disgusting, he stated as he exhaled sharply through his nose, trying in vain to remove the pungent scents from his nostrils. And expensive, datbeo. You're a man, you'll never understand a woman's tastes. And I don't want to, ttebeo, he muttered. He then walked up and roughly grabbed the younger woman by her arm as they entered the establishment, Chome and Matabi following dutifully behind them. The two humans and Exceed navigated through the shopping complex until they came across the clothing store where they spied members of the more financially well-off members of Crocus exiting said store. Naruto pulled Ultir off to the side as they entered the store. The store sells cosmetics as well as clothing, so. How can you tell? The signs, he replied with a deadpan stare. Ultir's left eye twitched in annoyance at how she was spoken to as if she were stupid. But then again, she did ask a pretty stupid question as the signs on the store clearly showed they were selling things other than clothing. Anyway, you buy whatever cosmetics you require, some new clothes, and only one. Naruto raised a clawed index finger in the air for emphasis. And I repeat, one dress for this occasion. No more, no less. Once you have chosen your things, return to me and I will pay for them. Understood?
One dress. Ultir raised an eyebrow. Geez, for a guy who lives in a castle you sure are a cheapskate.
And for a woman who is actually a captive, you sure have a mouth on you. Naruto countered. The two glared at one another, lightning sparking between their intense gazes. Ultir huffed and turned away from the son of two wizard saints. Fine, she muttered. But I'm picking the best and most expensive dress I can find and you're not going to complain. Just go buy your shit, annoying bitch. He waved her off. Watch her. Matabi and Chome nodded and followed after the Grimoire Heart member, vanishing behind an aisle where they had cosmetics being sold. Now I know why Shikamaru always found Ino and Sakura to be so troublesome when we were kids. The blonde sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Soon, seconds became minutes and minutes turned into hours. Naruto looked up at the clock on the wall, his eye twitching as he glanced outside and noticed the sky beginning to change colors slightly, taking of a fiery tint as the mixture of colors that came with the setting of the sun began to bleed into the expanse of blue. He sighed audibly, his head dropping limply. That woman is so troublesome, he muttered to himself. You better not be talking about me, bastard. Naruto glanced up to see his captive now standing in front of him with a few small bags and a few larger bags. Naruto looked up at the clock and raised an eyebrow. Only a few hours, Naruto stated with a questioning tone. But, you're a woman. A woman who has free liberty to shop. How is that possible? Shouldn't you have taken almost the entire day? You follow stereotypes way too religiously, bastard. Ultir deadpanned. She sighed before shoving the bags in the blonde's arms. Well, I chose what I want to wear and picked my makeup and everything. As you requested, I got one dress. Alright, and as per our agreement, I will go pay for them. Then we'll take Ul-chan back to the hotel while you stand in line. Utabi said as she rested upon the dark-haired woman. Instantly got a chill that raced down his spine. Slowly and steadily, he turned his head towards where the cashiers were located. The bags in his arms suddenly felt like they were filled with lead, his arms dropping to his sides. His eyes widened and his jaw dropped in disbelief as he looked at the lengthy line that snaked its way through the store. The younger Milkovich twin chuckled with an obvious look of maliciousness and maleficence in her eyes, sauntering up to her fake fiancé and leaning against his arm. You did say you were paying, and since you have to obey the laws of the store, you are going to be standing up in this store for quite a while. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer was still at a loss for words as his eyes were still trying to find the end of the line. What the son of two wizard saints was at a loss for words. The dark-haired ice mage stood up on her tiptoes. Have fun, Fujin-kun. Ultir whispered in his ear in a teasing sing-song tone. Naruto snapped his head in her direction to glare at her, but the Arc of Time user was already fleeing the shop. Don't worry, Naruto. Chome and Matabi assured him. We'll keep her from running away. Plus you still have her seals on her, so she can't use any magic. She'll be going nowhere pretty quickly. With that, Kurama's sisters flew after Ultir, said Milkovich's laughter still echoing through the air despite her running away. Naruto gripped his hair tightly as if threatening to wrench it free from his scalp. That motherfucking, airheaded, evil, conniving, slutty, despicable, horrendous. The son of Acnologia's list of adjectives to describe his captive continued to lengthen as he grumbled to himself, stomping to his position at the back of the line. Suite 130 Jade Tower, Crocus, Fury. They had ordered their food, making sure to have the bill be named out to one Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. They had had their fun and ate more than their fair share of food, but despite the luxuriousness of it all, the room was rather boring, and so that left the brothers with the ability to create their own fun. This resulted in the current situation in which Shukaku and Kakuo were now fighting each other with the numerous amounts of pillows spread throughout the room in a makeshift pillow war. Eat feathered fluff, you steam-powered twat. Shukaku roared as he threw one of the decorative couch pillows at his older sibling. Kokuo's head snapped back as the pillow slammed against his face with a powerful whump. Don't make me turn your body to glass again like when we were younger, Kakuo yelled back as he threw his pillow like a shuriken. The feather-stuffed weapon embedded itself into Shukaku's stomach. Sand bled from the area and Shukaku gave his older brother a deadpan expression. Really? Impalement with the pillows, Kakuo? Shukaku asked. Do you have no shame in pillow combat? I have plenty of shame, just no mercy. Especially when it comes to you, Otuto. Shukaku growled at Kokuo's jab to his age. The two male exceed then paused in their pillow war when the door opened to reveal one Ultir Milkovich and their female siblings resting on her shoulders. The two brothers looked past the females and saw there was no sign of their brother's Dragonslayer partner. Where's Namikaze? Shukaku asked. Enjoying the line to pay for my stuff, Ultir stated with a triumphant smirk on her face. She then glanced around the room and noticed the feathers wafting through the air, the pillows in the two exceeds paws, raising an eyebrow at the one embedded in Shukaku's belly, and the small spread of food laid out on the kitchen table. I see you boys have been having fun while we were gone, Matabi said. Well, we had to do something to kill the time. You've been gone for 4 hours, Shukaku explained. The two brothers then felt a surge of killing intent as Chome's form became that of her kabutomushi form. She glared at them through the slits in her armored head, her wings buzzing angrily before she grew to nearly half the size of a fully grown wyvern. I can't believe you two would do this. You use Naruto's money to pay for all of this ridiculously expensive food, rip apart such fine linen pillows and perform a pillow war of such a massive magnitude that you would have feathers dirtying the entire living room area. Kakuo and Shukaku shrunk in fear, suddenly finding the floor very interesting as they bore the full weight of their sister's wrath. Without me. The brothers' heads snapped up before they grinned toothily at Chome. Reverting back to her exceed form, Chome wrenched the pillow free from Shukaku's sandy body before taking part in the now three-way war of feathery destruction. Mitabi's sweat dropped as the three-winged felines yowled and hissed in their battle of supremacy, her sweat dropping further increasing when she caught sight of Ultir eating the food that was laid out on the table. "What?" Ultir asked as she slurped up some spaghetti noodles. "Though technically the bastard's paying for it, it is free food, plus it would be a shame to let it go to waste." Mitabi shrugged. "Good point." And with that, she joined her dark violet-haired friend, ripping into some of the many fish-based meals as she burnt them to a satisfying crisp with her hellfire. Once the two had eaten their fill, Ultir lounged on the couch and flicked on the Lacrima vision orb, flicking through the channels to see what was on. The Exceed followed suit and began arguing between and with Ultir over what show they should watch, eventually settling on an action film about a clash between a group of heroes and a sentient robot. They found themselves engrossed in the nearly 3-hour-long film. Afterwards, time was spent commentating on the movie and its flaws. "You can't be serious, it was all action. There was barely any actual character development to it," Chome exclaimed. "What are you talking about?" Shukaku argued. "There was plenty development. Sure, there was a weirdly forced romance between the scientist guy and the redhead. But when the witch woman made them see flashbacks of their various pasts, it showed quite a bit of character for them." "I'm not gonna get into this," Kakuo muttered. "I'm just gonna wait until the sequel. When is that coming out, by the way?" "In 2 years," Mitabi replied. A collective groan echoed throughout the large hotel room. "That's like forever," Shukaku moaned in disappointment. The door to the suite was harshly slammed open, all 5 heads snapping in the direction of the sound. Standing before them was an extremely pissed-looking son of Agnologia. He dropped the bags containing Ultir's clothes and makeup on the ground before stalking towards the dark violet-haired woman. 9 fucking hours, he stated, his eyes glowing white as his towering form cast a long shadow over her. "Do you have any idea what it's like to stand in a line for 9 hours? Do you, Milkovich?" "No, but I do imagine that it would be quite an enjoyable experience," Ultir replied with a victorious smirk on her face. "And you stood there for 9 hours just for little ol' me. I knew you loved me, Fujin-kun." Naruto looked ready to explode and tear her throat out then and there, the insufferable woman just sitting there and batting her eyelashes at him. "I am patient and the metaphorical fuse that is my temper is extremely long in most cases, but not even I have that much patience." "Your angry face is hilarious." Ultir giggled, but she could no longer bear the act of holding it back before she burst into peals of laughter. "Don't you dare laugh, bitch, are you listening to me, Milkovich? Never again. You hear me, you mangy woman, never again?" Naruto huffed and panted, his face now red as it appeared that he hadn't even taken a single breath as he made his little rant. Ultir continued to laugh, eventually reaching the point that his anger was so damn hilarious that she could barely breath, her loud laughter becoming silent spasms of motion while clutching her stomach in pain, tears streaking down her face. "Milkovich," Naruto muttered as he pointed a clawed finger at her, "all of my hate." Insert music. Fairy Tale Fantasia, Mercurius, Crocus, Fury. Mercurius, the castle of the King of Fury and the pride and joy of the now-deceased ancient architects of the capital that was Crocus. The noble residence was a very intricately decorated and designed castle. The place appeared to consist a number of different, yet uniform buildings fused together, with some sections protruding outwards and assuming particular forms, and the walls being mainly adorned by orders of large, rectangular windows lined up and flanked by protruding pillars. Its main entrance seemed to be a mildly small door topped by a very high decorative arc, which gets pointed near its top, and had its central part adorned by a large, round flower window. To its left was a section keeping its height, topped by another going up high, which possessed a pitched roof, and behind which appeared to be a structure reminiscent of ancient Greek and Roman temples, being highly similar to the real Parthenon, near which, to its upper right, sat a part ending in a small dome, topped by a prominent spire. 2 towers, possessing approximately the same height as the spire, were located on the back and right parts of the building.
To the entrance's right, several meters away from it, the building took on an arched form, with such parts being reminiscent of a cylinder partially fused with the structure, soared above by a mildly small spire, almost placed in the back part of the building. Topping the entire castle was a high, round tower, with its lower part, much more massive than the one above it, being adorned by elongated windows and ending in a dome, from which the thinner, top part appears and goes up several meters before ending in a pointed tiled roof. Mercurius was surrounded by a lush garden, which, much like the rest of the city, was adorned by a large amount of flowers, possessing flower beds and, in addition, artistically arranged plants and small, tidy hedges, which had square, hollow spaces on their edges, housing ornately decorated street lamps, with wavy poles ending in large orbs, with circular objects surrounding them, seemingly floating. The streets there were adorned by mosaics, which consisted of a variety of small, flat rectangular stones arranged to resemble semicircles. In front of the palace sat a fountain, surrounded by a ground level,
round and shallow pool. Water jets jutted upwards from both the fountain and the pool, with the former also housing some plants, or possibly statues of plants, on its base.
Welcome, thank you for coming. The greeters at the door spoke politely and with obviously forced smiles as the numerous guests flowed into the massive castle. Naruto and Ultir gave their forced smiles as well as they nodded to the greeters. Naruto was rather impassive, but Ultir was quite taken aback as she gazed upon the interior of the castle of the Fore monarchy.
Mercurius was truly a magnificent sight from the outside, and the inside was just as grand. With golden walls that melded with the shape of the building itself, the upper areas bore indentations with small ledges where the images of stone knights rested handsomely. The bright lights of the lacrima acted in conjunction with that of the crystal chandelier to make the ballroom as well lit as possible. Lengthy tables rested beneath the lights, each one bearing trays of numerous types of foodstuffs, ranging from sandwiches, shrimp cocktails and mini sausages to a rotisserie chickens, suckling pig and steamed lobster. However, all forms of comfortable chatter and the sounds of the orchestra came to a halt as the trumpets blared, the king of Fore rising up from his throne. Tomoe Fore was possibly as short, if not shorter, than Makarov. His white hair was rather wavy and ended just below his neck, and he also had a thin white mustache. His clothing consisted of striped royal blue and white overalls held up by a belt at the waist, all of which was worn under a black cape, and a pair of royal blue boots. The entirety of his outfit was further covered by a brilliant crimson, white fur-lined coat. The gold and crimson crown rested atop his head. Toma then gestured beside him and his daughter rose up from her own seat. Hisui Fore was a woman whose very presence and beauty made every man's heart skip a beat. True, princesses were stereotypically portrayed to be beautiful, but Hisui Fore, to call her beautiful was said to be an understatement. She was a slim, petite young woman. She had wavy light green hair that reached down to the middle of her back with two strands that framed her face as well as a set of tufts that obscured the majority of her forehead, with the prominent tuft in the middle reaching down to the top of her nose. Hisui had large dark green eyes with long eyelashes. She wore a pale green ball gown that did well to accentuate her voluptuous form. She wore a silver tiara with a red ruby at its front which served to further enhance her regal appearance. My fine people, I thank you all for taking the time to come and celebrate my daughter's 21st birthday. Insert music. Fairy Tale Guild Darkness. A pleasure to see you once again after so long, Monsieur Fujin-sama. Fujin-sama. Naruto turned away from the members of royalty as he was addressed by the pair of soft-spoken voices on either side of him. The two former Element 4 members were dressed accordingly for the occasion as Monsieur Saul was wearing his trademark earth brown suit, green tie and dark brown shoes, and Totemaru was dressed in a dark red suit and black dress shoes. Monsieur Saul, Totemaru, it truly has been quite a while since I have last seen you two in person. Naruto greeted them in an equally soft tone, being careful to check his surroundings every now and then to make sure the other members of the party weren't able to listen to their obviously sensitive conversation. It has. Totemaru agreed. Non. I believe it has only been months. The green-haired earth magic user held up two fingers for emphasis. Since the last time we had seen each other face to face. It has not been that long, non? To be quite honest, Monsieur Saul, I am not the best at record keeping. That is what HQ is for. Naruto stated. Now, I believe I didn't summon you both here to discuss pleasantries. Tell me, what have you found out? Well, first off. Saul spoke first. Madame Sue has informed us of our newest additions to the network. She told us to inform you that Madame Wendy Marvell and Madame Charles have been readily accepted into our ranks. They are all quite smitten with her, it seems. As for Zabrak Granful, having been made our newest executive, he has made sure to perform your mission for him. All it took was for him to reveal he held Cladoa. So he was successful then? Naruto asked. The green-haired man nodded as he adjusted his monocle.
Oui, Monsieur Fujin-sama. The subordinate guilds that were once controlled by Oracion Siete are now yours to command, though Monsieur Zabrak will be acting as a mediator seeing as how they have made it quite clear that only the one who wields Clodoa is the one they will follow. Naruto nodded in understanding, though, it was odd for dark guilds to show such a high level of loyalty to their superior guild. We have gleaned as much information as we could from them as a result, but it appears that the amount was not satisfactory. Totemaru stated. Those dark guilds were aware of that base of Zareth you found earlier in the Wood Sea, but that is all they knew concerning him. However, due to their former link to Grimoire Heart, they managed to pick up something about the keys of Zareth. Naruto did his best to remain stoic, but his eyes still widened marginally. The keys of Zareth? He muttered his surprise as softly as he could. Those can't exist now that we know Zareth is alive. The keys of Zareth were explained to be the pieces of Zareth's own soul, split apart into fragments and then hidden from the world. If Zareth is still alive, all is intact and thus the keys would not exist. We have done our research, Fujin-sama. I agree with you on those points, but Totemaru sent a slightly worried glance to his superior. It appears that according to them,
as well as some of our undercover members hidden amongst the Grimoire Heart subordinate guilds. Grimoire Heart has been searching for those relics for quite a while. They managed to find 4 of the 7 keys of Zareth. 4. Naruto's blue eyes widened as he turned slightly to face Totemaru. How close are they to finding the remaining 3? The fire magic user shook his head. We do not know, Fujin-sama. We honestly did as much as we could. We even tried to bribe the Dark Guild masters to give us something, but they knew nothing. Had to kill those few Dark Guilds though since they caught on to the fact we were traitors. Made to look like an accident, so there is no need to worry, Monsieur Fujin-sama. Saul interrupted. A few were caught in a rock slide while heading to another town, while the others were caught in the wildfire caused by a wyvern attack. Your level of thoroughness impresses me. Very well done, you too. Merci, Monsieur Fujin-sama. Saul bowed lightly and thanks to the son of Agnologia. However, we are sorry to report that any attempts to get information regarding Tartaros has been less than unhelpful. Why? The blue-eyed mage's eyes shifted between his 2 executives. You 2 are supposed to be my eyes and ears in the underground, so why is it that you have found nothing with regards to Tartaros? We are sorry once more, Fujin-sama. Totemaru sweated slightly as he heard his superior's annoyed growl. Every single Dark Guild we've talked to has reported that other than knowing their name is Tartaros, they know nothing about them. Some have reported that a few months ago, Tartaros, Grimoire Heart and Oracion Siete had once performed a sort of summit meeting to discuss the arrangements of the Balam Alliance. But other than that, the trails have gone cold. Saul agreed. Tartaros has become an enigma to all, even to the Dark Guilds. They do not make any sudden movements, and no one seems to have any idea what they do or who their members or master are. They cover their tracks well as they even manage to keep their whole section of subordinate guilds a complete secret as well. So, you're basically telling me that we have nothing? The son of 2 wizard saints sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose as the 2 spy executives nodded in confirmation. Very well, I will have to accept that Tartaros will continue to be an obstacle until we are capable of breaking it down. Until then, you may return to your posts after you have had your fill of celebration. What? Totemaru stuttered. Surely you jest, Monsieur Fujin-sama. Saul spoke a bit louder, earning him small glares from the other members of the party that were focused on Toma's speech. You have done me a great service to go to such great lengths to provide me with all of this information.
The Apocalypse Dragonslayer stated. While it is true that the other members of my spy network are all at risk just by simply working for me, the fact remains that you 2 are my executives who deal with the Dark Guilds, thus putting you both at a higher risk of danger. As a result, you should be rewarded, and so your reward is to be allowed to remain here in the castle and continue to celebrate amongst the people.
The sound of clapping then echoed throughout the castle as Toma finished his speech. Naruto smirked in amusement at Saul and Totemaru as they tried to wrap their heads around the fact that their superior had just given them downtime. He never gave downtime, which was odd. Said Ogono Fujin patted the 2 men on their shoulders before proceeding to walk off just as the orchestral music continued to play. Insert music. 2 steps from Hell, Sun and Moon.
Enjoy your night, you 2. You will not be getting another form of relaxation anytime soon. The former Element 4 members nodded before turning to each other, wide grins on their faces.
If getting to party in Mercurius was what would be happening, I totally would have joined you at the drop of a hat. Totemaru said. With that, the son of Agnologia then walked off as he left the 2 men to their own devices. He then went to take part in the festivities as well, feeling a bit famished. He ate a few of the finger foods and drank some wine, but just as he set his glass down, he felt someone brush up against his arm. I'll admit, when I was being held against my will, I really didn't expect to be capable of seeing the inside of Mercurius. Altair commented as she kept her grip on the blonde's arm. I had planned on taking part in this event for quite a while, Milkovich. You appearing to accompany me was not part of that plan, but I had to make due to your guild's attempts to make me into a way to show off your power. After all, killing the son of the 2 most powerful wizard saints would definitely have caught the eyes of the Magic Council. Naruto replied. We planned on attacking the Magic Council for quite a while, Fujin-kun. You appearing to us was not part of that plan, but we had to do. She mocked him as she repeated his own words. The blonde glared at her for having done so, but she merely gave him a coy smile. Ooh, such a icy glare from the almighty man in a butler suit. Naruto looked down at himself. The suit he had worn to pose as Fu's butler when they had taken the railroads from Jude Heartfilia was now being worn for this event. He even took to using gel once more to slick back his hair. She giggled as she spun away to stand in front of him. She then grabbed him by his hands and ushered him along to the center of the large ballroom. Dance with me. Me? Dance? With you? The very words were foreign to him. His nose twitched and his eyes narrowed when he caught a whiff of the young woman's breath. It was then he took note of the unfocused look in her eyes and the flushing of her cheeks. He chuckled in amusement. Oh, now it makes sense why you are spouting such nonsense. You're drunk. Well, we're at a party and despite being your captive, I'd rather take the most of it, she shrugged.
Then why don't you dance with someone else? He asked.
Oh, don't be more of a bastard than you already are, Fujin-kun. Ultier rolled her eyes. You're a serious character, I understand that, but you gotta learn to let loose from time to time. All work and no play makes Fujin-kun a very dull man. You annoy me, Milkovich, says the man who can't dance. Naruto's glared hardened at the teasing wink she sent his way. His magic energy and killing intent flared slightly, his eyes gaining a white glow as he bent down to stare directly into Ultier's eyes. Is that a challenge, bitch? He snarled. Oh no, I wouldn't dream of challenging you. Her high level of sarcasm was enough to push him over the edge. He may have fully accepted his humanity, but he still held his draconian pride. With a growl of annoyance, his hand lashed out, gripping the younger Milkovich twin by the wrist and pulled out onto the dance floor. He spun her around and Ultier's eyes widened when she found her left hand held in the grip of his right, and his left hand firmly placed at her waist. The dark-eyed Arc of Time user then laughed lightly as she rested her right hand atop Naruto's shoulder. Impressive that you know the foxtrot, she muttered with a smirk as she followed the blonde's lead in the dance. As the foxtrot music flowed throughout the ballroom, the numerous other dancers following the tempo, Naruto's eyes gained a shine of pride at her compliment, his chest swelling slightly as he stood up a bit straighter than before. I have been schooled in numerous things beyond the art of combat, Milkovich. Of course, even someone as stubborn as yourself must be impressed with my talents. Peeved. She scoffed. You're lucky that I'm not fully functional, otherwise I'd have a lot of things to say as a comeback to that. You were never fully functio. Fuck you, bastard. The two dancers glared at one another, lightning sparking between their intense gazes. Ultier's glare then faltered as she took note of the switch in the timing of the music and smirked at her dance partner. Oh, a waltz. What will the mighty Ogo no Fujin do now that he is out of his element of the foxtrot? You underestimate me, bitch. He stated. I have had 2 girls for childhood friends, and so as a result, I was roped into their fantasies of dancing in an imaginary ballroom. Because they knew how to, their mothers had to teach me to dance so that I would be able to actually keep up with them. Switching from a foxtrot to a waltz is mere child's play. With a sudden spin, Ultier was pulled back into Naruto's arms with their bodies now in the position to follow the waltz. You. She rested her head against his chest as she followed his movements to the music. You really are one insufferable bastard. Says the troublesome bitch. He countered. Whatever words the ice make user had to say fell on deaf ears afterwards as the blonde felt a pulse of magic energy in his coat's breast pocket. The blonde's thoughts came to an abrupt halt as he felt a pulse of magic energy on his person. Thank the dragons, he thought, welcoming the distraction as he channeled a bit of his own magic into the communication seal. Insert music. 2 steps from hell clairvoyance. Speak, Naruto, it's Fu. The Ogo no Fujin's eyes immediately hardened as he heard the voice of his subordinate. Wind Dragon, mission report. Oh, I have a report, alright. Dot and I have some requests as well. Naruto raised an eyebrow as he detected the solemn tone in his fellow Dragonslayer's tone. The blonde waited patiently as the daughter of Cyclonus took a small pause. Han, Yugito and I had arrived at our destination within a few days and took the remainder of the week to study the enemy base before we broke in. Project Sentinel and Project Beast Wars had apparently released their prototypes to act as guards, but we easily dispatched them. Afterwards, we made our way to the elevator and came across the 3rd generation Dragonslayer you had sent us to kill. Were Darwin and Owen present? Did you manage to take any sort of information out of the laboratory when you got there? No, sorry, she replied, but we assumed that they probably had detected us somehow because the entire lab was cleared out. Not a soul was there except for the 3rd generation Dragonslayer. We immediately went into battle, so we had no time to try and gain any sort of information, and well, with the loss of the element of surprise, we couldn't exactly make it an assassination and it turned into a full-scale battle. During the battle, the 3rd generation Dragonslayer revealed herself to be known as the Earth Dragonslayer and daughter of the Earth Dragon, Welgaia. Welgaia's child. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise. That's a dragon who is a member of the Genso, and is the best among the Earth Dragons. You all were probably placed into quite a difficult combat situation. Yeah, Fu confirmed, and because we were fighting underground, she had managed to cause an earthquake to bring the entire biological research facility crashing down. Luckily, Han used his steam in conjunction with my ability to fly in order to quickly get out before it was destroyed and we took the battle topside. It was difficult and apparently as the battle progressed, the lacrima in her body had activated or did something to her magical circulatory system because as Han was about to deal the finishing blow, she went into Doragon Fosu. Doragon Fosu? Naruto mentally exclaimed. You fought within an earthy wasteland, Fu. Are you sure she didn't just eat a large quantity of the earth while you all were fighting? I made sure to stop her from doing that. Even when I was being held back, Han and Yugito did what they could. She had practically no time to eat any of her element and to go into that state through pure will. You will need a great many years of training with your dragon parent. She was the same physical age as Naruto, but, as you know, you need an extreme amount of focus to gather the necessary magic energy and then channel it to utilize the form. Maybe it could have been that she had a much stronger connection to the earth than I realized, but my connection to the wind is stronger than even yours, and yet I wouldn't be able to enter it as fast as the daughter of Welgaia had. As far as I know, and I'm going by what you've told me, you are the only person who can perform it at will. That is true. Naruto confirmed for the mint-haired Dragonslayer. Toussaint taught me to use the greatest weapon of a Dragonslayer before he left in X777. It was my final task to be able to call upon it whenever I wished. Though it takes a few seconds, a minute at most, for me to be able to use it, the fact remains that the process is not instantaneous. So, from what I can glean from your description, the daughter of Welgaia managed to do just that, didn't she?
And since she isn't you, the only explanation left was the dragon lacrima she had in her chest.
Han was beaten down and Yugito lost an arm, and did what I could to hold her back by using by drive mode.
We got lucky, Naruto. The magic energy generated by the dragon lacrima had overcharged her body to such a high degree that it put her heart into overdrive and burned her entire body from the inside out.
Her magic circulatory system, her flesh, her bones, everything. She was turned to ash. I'm holding the ashes in a wind sphere right now. Fu stated. Naruto frowned deeply as he processed what the Wind Dragonslayer just told him. It was quite a shame to lose a Dragonslayer whose parent was a member of the Genso. I see. Naruto thought back to his subordinate. Well, you successfully completed your assignment. Yugito and Han head back to HQ. When you do, tell Su to contact Haku about Yugito and her lost arm. She'll be able to help her, and I'd rather not have a cripple for an executive member of my spy network.
We're already on our way back, and I will. And as for the requests.
What are they? The son of Agnologia asked. Well, you see. The Earth Dragonslayer, before she died, she said that she didn't want to become a third generation. She said that she only did what she had to so that she would be able to protect her mate. Now, I know that it's hypocritical of me to ask of this since you and I both know we are not exactly the biggest fans of people who act against the pride they have in their Dragonslayer magic, but I would like to request that when we get back, that we hold a proper burial for her. Naruto's rage and magic energy spiked for a moment, causing everyone in the store to suddenly freeze in fear. Wind Dragon, I will not. Naruto, please. She didn't ask to become this blasphemy. She cried out that she held great pride in her abilities as the Earth Dragonslayer, to be labeled as the daughter of Welgaia. Fu mentally exclaimed. But she also wanted to save the person she loved and wanted to spend her life with. She asked me to help her before she died, and I shook my head, Naruto. I denied her. She broke then and there and was reduced to ashes as a result. To turn a proud Dragonslayer into such a thing as a third generation, implanting a lacrima into her chest just for the sake of scientific progress is not something she deserved to have happen to her. As a fellow child of a dragon, as a fellow Dragonslayer, we at least owe her a proper burial. We owe it to ourselves to preserve the customs that our own dragons taught us to uphold. So please, Naruto. The pressure of Naruto's power died away, leaving many patrons confused as to what just occurred. The blonde Dragonslayer stared at the floor in silence, his blue eyes shifting as numerous thoughts ran through his head. The Earth Dragonslayer was a blasphemy and someone who dared to change themselves, who dared to push aside their pride as a Dragonslayer and in their own magic. But it was Fo she cared about, and from Fu's words, it was obviously a big and bitter pill to swallow. Naruto closed his eyes and took a deep breath. You're right. Naruto rolled his eyes as he could practically feel Fu grinning at his words. Despite what she did to herself, the Earth Dragonslayer did it for the sake of her mate. Our dragons taught us that if we found someone to hold dear that we should do whatever it takes to keep them beside us for all of eternity. And I would be a greater hypocrite than I already am if I were to let my pride as a Dragonslayer deny her what she rightfully deserves. She deserves to be removed from the physical plane in a proper manner, and we owe it to her as her fellow Dragonslayers. Thank you, Naruto. You're welcome, Fu. Naruto then smiled slightly. And also I am proud of you being able to carry out your first team mission successfully. I told you that my trust in you was not misplaced, and I am glad to see that it remained that way. I didn't want to let you down, you know, Fu replied with a toothy grin on her end. And you haven't. Naruto chuckled, and He then scratched his cheek in nervousness and embarrassment, clearing his mental throat. I am glad that you are safe. Huh? Her orange eyes widened as she processed his words. I am not telling you this as if I care for you, because I don't. I am only saying this because it would be difficult to find a new Dragonslayer to take your place. Wendy is still too young and doesn't have your experience, not to mention. What? Why are you laughing? Stop laughing, Wind Dragon. The green-haired woman's laugh echoed through his head as he glared at the floor, a small blush of embarrassment on his face. Sorry, it's just that I never thought you of all people would say you would be glad that I'm safe. Not even Papa Cyclonus showed me that kind of consideration, well, not verbally at least. Fu smiled softly on her end of the communication seal. And you're damn right you'll never be able to find a new Dragonslayer to take my place. I'm the most badass aerokinetic you're ever gonna find on the face of Earthland. Good luck with what you have to do. You hear it? Thanks for caring, Naruto. It means a lot that you do. I don't, he stated firmly. Sure, was the sarcastic reply. Whatever helps you sleep at night, Naruto. Whatever helps you sleep at night. And with that, Fu cut the connection. Naruto stopped supplying magic to his communication seal as well and shook his head in exasperation, planting his face in his hands. Troublesome wind dragon, he muttered under his breath. Oi, I'm talking to you, bastard. Naruto looked down at Ultir, raising his eyebrow in confusion as he found her dark eyes trying to bore a hole into his skull. He countered with his own glare. What? He snapped. I was telling you why I despise you so much, she snarled, but now I find that you're just staring at me instead of listening. It's no wonder it took a kidnapping to get a girl on your arm. I was not staring. Oh, you sure as well were, bastard. Ultir's eyes then widened in some sort of realization before a sly expression adorned her face. Or maybe you were hoping I wouldn't notice. Huh? I knew you liked what you saw, but you're just too proud to accept the fact that I look smokin'. I don't know it's possible, but you appear to be even more intoxicated than before. He muttered as he looked down at the daughter of But now that she had mentioned it, he couldn't help from looking her form up and down. Her dark violet hair had taken on a far more glossy appearance due to the application of the shampoo and conditioner she applied during her bath, and she had applied an eyelash curler to make said lashes more prominent, but despite having bought a plethora of cosmetics, she had opted to not use them. No eyeliner, no eyeshadow, no lipstick, no blush, no powder. Naruto had to admit though, she did have a lovely face, and it did seem far more appealing than when she wore eyeshadow and lipstick. The backless black dress she wore hugged her body to accentuate her curves. It had a significantly low neckline to show off quite a bit of her cleavage. The dress covered much of her left side, but extended to cover up to her upper right thigh as the rest of the leg was visible for all to see. Her outfit was completed with the addition of black high heels. Though, I will admit you are quite attractive tonight. In my personal opinion, you do look a bit better as you are now without all the makeup. A small blush adorned Milkovich's face as she looked up at the blonde in surprise. But her surprise quickly morphed into a teasing grin once more as she saw the Dragonslayer adorning his own blush of embarrassment. So even the mighty Ogo no Fujin can offer a compliment. What happened to having seen better when I tortured you? Naruto scoffed, rolling his eyes as the younger Milkovich twin sauntered up to him. I have, Milkovich, and I was merely offering you nothing more than a simple observation. Meh, I'll take what I can get coming from you, but don't worry Fujin-kun. She patted him lightly on the cheek. You clean up nicely as well. Though, I am a bit ashamed I had to come this place with you of all people. Says the woman who is still wearing the ice ring for a fake engagement. He pointed to the ring of ice on her finger. Ultir shrugged, glancing at the ring. What can I say? I like the idea of being married to you, Naruto-kun. Naruto's blue eyes were accented by the ethereal white shine they gained as he looked down at the shorter woman. You don't ever utter my name, he hissed. Only the few people I trust are allowed to say it, 2 of which are dead and 1 other was taken by Tartaros. Or what, you'll kill me? If you wanted to, you would have done it by now. The same could be said for you. He shot back. Her eyes widened and a confident smirk of his own formed on his face. I am well aware of the knives you have hidden on your person, Milkovich. As if you know where they are. Try me. He challenged. Ultir smirked before swinging her leg to strike at his head, but Naruto ducked and immediately grabbed the hidden blade that had shot out from the heel of her shoes before throwing it off to the side in one quick motion, the blade embedding itself into the dark shadows of the corner of the ballroom. Insert music. Fairy Tail Ed 19 Never Ever. Ultir and Naruto then began circling each other as all music came to a halt. All who watched the two were in shock at seeing a young beautiful woman appear as if she were trying to kick her dance partner in the head, but the orchestra believed it something different and began to play a far more fast-paced tune to accommodate. Make sure you can keep up, Naruto-kun. She teased him by calling him by his name once more. Naruto's eyes glowed white for a split second as he cracked his neck in anticipation. Naruto and Ultir then began to follow the music, dancing while simultaneously playing their own game. Naruto spun Ultir around, but as she did so, she lashed out with her other hidden heel blade. Naruto let go of her hand and easily plucked the blade free and tossed up into the air where it was stabbed into an unsuspecting electrical lacrima. Though due to being one of many, and being entranced by their dance, no one even noticed it going out. Naruto then stepped forwards and grabbed her by the same hand. Ultir spun along the length of his arm, pressing herself against him as she appeared to meld with his own body. However, the blonde Dragonslayer's left hand came up and held back the knife that was aimed at his rib area. The two walked in a circle to mask her attempt to kill him, but Naruto ended up dragging her down to swing her between his legs, wrenching the knife free before pulling her back and flipping her over his shoulder. Her dress flared, but she tucked into a ball to keep her hidden weapons and her modesty concealed. The nobles and other watchers of the well-masked killing game clapped, while some of the men released wolf act to her feet and performed a rather dramatic bending of her back, her upper body hovering at an angle perpendicular to the ground, as Naruto hurled the weapon at her head. The weapon flew so quickly, only those with capable eyes such as their own would have been able to keep track of it. The knife had already sailed out of the massive doors of the castle as Ultir rose back up to her full height and found her way back into the blonde's grasp. The two followed each other in unnatural synchronization. "For a drunk, you're very good at this," he admitted. "I'm good at a lot of things, Naruto-kun." She chuckled as she continued to keep in time with the fast-paced music and his equally fast-paced footwork. "You will have to do much better than that if you want to kill me, bitch." "Oh, don't worry you vain bastard," she smirked, "I will." As she said this, Naruto held her by her lower back and Ultir went with the flow to perform the dipping action. But she suddenly bucked her chest as she was pushed back up, freeing the knife located between her cleavage. She caught the blade in her teeth just as Naruto pulled out the blade she hid within her dress just below her lower back, where the backless characteristic of her dress had come to an end, before flinging it under the nearby food table. Her dark eyes narrowed as she spat her remaining knife at his face with a sudden use of fast forward. Naruto chuckled as he tilted his head to the side, the weapon now lost to the Garden of Mercurius as it went out the window. "Very good," he said as he suddenly raised her right leg up. His hand slowly trailed up the long limb, and Ultir released a gasp, her eyes wide as she felt where his hand went. With a sudden jerk, he twirled the small blade she had hidden beneath the right side of her dress and then hurled it, and the other knife, expertly into the forehead of one of the ballroom's paintings of Toma's visage. "But not good enough," he chided her. "Bastard." Ultir scowled. She thought she had kept the weapon well hidden via the strap on her thigh. With a roll of her eyes, she was spun around, Naruto supporting her lower back as she was dropped down into a dip. The collective crowd clapped and cheered as the music and the dance came to an end. A confident smirk then came to Naruto's face as he and Ultir rose back up to their full heights. He rested his forehead against hers and stared deeply into her eyes, blue meeting black. "I win, bitch." Suite 130 Jade Tower, Crocus, Fury. "Troublesome woman." Naruto muttered as he half-dragged, half-carried the drunk woman to the bedroom. "Fuck you," Ultir snapped back. "You're the one who decided to be a fucking show-off and spin me errand during the dancing. You could have just stood there and taken the knives like a man, and died, but no." She drawled out. "You wanted to be a fucking bastard about it and make it into a game. You even flipped me over your shoulder. The hell was that about?" "You sure you don't want me to take her off your hands?" Matabi asked. "I've dealt with drunk Yugito-chan, so drunk Ult-chan shouldn't be any different." "It's fine, Matabi." Naruto assured her with a sigh. "Besides, with her drunk, it will be a lot easier to look into her deeper memories and see if I drag up anything concerning Tartaros' whereabouts." The heterochromatic-eyed Exceed gave the son of Acnologia a hard stare before slowly nodding her head. "Very well. Good night, Ult-chan." "Murpham," the drunk woman replied with a wave of her hand as she buried her face into the pillows. The door shut and Naruto released another sigh as he raised his hand up. The wind swirled to life and a small orb formed around the small needles Ultir just spat at him, stopping a few centimeters away from his face and neck. "I knew you had these under your tongue. It didn't have the same scent as blood, so the metallic scent had to be a weapon." "Damn it, I fucking hate you, you insufferable bastard," she screamed into the pillow. "The feeling is mutual in every aspect, Milkovich." A period of silence then passed between the two, Naruto staring out of the window that overlooked the bright lights of the capital city. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Utsuzumi. "You do know that I really do know nothing about Tartaros' location?" "I do. Yet you still kept me around." She then gained a confused look. "Why?" Naruto laughed lightly before shrugging. "Well, the first and foremost reason would be having to deal with Matabi." He answered. "She loves you, and so does your sister. I kill you, I'll be dealing with Matabi at her full power. I could handle her by herself, but with Shukaku, Kakuo and Chome all standing with her, I would be placed into quite the conundrum. It would be extremely difficult battling against 4 of the 9 at their full sizes and at the peak of their abilities." "You're so arrogant and vain, you know that?" Ultir rolled her eyes. "You think you can win against the 9? "I don't think I can, Milkovich," Naruto replied. "I developed a string of combinations with my seal magic that would be capable of restraining and holding back the 9. Once I can achieve that, I know I can win. But they are stronger when they fight together for some reason, but it is an admirable quality among the 9. The way they hold each other so closely, like as if should one of them be killed, then they are all killed. Kurama made it quite clear how much he loves his siblings, and I can respect him for that." "So what are the other reasons for keeping me around?" Ultir asked. "You said that the stuff concerning Matabi-chan was the first and foremost, so what's the rest?" To that question, Naruto merely shrugged. "I honestly don't know. I looked into your mind every time over the past week with the hopes that something would come up, but I wanted some reassurance for myself, I guess." His head dropped before he turned to Ultir. "I wanted to kill you, Rid myself of your existence because of how dragon-damned annoying you are. But you were the only thing at my disposal that I could use to even have a glimmer of hope of finding Kurama. Altair sat up, grunting a bit as she felt a bit of a head rush. She scooted over to his side before joining him and looking out the window. Look here, I'm not saying this to make you feel better. This is just my guilt talking, in addition to a bit of alcohol. She frowned a bit as the blonde didn't even laugh at the small joke she made. Damn hard ass. Anyway, I truly am sorry for making you, Matabi-chan and the others lose Kurama. You were our only target, you were the only target that I was aware of. Anything involving Kurama, I was kept in the dark about for who knows how long. What I sent Yugito-chan and Matabi-chan to do, it was merely to keep tabs on you and try to keep ahead of you so that you wouldn't interfere with Grimoire Heart's plans. Naruto remained silent for a while before glancing at her out of the corner of his eye. Your words are merely that, Milkovich. Just words. You can say anything and everything you want to say, but unless one of those things is the location of where Tartaros is, your words mean nothing. Why do you have to ruin this stuff, huh? I'm trying to apologize and yet you still gotta be a bastard about it. She scoffed. You've always got this strong, confident look in your eyes, like the world around you was made to be yours. That everything is beneath you. Now you're mopey and depressed and shit, and it annoys the fuck out of me for some reason. What happened to not saying your words to make me feel better? He asked with a twinkle of amusement in his eyes. Altair glared at him before shoving her middle finger in his face. Fuck you. Your tongue is very loose when you are intoxicated, Milkovich. I can do a lot of things with my tongue that most men and women could only dream of, she mumbled with a scoff. Are you aware of the context of your dialogue? He asked with a raised eyebrow. Bitch please, I'm well aware of how dirty that sounded, but I can't help it if it's true. I've seen my dancing skills and I can assure you that I have skills in the art of using my tongue in many ways. She counted her skills out on her fingers. I'm sure you can, he replied with an eye roll. You doubted me, bastard? Do not try to goad me into making you prove anything, Milkovich. Naruto turned to stare into her eyes. I partook in your little game of attempting to kill me only to humor you, but that is the one and only time I will ever indulge your actions. Never again shall I do so. What's the matter, Naruto-kun? You probably never kissed a girl, or maybe you're just afraid that you're not as fearless as you proclaim yourself to. Her dialogue came to a sudden halt as Naruto gripped her by the chin and crashed his lips against her own. A blush turned her face crimson as his tongue snaked its way into her mouth. Her mixture of shock and her intoxicated state of mind suddenly made her enjoy the kiss more than she should have. She moved to do battle against his tongue with her own, her eyes becoming half-lidded as she brought her arms up around his neck to deepen the kiss. Time seemed to stand still, the world stopped spinning, but then it all came to an end as the blonde pulled away. I am many things, Milkovich, but I am never afraid. Naruto rose up from the bed and then walked out of the room. For a few moments, Altair stared at the spot where the young man had just sat. Her face was a mixture of emotions. Confusion, surprise, a hint of arousal. She raised a hand, touching her lips with her fingertips. What the hell just happened? Prison level, Tartaros Guild, underground, fury. So I was thinking. Nope, Gaia scowled as she turned to glare at Uranos. The white-haired man stared in shock at his fellow primordial. But I didn't even get to finish what I wanted to say, he whined. You want to ask me out? Again. Gaia sighed, and you wanted to lead to SX, again. Oh come on, Gaia-chan. We've been working together for years, you can't keep the Tsunere act up forever. I'm not being Tsunere, Uranos, she replied as she ran her hand through her dark hair, tucking the single lock of blonde behind her ear. Being Tsunere would imply that even though I abuse you, I secretly like you. Which you do. Which I don't, she snapped. Now shut up, Uranos, and let's just get this job done. The two primordials turned away from each other to look at the panting and bleeding form of Kurama. The four-tailed kitsune's crimson eyes shone with unadulterated fury as he glared at them. Blood flowed from his jaws as spears of rock speared through his limbs, tails and his chest. His body bore long lacerations from Uranos' wind blades. His fur was also soaking wet as arcs of blue electricity running across his form. The elements of the sky and the earth served as the mechanisms of torture for the transformed Exceed, but even after everything he had went through, he had not been broken. I told you, you disgusting humans, he snarled, I will never broken. You damn kitsune. Why? Won't you submit? Gaia shouted, stabbing him repeatedly with an earth spike with each word. Kurama released a gasp of pain as the earth spike suddenly released branching spikes that erupted through numerous parts of his body. The earth spikes then dematerialized and Kurama's regeneration worked to bring his body back to its original state. Because I am far too proud. I have seen the gates of a true hell. I have seen fire, I have seen blood, I have seen bodies litter the land, and all because of one woman's attempt to take control of the world she was already revered in. I was once a part of the very creature that nearly brought an end to Daedalus over 400 years ago. And knowing that a human who was blinded by her own power was the cause of such a cataclysm, I could not trust humans. Kurama chuckled. But then her son showed my siblings and I what needless death and destruction will cause. He taught us what it meant to show the world that people deserve second chances because of the simple fact that they are humans. They make mistakes and they end up learning from them in order to survive. Kurama's head snapped up and he aimed a defiant glare at the two primordials and roared. I will not be the pet and puppet of people who follow a similar ideal of that woman. Well, that's a shame. Gaia and Uranos turned to see a plume of azure flame appear behind them. The azure flames then vanished to reveal the shadowed form of the Master of Tartaros. Because your days of resistance are over, Onibi Mayobu. Master. Gaia and Uranos stepped aside as their master stepped towards their prisoner, bowing to the powerful man. The sounds of chains dragging on the ground followed behind the steps of his armored boots. The single azure torch's light showed the chained figure to be a blue-scaled lizard man. Gaia, Uranos, you have done well to continuously try to subjugate the beast over the past week. I will admit your resilience is impressive, Onibi. But it ends now. The Master of Tartaros roughly pulled the lizard man forward and bent his head low to speak to the lizard man. I heard what happened to your leader, Red Claw. I know he died and left you in charge, but I found you. You saw what I did to your thousands of tribe members. I had them slaughtered mercilessly. I made you watch as males, females, children. I made it so you couldn't turn away as they decorated the forest floor with their blood. So, Bloodfang. If you don't want the same thing to happen to you, or worse, because I can very well make you endure things worse than death, you will obey me and use your eyes to make the kitsune obey me. Do I make myself clear? Bloodfang whimpered, but nodded readily. Why yes. Good. You think a mere lizard man will allow you to make your puppet? You are far more delusional than ever. Kurama watched the lizard man lumber towards him, marveling at the numerous and bloody scars that decorated his scaled visage. However, as Bloodfang raised his head, he opened his eyes and Kurama's own widened in shock. He moved to close his eyes and to avert his head, but he was too slow, and due to being bound, he could not shift his body by even a single centimeter. Sharingan. Bloodfang's crimson eyes glowed and the three black tomo began to rotate rapidly around his pupils. Kurama roared in defiance, trying to fight the force that battered his brain to make him submit. The struggle was in vain however, as the Onibi Mayobu's roars were silenced, his head dropping limply. The single blue flame of the prison's torch shadowed the kitsune's face, but after a minute, Kurama raised his head. His face now bore a blank look upon it, but his vertical pupils had vanished and the crimson of his irises becoming a much deeper shade as it was replaced with the image of the Sharingan. The Master of Tartaros grinned widely, his gray eyes gaining a shine of almost childish glee. Now tell me, Onibi Mayobu, who do you serve? I serve you. Master. Kurama replied in a monotone. The Master of Tartaros chuckled before nodding his head in satisfaction. With a snap of his fingers, the chains and seals that bound the kitsune were removed. The four-tailed kitsune dropped down from the wall, landing on all fours, but made no movements whatsoever, merely staring at the Master of Tartaros. Gaia, Uranos. He turned to Gaia and Uranos, the two primordials still kneeling, waiting for their superior's orders. Prepare the cube to carry our new pet for the drop-off. Yes, Master. Gaia and Uranos replied. Come, Bloodfang. The Master of Tartaros dragged his captive along the ground by his chains. Let's see how well the Magic Council can defend against my new weapon of mass destruction. Suite 130 Jade Tower, Crocus, Fury Ultir yawned as she rose from her slumber. She stretched out her tight muscles and cracked her joints, sighing in relief as the tension within them was relieved. She rubbed the sleep out of her eyes before frowning as she noticed she was still wearing her dress from last night. Damn, I must have been a lot more drunk than I thought. Her dark eyes turned away from her state of dress and focused on the small bag of clothes she had bought the other day. She browsed through the bag and then picked out her outfit, proceeding to head to the bathroom. She gave the fiery Bakaneko a small smile and wave as she came to greet her. Hey Ul-chan. Bath? Yup. Great, I'll join you. I want to join too. Shukaku's voice rang out, earning a glare from his heterochromatic-eyed sister. Shukaku's golden eyes met her yellow and green ones, but when she turned into a plume of fire to block off his attempt to get in via turning into sand, the small sibling skirmish was effectively halted. And don't come in and try to peek. Try that again and I'll turn you to glass. Matabi smirked in triumph, but her eyes narrowed when she saw the small golden eye that materialized out of sand. Her body shook with restrained rage, growling at the hovering eyeball. And no third eye, she shouted. With a quick burst of sapphire and ebony flame, the eye was turned to glass before being shattered with a whip of her fiery tail. She slammed the bathroom door shut with her lips curled into a snarl of annoyance. Damn Otuto. Was Shukaku always like that? She asked as she turned on the water to fill the bath. A perverted pain in the ass? No, he just used to be a pain in the ass. Mutabi replied, earning a sweat drop from Ultir. But he's family, and I do love him. No matter what he does or what he says, I will always back him up. Insert music. Angel Beats scoffed in amusement, a hollow smile forming on her face. I wish I could say the same for my family. The water had then reached a suitable level, and Ultir turned off the source before undressing and climbing into the relaxing hot water. A sigh of relief escaped her lips as she settled herself inside the tub. However, not even a minute had passed before her moment of silence was interrupted by her feline best friend. Oh yeah, I never got around to asking about it during our travels because Naruto was such a slave driver on the way here. But what was it that got Yugito-chan so angry at you, Ul-chan? She told me to ask you about what it was that led to your little spat. Mitabi hovered in front of Ultir's face. Ultir's dark eyes shifted so she wouldn't have to look at the heterochromatic-eyed Exceed, a period of silence passing between the two females. Ultir took a deep breath as she gathered her thoughts before she stared back at Mitabi. I lied to you both is what I did, she stated. I went after the Ogono Fujin and Onibi Myobo, even after I promised to you both that I wouldn't. Yugito even cried and begged in order to get me to stop, but in the end I didn't. Though, in my defense, when Master Hades ordered the attack on Clover Town, I had no idea that the bastard would appear with Kurama to try and stop us. So, you didn't know that Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze and the Ogono Fujin were the same man? Mitabi asked. Ultir nodded. That's right, and while I tried to explain that to her, that my mission was to try and kill Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze and him turning out to be the Ogono Fujin when Master Hades managed to subdue him was nothing more than a coincidence. She wouldn't believe me because she claimed that this lie was the straw that broke the camel's back. She called me out on all of my previous lies to get her to help Grimoire Heart gain information for their more discreet jobs, and even the ones that were more personal such as why I never showed up for Christmas or our birthdays. Ultir sighed. Mitabi listened intently as Ultir began to go through the list of every single lie and false truths she had been telling her and Yugito in order to achieve her goals, and with each one, Mitabi could practically feel the change in the way she would see the younger Milkovich. Though, I guess now that I think about what she said, I do deserve her anger since all of these lies being stacked up on one another ended with Kurama getting captured by Tartaros. Mitabi's eyes widened at that before they narrowed into a dangerous glare. What? Mitabi exclaimed. Wait, so you knew that they had come to take away Onisama? You. Her tiny body shook with restrained fury, but the same could not be said for the magic energy and killing intent that was rolling off of her body. You helped the people who came to capture Kurama. No, Ultir exclaimed, holding her hand up as if it would shield her from her friend's wrath. I had no idea that Tartaros came to visit us with the intention of trying to capture Kurama. I didn't even know why they were with us in the first place when Master Hades attacked Clover Town. Master Hades must have done something to strike a deal with them, but I swear to the dragons, Mitabi-chan, I had no idea this would happen, you have to believe me. The waves of killing intent and magic died down, but Mitabi's claws still retracted and lengthened every so often as she aimed to rein in her emotions. And why should I believe you now? Ultir winced at the icy tone of voice. According to what you've told me and what you tried to convey to Yugito-chan, you're a manipulative compulsive liar who would even lie to your loved ones if it meant getting close to achieving that one magic bullshit and resurrecting your beloved Zarif-sama. Now look where it's gotten you. You think I don't know that, Mitabi-chan? Tears lined her eyes as she looked straight at the blue and black furred Exceed. I thought I was doing what was best. Well, obviously you didn't. Mitabi sighed before turning away from her friend. There are so many things I want to tell you right now. So many things just so I could vent and get it through your thick skull that your actions do have consequences. However, I'm sure Yugito-chan would have told you all of that and then some. She loves you unconditionally, and she always will. But given how she acted towards you before we split up, you obviously crossed the line with her, and you've crossed the line with me too. I see. Ultir sunk into the bath water a bit. So you're going to leave my fate up to the Fujin too, huh? I would be lying if I said I didn't want to see what he would do to you now that I know what you did. Mitabi smiled sadly at her friend. When I talked with Naruto a few months ago, when I managed to finally find Onisama after so many years, you could tell that the two of them held a strong bond. He said Kurama was his best friend. Ultir muttered softly, more to herself than to Mitabi. Well, then all the more reason for his anger and annoyance with you to be seen as justified. You don't expect forgiveness after you cause someone to lose their best friend right before their eyes, and while you did say that you had no idea that Tartaros was planning to capture Kurama, those words will continue to fall on deaf ears until Naruto is reunited with Onisama and Onisama can convince him otherwise. Mitabi sighed before patting Ultir on the head. I love you, Ul-chan. I really do, but you're just such an idiot sometimes. Ultir couldn't help but laugh slightly at her friend's jab. So I guess I'd be selling myself dreams if I can assume that you would ever forgive me? I told you I love you, Ul-chan, so I'll forgive you now just to get it over with. Mitabi assured her. But my trust is something that will take years for you to get back, if you get it back at all. The conversation came to an abrupt halt at that point. Ultir proceeded to go through the task of completing her bath. She lathered, rinsed and repeated as she applied shampoo, conditioner and body wash before finally pulling the plug to drain out the water. She rose out of the tub and reached for the towel to wrap around her body. But just as she was about to do so, the door slammed open to reveal the face of the Ogo no Fujin. "Oi, Milkovich, lunch is ready," he stated. Altair gave the blonde a deer in the headlights expression, and Naruto raised an eyebrow in confusion at her current state. "What? Why are you staring at me like some sort of idiot, Milkovich?" Altair continued to stare at Naruto in complete shock, her body frozen at having never expected the young man to just barge into the bathroom of all places. She glanced past the blonde and saw Shukaku, Chome and Kakuo were peeking in to get a view of the verbal lashing she was receiving, though it was also to get a view at Altair's body from Shukaku's point of view. Altair gave the blonde man a sickeningly sweet smile, and Naruto raised an eyebrow in confusion. "Why are you smiling, Milkovich? I strongly advise you hurry up and put on your clothes lest Shukaku and Kakuo eat everything." "Man, this is hilarious." Shukaku and Chome laughed, while Kakuo rolled his eyes at the immaturity of his two siblings. The three Exceed then widened their eyes as Matabi flew out of the bathroom and grabbed them, forcing them to the floor. "Hit the deck. I was just in the bath, you miserable bastard." She then picked up the shampoo bottle and proceeded to hurl it at the blonde. Naruto easily dodged it before he stepped to the side to avoid the barrage of bathing products that began to lay scattered about the bathroom floor. "Don't you have any decency? Do you have no shame? How dare you barge into a bathroom unannounced while you are fully aware a woman is inside? Now get out!" Bars of soap bombarded the blonde, followed by more bottles of shampoo, body wash and… "Did you seriously just throw a hair dryer at my head?" Naruto quickly avoided THNG fire when he caught and threw back the various types of shampoo and conditioner bottles aimed at his head. It was going to be a weird experience to explain to the Jade Tower's manager why there were various scented oils and bottles of bathing products that were sliced open by wind blades now dirtying the bathroom floor. Once the fighting had died down, Altair huffed and puffed, her face red with rage and embarrassment, and a towel wrapped securely around her body. "Bastard!" Altair growled through gritted teeth. She then registered Naruto's earlier words concerning their meal. "Wait, lunch?" "Yes, Milkovich." Naruto gave the Arc of Time user an amused grin before pointing at the clock on the wall. She followed his fingers pointing path, her eyes wide at how late she had slept. "It's 2 in the afternoon. Personally, I would have woken you up at first light, but Matabi believed it to be best to let you sleep in due to your formerly intoxicated state. You're such a bastard, Namikaze, and you are still very much a bitch, Milkovich." Naruto then left the room, leaving Altair alone to seethe in the aftermath of her rage. She had quickly quelled it, realizing she'd be only giving the blonde bastard more of a reason to continuously call her a bitch. Once she had calmed down, she had went on to brushing her teeth and drying herself off. She put on her new outfit and looked it over in the mirror. It was a dark green, skin-tight shirt and a pair of dark blue jeans. Over her shirt, she wore a dark brown jacket. On her hands, she donned a pair of black, fingerless gloves that had metal plates on the back, and her feet were covered by a pair of high-heeled black boots. She finished her bathroom routine by blow-drying and brushing her hair. "You know, old-chan, you look so much like your mother in that outfit." Altair froze as she looked over herself in the mirror. She frowned as she noticed her friend was correct. If it weren't for her hair being extremely long, one could have easily mistaken her for her mother. "That is not something I would take pride in," she muttered before she headed out of the bathroom and joined the other Exceed and Naruto at the table, where a hearty lunch consisting of the leftovers of the food bought by Shukaku and Kakuo the day before was laid out across it. Altair took a few of the smoked salmon sandwiches along with a tall glass of juice. However, despite her best efforts to keep her focus on eating her meal, she found her mind drifting back to the situation that had occurred last night between herself and Naruto. She glanced up from her second sandwich, her dark eyes suddenly finding themselves being met by orbs of sapphire. Flashes of their kiss suddenly appeared in her mind's eyes, a small blush now decorating her face. She quickly glanced back down at her sandwiches and hurriedly stuffed them down her throat. Naruto noted the redness of her face before rising from his seat. He walked around the table and then bent down so that his forehead touched hers. Altair's face turned completely red at the close proximity, and she quickly pushed the blonde away. She rose from her chair and glared at him. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she exclaimed. "I was curious," he replied. "Your face was red, your heart rate and breathing were elevated, and you were not acting as loud and insulting as you usually do. I suspected something to be wrong, so I decided to check your temperature. I was told that touching foreheads is actually quite an effective method of doing so." And why would you care how I feel?" Altair stuttered a bit. "Only people who are close to each other do that. We are in no way close, and unless you think that kiss meant anything, then you are sorely mistaken." "What?" the Exceed exclaimed. "You two kissed?" "No," Altair snapped. "No we didn't. I mean, yeah we did, but it didn't mean shit. I mean it was good and… Gah, just shut up. This is all your fault." Altair directed her coal-black eyes at the Apocalypse Dragonslayer's indifferent face. "When did this happen?" Matabi exclaimed. "How? Why? Is that the reason why you asked me to leave you alone with her last night, Naruto? To answer your questions, it occurred last night. I placed my lips on hers, as I trust that is usually how the kiss is initiated. As for the why, she claimed I would be too afraid of being capable of performing the act, so I mainly aimed to prove her wrong. And finally, no, that was not the reason I asked you to leave me with her. Naruto then turned away from the four exceed siblings and faced Ultir. I understand that we are not close, and the kiss does mean nothing to me. As I just said, it was mainly as a retort to when you claimed I would be too afraid of doing so. Also, as I told you last night, I am many things, but I am never afraid. Then why the forehead touching thing? Despite my lack of ability to care, I do show some level of concern for those who serve under me. Naruto replied. Ultir raised an eyebrow and she waved her hands frantically in front of her body. Whoa whoa whoa, who is serving who with the what now? This time it was Naruto's turn to raise an eyebrow. I do not see why this is difficult to understand. Naruto said. Last night, I gave you my reasons as to why I have not killed you. As a result, it would be in both our best interests for you to serve under me as my subordinate. 4 of the 7 kin of purgatory are dead. Your airship is effectively destroyed and I am quite sure I killed quite a number of your own guild's members, including your master. With Grimoire Heart crippled, it would make sense that you should follow my commands now. Grimoire Heart's resources are not limited to a single airship, and I highly doubt you would have been able to kill Master Hades. Ultir retorted. She then crossed her arms beneath her chest and gave the blonde Dragonslayer a harsh glare. I will not follow you. Even if I am unable to use my magic because of your annoying seals, that does not mean you can make me submit. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose in annoyance before raising his arm, a glare fixated on the Arc of Time Mage. You really are an annoying woman. Insert music, Fairy Tale Tower of Heaven. Magic Council HQ, Era, Fury Era was a massive city-state that lay upon the very borderline of the Kingdom of Fury and the Country of Seven. It was a very well-constructed city, with beautifully made buildings that housed quite a large population as at least 1/5 of the population of Fury resided within the walls of the city. A population of at least 20,000 people. In the center of the city was a massive mountain that was strategically capable of giving a bird's eye view of the entire city. It was atop this mountain where the Magic Council had placed their main base of operations. We have finished the relocation of the Fiorian branch building near to Clover Town, Gurin Doma-sama, Org-sama. One of the amphibious council workers stated as he read the paperwork in front of him. Good. Org nodded. Ever since the heart attack, Clover Town needs more help than ever with the rebuilding and helping those who are still injured. To think that members of the Balam Alliance would be so forward in their strikes. Where are the numbers? The purple-skinned noob looked over the papers before pulling out one. Oh, here they are. Around 150 people are confirmed dead, but those are just from the bodies recovered at the scene. There may be more. Approximately 250 were heavily injured, but they are recovering and it is confirmed they will survive in the long run. Also, our letters to the king have returned. He has agreed to send his own guardsmen to transport supplies to the people of Clover Town, as well as giving a generous donation to the rebuilding of the town. As generous as ever, that Toma. Org chuckled. How are the Rune Knight faring in their investigations? Doma asked as he stamped his staff on the floor periodically. Have head captain Lahar and his men managed to learn anything about as to why Grimoire Heart a defenseless town? No, Doma-sama. The worker replied as he sifted through the papers. They have investigated the area where Grimoire Heart had fired their Jupiter cannon, and looked through the town's layout. But after reviewing what buildings were in the area, they found nothing of significance. Just a few dozen homes and just a few shopping centers. Maybe it was just a show of force, Doma-sama. One councilwoman suggested. Maybe they thought that since we defeated Oracion Siete, that we, the Magic Council, needed a reason to fear the Balam Alliance. It does match the mo of a prideful dark guild, but it hadn't even been a day since the Light Guild Alliance brought an end to Oracion. Doma replied. No, there was something that set them off. The Balam Alliance was always strategic and precise in whatever acts they carried out, and they usually hid them quite well. It was only thanks to our satellite square Etherean's viewing capabilities and detection apparatus that we managed to keep up with the sum of actions of their human trafficking, among other things. I concur with Doma-san. Org nodded. Have Lahar and the other Rune Knights at the Fiorian branch continue their investigations. Report back to us at the end of the week. Yes, Org-sama. The doors slammed shut as the worker left. A period of silence passed through the council room before Doma stamped his staff on the ground, knocking anyone out of their stupor. All right. We cannot afford to be distracted by the heart attack and its effects on the kingdom alone. We have other matters to attend to, Doma said before turning to a young, black-haired councilman. Hiro-san, I recall that prior to the heart attack, you had a suggestion concerning one of the council's future projects. Gurin Doma said. Org and the other members of the Magic Council turned to their fellow council member, the young man nodding and clearing his throat as he rose up from his seat. Well, it was just an idea I had ever since the debacle concerning Phantom Lord and Fairy Tail. The young councilman spoke. That entire situation was a result of Phantom Lord's jealousy towards Fairy Tail, where it was said that Fairy Tail was the best guild in Fury. Now, while that is allegedly true, the fact remains that there is no legitimate proof that Fairy Tail is in fact the best guild in Fury. There is no proof to claim that any of the guilds in Fury are not the #1 guild in the kingdom. So what are you proposing? Org asked. Well, my idea is to create a tournament that would help in removing any forms of jealousy brought about between rival guilds. As you know, in the ancient history of Earthland, dating back to the Greek and Roman empires, there were games created to test the merit of gladiators and various combatants in the Colosseum. You are referring to the Olympic Games, correct? A female council member asked. Precisely. Hiro pointed to his fellow council member excitedly. Now, imagine that, but for all mage guilds across the kingdom. It would help settle petty rivalries, and also be a substitute to wanting to take part in guild wars. The Magic Council all looked at Hiro with impressed looks on their faces. Doma stroked his large beard, nodding as he processed the younger man's words. I will admit, the idea has merit. However, the council will have to lay out and manage the paperwork necessary to bring about such a large-scale event. Doma said. However, before the council could make any further discussion, an image flickered to life in the center of their table. Good afternoon, my dear Magic Council. How dare you interrupt the meeting of the Magic Council? The councilman roared. Org's eyes widened along with the eyes of the tiny owl ornament atop his head, noticing the image of the twin hammers emblazoned on the intruder's chestplate. Tartaros! Org exclaimed in shock. The other council members turned to Org with wide eyes before turning back to the thought projection standing before them. Arrest him! Gurren Doma shouted. He slammed his staff on the ground and immediately an entire platoon of rune knights swarmed into the room. Their staffs pointed threateningly at him. One of the rune knights then hopped atop the marble table and moved to strike with her lance, but all eyes widened as the polearm phased through the image. A thought projection. A councilwoman stated, Who are you? As the second seed had just stated, I am a member of the deadliest guild amongst the Balam Alliance. I am a member of Tartaros, but not just any member. I am its master. His gray eyes widened, and burst of killing intent and magic energy then flared out from the thought projection and everyone in the room, even the powerful rune knights, were brought to their knees. It felt as if the force of gravity had increased tenfold. For years, Tartaros has remained hidden within the shadows, but due to the circumstances regarding our newest addition to our forces, I thought a show of force and a test run of this addition was required. And what better way can a dark guild perform such an act, than by attacking the very symbol of law and order in the magic world? Isn't that right, Onibi Mayobo? Suddenly, a hole was punched through the ceiling by a blast of magical energy. Quickly avoiding the rubble, all eyes turned skyward as they caught sight of the massive cube-shaped airship that was Tartaros' method of aerial transportation. The cube, as it was so appropriately named, a massive, buoyant cubed island that harbors several rocky terrains spread about on its surface. Suddenly, the underside of the cube opened up to show a massive hole. Out of the hole came a large metal cube which wasn't even small enough to fit through the hole from the magical energy blast that was fired earlier. As a result, the metallic cube smashed through the more of the building's ceiling. The council members released cries of fright and surprise before leaping out of the way to avoid being crushed. The marble table was crushed into rubble and the shockwave from the impact sent both rune knights and council members flying through the air. Gurren Doma grunted as he rose back to his feet, his legs as he was forced to support himself with his staff. Everyone then glanced at the massive metal cube. It was about the size of a horse. The master of Tartaros chuckled and then snapped his fingers. The cube released an audible hiss as its locking mechanisms were undone, and the cube fell apart. Standing before them was a small, red and black furred exceed wearing a fox costume. This is your mighty weapon? Org grunted. An exceed? Insert music. Code Geass the Master. Oh, this is not just any exceed, Org-san. The master of Tartaros shook his head. As he said this, the exceed dropped down on all fours. The people in the room watched in fascination as the fox costume suddenly bound itself to the exceed as if it were a second skin. Bones and musculature rearranged themselves and the feline creature became a red and black furred canine. Oh Onibi. Mayobo. That's impossible. So the Ogo no Fujin is a dark mage. He is working with Tartaros. You are extremely incorrect, Magic Council. The Ogo no Fujin is not a part of my guild, nor will he ever be. Standing at the size of a full-grown bull elephant, 4 tails swished through the air. However, the Kitsune did not stop there as the tails continued to grow in number, a 5th tail now sprouting into existence. I have no use for a Dragonslayer, as they are put men with the powers of dragons. What I wanted was a demon. 6 tails. A monster to raise anything and everything in my path. 7 tails. Behold, the most powerful creature in all of Earthland, a beast whose very strength can stand among that of dragons. 8 tails. This is not the Onibi Myobu anymore, my dear Magic Council. Oh no. He deserves a far more menacing and suitable moniker now. The Master of Tartaros laughed maniacally as he spread his arms apart, and the grin on his face threatened to split his face as he gazed upon the majesty of HT Rukshin. Standing at a towering height of 260 feet, the Kitsune cast a massive shadow over the land he stood upon. Ivory fangs dripped with saliva and similarly colored claws dug into the stone and marble of the Magic Council HQ as he had broken through the roof in its entirety. His crimson and black fur ruffled with the strong winds. Crimson eyes bearing the image of the Sharingan instead of his usual vertical slitted pupils stared into the souls of the humans before him. 9 massive tails swished behind the gargantuan Kitsune. Go forth and destroy. Kyubi, Suite 130 Jade Tower, Crocus, Fury. Matabi's eyes widened before she flew in front of Ultir, her arms spread out protectively. Naruto, what are you doing? Stand aside, Matabi. Naruto ordered. If she will not stand with me, then she stands against me, as she always has. It's best to rid myself of her before she can become more of a problem than she already is. Wait, I thought you said. Ultir stammered, but Naruto interrupted her. I know what I said, and I don't want to do this. If you don't want to, then don't, Ultir argued. You hold the capabilities of being a valuable asset to me, Ultir Milkovich, and I'd rather you be that than dead at my feet. However, if that is truly your answer, then I will do what I must to ensure the safety of myself and those who serve me. You're the second in command of Grimoire Heart and a threat. Naruto replied evenly, so. The tension in room grew to unbelievable levels, but then all of that left once Naruto made a few hand motions. Seal magic. Pocket dimension. The rip in spacetime opened up and Naruto reached into its swirling depths. The others gained confused looks on their faces as Naruto then retracted his arm from the darkness of the pocket dimension and revealed a slip of paper to be held in his hand. He walked up to Ultir and gripped her by the wrist and placed the paper in her hands. What's this? She asked. Naruto opened his mouth to reply, but just as he was about to, he felt the all-too-familiar feeling of magic energy pulsating in his cloak pocket. The blue-eyed Dragonslayer's eyes then narrowed, causing Ultir to raise an eyebrow confusion when he suddenly let go of her hand. He reached into the pocket of his cloak, removing the communication sealed tag from it. Insert music. Naruto Orochimaru's theme, speak. He ordered as he pumped the necessary magic to activate the seal. Fujin-sama. Su's voice rang out in his mind. This is just. It's good news, but it's also horrible news. Do not bother me with good and bad, just say whatever it is you have to tell me. Naruto heard Su gulp audibly, swallowing the lump in her throat before she spoke. Fujin-sama, we found the Onibi Myobu. He is an era, but, he's what? Naruto snarled. Tell me, he's on a rampage in era. We don't understand what's going on. We found him with the LORA, but everyone across the kingdom is aware of this because of the Lacrima vision. It's already begun to show on every channel. Naruto quickly grabbed the remote for the Lacrima vision and switched it on. The screen lit up upon activation and immediately turned into a large, breaking news symbol. The four Exceed and Ultir looked at the screen. The image of a young male reporter stood in front of the Vision Lacrima's camera, but upon looking past him, all 6 pairs of eyes were wide in shock as the scene of the once proud era was nothing more than smoke and fire. My name is Jason. You all normally recognize me as the guy who does all the cool pictures and cool interviews with Fairy Tail, but today is not a cool day. Jason said as he adjusted the suit and tie he was wearing, obviously not comfortable with doing such a broadcast. It is a dark day for the city of Era as out of nowhere, destruction had been wrought. Not too long ago, the Dark Guild known as Grimoire Heart had launched a devastating attack on Clover Town. A scene that had been dubbed the Heart Attack. However, it appears that this travesty is at a far greater magnitude than the attack on Clover Town. The newscaster stepped out of the way and the Lacrima vision cameras zoomed in on the scene. Columns of black smoke rose from the falling infrastructure, scattering ash, dust and debris over a wide area. Crimson flames cast their glows over the destroyed cityscape. The screams and cries for help from the various citizens of Era echoed through the speakers of the Lacrima vision screen. Damn! Shukaku muttered in shock. The Magic Council's HQ is in Era. Shouldn't they be doing something? Chomei asked. Just as she said that, the reporter pointed to the small mountain at the center of the city. To make matters worse, the Magic Council is unable to act because there no longer is a Magic Council. The massive plume of crimson fire burned brightly, making it seem as if the former Magic Council HQ was a volcano of some sort. Black smoke rose from the flames, but then a powerful roar echoed through the air. A devastating shockwave raced out from its source at the top of the mountain and a large rockslide raced down the length of the rocky structure, smashing down whatever buildings or people that were in its path. What was that? Jason exclaimed in shock. Zoom in on that. As the Lacrima zoomed in on the source of the roar, the winds blew wildly and parted the flames. No way. Matabi muttered. Standing in the center of the flames was a massive fox. Crimson eyes glowed with similarly colored light. Ivory fangs and claws sharper than any blade glinted in the light. Red and black fur rustled in the wind, its 9 massive tails swinging menacingly behind it. The fox inhaled deeply before unleashing another powerful roar, the shockwave ripping apart the earth and making the small mountain rumble as it became extremely unstable. "Th, that's the Onibi Myobo, that's the Onibi Myobo," Jason exclaimed in horror. "Quick, get to the magic four-wheeler. We can't keep recording this, we have to get out of here, now." The Lacrima vision screen went black, the words, "network connection lost," replacing the horrific images. Altair was snapped out of her shocked state as Naruto suddenly spun her own, gripping her by her shoulders tightly to the point that she winced in pain. You can teleport. You know teleportation magic?" "I know you do," Naruto exclaimed. Why yeah, I do. But to utilize teleportation magic you need to have an anchor, something to give you a link to the place where you need to teleport to." "Yeah, I have it for just in case purposes ever since I was found out during the Tower of Heaven situation involving Seagrain being Jelal Fernandez in disguise, but if I undo the seal that is sealing off your magic, can you take us to Era?" "But you can fly faster than the speed of sound. Why would you need me to help you get there?" she asked. "I can fly faster than sound, yes, but Era lies at the border of Fury and 7. I would take at least 10 minutes to get there and that is 10 minutes too late. I need to get there immediately. We're already wasting precious time and I need to get to Kurama," Naruto shouted. "Now will you help me or not?" Altair's panic-filled eyes turned to Matabi for some form of help, but the same pleading look in Naruto's sapphire orbs were present in Matabi's own. Altair gulped audibly, swallowing the lump in her throat. She nodded. "Fine. I'll help you, but I'm doing this for Matabi, not for you." "I don't care," Naruto said as he made a few hand motions before holding up his right hand, the tips of his fingers now alight with violet fire. "Raise your shirt up." Altair complied and raised up her shirt to reveal her stomach. The black seal markings glowed violet as they responded to the close proximity of their user's magic energy. Seal magic. Release. The 5 fingers dug into Altair's stomach, the young woman releasing a gasp of pain as the magic energy flooded her system. She fell to her knees, clutching her stomach in pain, but as marveled at how the seal fizzled out of existence. "Amaterasu seal number 50 has been undone. You are now free to use your magic, Altair Milkovich." Altair climbed back to her feet and smiled at the familiar feeling of her magic energy circulating through her body. "You really undid the seal, huh? Now, take us to Kurama." "Alright. Hold on tight." Naruto quickly wrapped an arm around Altair's waist as a violet magic seal sprung to life beneath her feet. Shukaku and Kakuo sat atop Naruto's shoulders, while Altair's were occupied by Matabi and Chome. Teleportation magic. Era. The violet magic seal shone brighter than before, and with a pulse of magic energy. A pillar of violet light encompassed the small group and they vanished from the room. Insert music. Fate 0.0, Era, Fury. The roar burned itself into the minds of all who heard. It was as if time had stood still, as if the world had stopped spinning for just that moment. The vocal equivalent of fear itself raced through the air, encompassing the entire city. And then it happened. Crimson fire rained down as Kurama spewed tongue after tongue of fire upon the grounds of the once majestic city. Kurama roared as he swept his 9 tails through the city. The tiny bodies of men, women, children and animals alike flew through the air like ragdolls. The might of his full power was highlighted as one of his tails smashed into the side of the mountain that supported the Magic Council HQ building. The land formation rumbled and shook as Kurama's tail literally tore through it, and the entire mountain came crashing down. The earth quaked as Kurama stomped through the city. Shockwaves tore the land asunder from his roars. Crimson flames burned through the streets and turned them into ash, and his 9 fearsome tails, in conjunction with his claws and fangs, helped form massive scars in the ground. The forces of the Rune Knights did what they could to delay the beast, creating strong barriers to defend the townsfolk and help the civilians evacuate. Unfortunately, those barriers didn't hold up for more than a few seconds as Kurama easily tore through them with his claws and tails, or just overwhelmed them with a massive fireball. Kurama howled to the heavens before turning to continue razing the city. A violet magic seal then appeared atop a building at the western edge of the city. The pillar of light that erupted forth from the seal then vanished just as quickly as it came, revealing Naruto and Altair with the 4 Exceed siblings. "Damn," Shukaku muttered as he looked over the destruction. "Kurama's been busy. No time to observe his handiwork. Let's go," Matabi shouted at her younger brother. She sprouted her wings and took off towards the rampaging demon Kitsune, her siblings following right after her. Naruto turned to Altair and bowed his head slightly. "You have my gratitude, Altair Milkovich," Naruto said. "Now escape, quickly." "Really? Just like that? You're going to let me go?" "That paper I gave you." Altair glanced at her jeans pocket where she had placed it. "It's a communication seal," he informed her. "Why are you giving me this?" Altair asked as she withdrew the folded up piece of paper. You will return to your dark guild, and you continue to say that you will not join me. However, one day I will make Grimoire Heart fall and kill any and everyone that are aligned with them. However, I will admit that you are an intriguing young woman. So, if at a later date should you choose to take me up on my offer, and you will, you can contact me through that seal tag. And what makes you think I'll join you, even if you do take down Grimoire Heart, which I don't believe you will? Who's to say I don't just leave and travel on my own? Believe me, Milkovich, Naruto said as he curled Altair's fingers around the communication seal. Things always tend to work in my favor. Now go, before I change my mind about wanting to keep you alive when I eradicate Grimoire Heart. Altair scoffed at the threat. You're becoming quite a liar, Naruto-kun. She shouted over the winds as the violet magic seal formed beneath her feet once more. The seal shone brightly and the pillar of light emerged to teleport her away. That's quite the proclamation coming from a woman who claims to hate my very existence, he called back. I do, you bastard. Naruto's blue eyes glowed within the sea of ethereal white light as he called upon the magic of his draconian father. The wind swirled around him before he bent his knees. He then turned back and pointed at her hand, an amused smirk forming on his face. Says the one still wearing the fake engagement ring. Altair glanced down at her hand and her eyes widened as she noticed the dark blue ice ring still firmly attached to her finger. She released a small laugh, the sound dying away into a smile. Well, will you look at that? With that, the two separated. Altair vanishing in a burst of violet light, while Naruto pushed off of the rooftop with enough force to crack it. He arced through the air before diving towards his best friend. Kurama. Kurama paused in his destruction upon hearing his name being called out. His 4 siblings and Naruto hovered behind him, his face buried in the rubble of his latest destroyed building. Onisama. Matabi had tears lighting her eyes. You're okay. Nisan, I know you tend to destroy things when you're mad, but you need to stop. You probably killed thousands of innocent people. Chome gestured to the burning city of Era. This is going too far. Kurama, you need to stop, Kakuo shouted. Yeah, you stupid Kitsune. Shukaku growled. Stop being an asshole and get your shit together. Naruto's eyes narrowed as a period of silence passed between them and Kurama. Their ears twitched in tandem with their widening eyes, and the 5 of them quickly flew around Kurama's 9 tails as he lashed out them. Fate 0 this day and never again. Massive explosions of dust formed as Kurama formed craters from the force of his tail slams. Kurama then turned around and roared, unleashing a shockwave that sent them all tumbling through the air. Goukakyu. Fire pooled within his jaws, condensing and growing in size until a massive fireball formed. Kurama reared back his head and then unleashed the attack. The fireball tore through the burning city towards them, but Naruto quickly called upon the 5-point elemental seal. The red orb-shaped barrier defended against the powerful magic attack, but Naruto gritted his teeth as the explosive end result caused the barrier to crack immensely before falling away. Another fireball came their way, but Naruto quickly spun around. Fudon. Tatsumaki. The massive wind circulation system appeared to defend the Dragonslayer, and the crimson flames mixed with the swirling winds to become a massive fire tornado. The fire tornado then swelled at its center before bursting apart, the small embers being all that remained of Kurama's attack. Naruto's white eyes shone brightly as they met the bloody crimson ones of his best friend. Kurama, stop acting so juvenile and attacking me. Listen to your siblings. Listen to me. Snap out of it. I do not obey you, Naruto. As Kurama raised his head, the evil light that shone within his eyes died away as he snarled. It was then that Naruto took in the appearance of his best friend's eyes. The image of the Sharingan was emblazoned upon his irises. I obey no one but the master. Master? Naruto muttered in disbelief. Never in his wildest dreams had he ever thought Kurama could be broken, to be made into a tool, weapon, or anything synonymous. Kurama stamped in his claws into the ground before thundering across the newly formed battleground, but before the 9-tailed fox could try to bite Naruto, he was tackled from the sides. Kurama sailed through the air before smashing down into the streets and skidded along them. Buildings fell and roads were ruined as Kurama rolled with his momentum and climbed back to his feet. He dug his claws into the burning battleground he had to skid backwards until his friction finally made him come to a stop. Kurama snarled as he snapped his head up to look at the ones that dared to strike him. Standing before him were his siblings in their true forms. Matabi snarled at her brother, her twin tails and body of blue and black hellfire making her menacing appearance even more so. Chome buzzed her wings. Kakuo stamped his hooves and Shukaku bared his fangs. Namikaze, snap out of it, Shukaku shouted. Naruto looked at the Ichibi member of the 9 before looking to Kurama as he flared his tails out behind him. Oni-sama, what have they done to you? Matabi shouted at her brother. The master wants death and destruction. I will grant that wish, he roared, the shockwave sending his siblings skidding backwards a bit. What have they done to Ni-san? The 6-winged kabutomushi beetle asked as she waved her single tail worriedly. It's Tartaros. Kakuo growled out. It has to be. Kurama would never attack us like this. Well, if he won't listen to reason, then we'll just beat the shit out of him until it's over. Shukaku snarled at his older brother before grinning widely. I've waited my whole life to get a crack at you again after so many years, Kurama. Though, I do honestly wish it was under different circumstances. Kokuo's right. The 4 younger members of the 9 turned to son of Acknowledgia. Tartaros turned him into that mindless beast. Kurama is far above any and every being I've ever met. Signs my Tusan. Look at his eyes. Yeah, I noticed that they're different, Kakuo replied. What are those weird symbols in his iris? Some kind of seal? No, it's the symbol of him being controlled. He's being manipulated by the power of the Sharingan, an old ocular-based spell once thought to have been lost with the destruction of my home village 20 years ago. It has the capability of being able to copy almost any and every spell that it sees, can predict an opponent's movements in physical combat before they even make it, and can cast high-level illusions on a victim. Apparently, its abilities are great enough to break through even Kurama's mental defenses. Naruto explained. Shukaku. Your declaration is the only course of action we can take. To remove the illusion would mean killing the caster of the illusion on Kurama, but obviously, Tartaros has left the scene and so we cannot stop the Sharingan user. All that's left is to beat Kurama into submission. But he's Ni-san, Chome said. Isobu, Kakuo, Matabi, Son Goku and myself. The 5 of us fought seriously against him, and even though it was a long fight, he still managed to win. I am aware of that tale. It was one of Kurama's greatest achievements as an older brother, he claimed. Naruto flew over to a building that was near to Matabi's head. But I'm quite sure once he has been effectively restrained, I can take him down. Shukaku. You're aware of the variety of seals I used to pin you down and defeat you when we battled in the snowy peaks. Don't remind me, Namikaze. Shukaku growled, his gold eyes burning with rage. You got lucky. So, you're telling me that you are capable of restraining Kurama with these seals? Kakuo asked. Yes. They are a mixture of gravity seals, siphoning seals and restraining seals. Acting in conjunction, they will effectively bind and take out Kurama once they have been applied. When I escaped Grimoire Heart's airship and proceeded to battle Shukaku and Gaara, I goaded Shukaku into turning into his true form. It restrained him, so I firmly believe it should work on Kurama. And if necessary, it will be useful in putting him down. It won't come to that, Chome stated with conviction. We will save Ni-san from that illusion. I would like to believe that as well, Chome. Believe me, I do. Naruto stated. Now, get Kurama out of the city. Era lies to the east of my headquarters and I would rather it not be destroyed if the battle shifts west. Shift him to the east and push him over the border into Seven's lands. We'll take him down in the mountains. How long will we need to hold him down for you to use your seal magic? Shukaku asked. At least 10 seconds for me to aim and apply the gravity seal formulas. 1 minute at the most for the entire process. We won't take any chances with Oni-sama, Matabi roared. Then 1 minute it is, Chome buzzed her wings before taking off. You may see it as a matter of pride, Naruto, but this, Shukaku growled, his golden eyes shining threateningly, is a family matter. Stay out of it, and only jump in to do the sealing. Nothing more, nothing less. That is highly illogical and will lower our chances of subduing Kurama, but, I do understand, Naruto sighed. Thank you, Naruto. If Chome had a mouth, she would have given Naruto a smile for his understanding. With that, the 4 Biju Exceed turned back towards their older brother. Chome's wings buzzed before she took off alongside her more land-affiliated siblings with leading the charge. Attack! The Bakaneko roared. Insert music. 2 steps from Hell Dark Ages. Kurama slammed his paws down on the ruined city before roaring in against his rushing attackers. Matabi lashed out with her claws, but Kurama did the same and their claws interlocked. A massive shockwave rushed outwards from the point of collision, but the Kyuubi quickly managed to overpower the Nibi, pushing her over and pinning her to the ground. However, he was forced to jump away when Matabi unleashed a ball of hellfire. The blue and black flames lit up the sky as Kurama slammed down on the ground. His eyes widened as Shukaku slammed his claws on the ground, using his ability to soften the materials of the earth and convert it into sand. Kurama's paws sunk into the loose material, but the sand began to swirl and twist, climbing over Kurama's body. Sabaku Q. Soon, Kurama was entrapped in a massive sand prison. Sabaku Soso. Shukaku then raised his arms and made a clenching motion. But before the sand could implode to crush his brother's bones and flesh, a massive wave of heat emanated from the oddly shaped prison. The sand converted into glass and Kurama's form unfurled itself forcefully, shattering the material. Damn you and your stupid fire! Shukaku snarled. Kurama landed on the ground and his tails arched before wrapping around 9 different remnants of buildings. He hurled the pieces of infrastructure at his 4 opponents while simultaneously releasing a powerful tongue of fire at the stones. The makeshift meteors were snatched out of the air as massive hands of sand caught them. "You want your rocks, you stupid dog?" Shukaku asked rhetorically. "Fetch." The tanuki willed the sand hands to hurl the burning stone structures back at their user. But Kurama easily hopped and jumped to avoid them all. Kakuo then released a roar as he thundered across the ruined city. But Kurama slammed his claws on the ground, a pulse of fire tearing the earth asunder as a result. "Shukaku!" Kakuo called out. On it, Shukaku quickly summoned up a wall of sand to defend his five-tailed brother. The sand wall turned to glass, and Kakuo charged through it like a living battering ram. His horns shone as an aura of silvery white magic energy formed around them. "Tsunoori!" Kakuo released a roar and then slammed the Hornbreaker spell into Kurama, the sharp skull protrusions digging into Kurama's body. Blood trailed behind the two brothers, the kitsune releasing a grunt of pain as he was carried across the city and to the edge of Fiore's border. The wall that acted as the border between Fiore and Seven may have as well been made of paper. The 70-foot-tall structure of solid concrete was easily smashed through as Kakuo continued to carry his brother along by the horns. "Enough of this, you sniveling weakling!" Kurama dug 4 of his tails into the ground while gripping Kakuo by his horns. With a roar, Kurama went into a backflip, taking Kakuo with him, before slamming the dolphin horse into the ground. The ground cratered from the but Kakuo quickly converted his body into steam and a spear of sand erupted forth from the ground, impaling Kurama through the chest. Kurama roared in pain, but immediately ripped the sand out of his body. His healing factor kicked in and the hole in his chest quickly sealed itself shut. The gargantuan canine jumped back as a row of sand spikes moved to impale him. Trees toppled as the spikes followed after Kurama's dodging form, but Kyuubi quickly ignited his clawed fist with crimson flames before punching the ground. Cracks spread across the landscape, the evil red glow of his flames passing through them before the flames sprung forth like pillars, tearing it asunder. Lava and magma were sent into the air and arched towards his siblings. But Shukaku summoned up a wall of sand to block it only for Kurama to suddenly plow through the defensive structure and tackle his tanuki of a younger brother. "Burn!" Kurama roared before exhaling a massive tongue of red flame over Shukaku. Shukaku cried out in pain as the flames burned his body, hardening parts of it into glass. The kitsune's ears twitched as he picked up on flapping wings and he jumped, backflipping in the air so that Chome would slam down into Shukaku. Shukaku grunted as Chome's horn dug into his stomach, but the two younger Biju exceeds suddenly found the ground beneath them beginning to shake. Looking up at their airborne brother, they found that he had anchored himself with 5 of his 9 tails, the other 4 having dug into the ground. The shaking ground was a result of that, and so the 4 tails sprung forth from the underground and wrapped themselves around Shukaku and Chome. Kurama quickly ignited his tails to give him the necessary thrust to stay temporarily aloft. He then spun around to build up momentum before hurling Shukaku and Chome through the air. Goukakyu. The powerful fireball followed after the two, but Matabi quickly leapt between them and pushed them aside and took the fireball head-on. The flames melded with her own and Matabi's heterochromatic eyes glowed with power as she continued her charge. "You taught me how to use my fire, Oni-sama. Now it's time I show you just how well you taught me." She opened her mouth and a fireball of blue and black flame materialized. Goukakyu. The spheroid of blazing hellfire tore a trench through the forest grounds of Seven and Kurama's eyes widened as the fireball made explosive impact with him. He was sent flying through the air before bouncing across the ground twice, coming to a stop as he smashed into the side of a mountain. Kurama grunted as his body smoked, the noticeable burns on his body already healing. Looks like Kurama wasn't lying when he said Matabi was a better fire manipulator than him. Naruto thought as he watched the battle from the skies. To not only control Kurama's flames, but to repurpose them and augment her own attacks. The 9 are truly powerful creatures. Kurama growled as he dug his claws into the mountainside to help him climb back to his feet, but he glanced up just as a blast of high-pressure steam of Kakuo was fired. The rocks from the unstable areas of the mountain came tumbling down, but Kurama easily melted them into magma with a burst of red fire. He then directed his fire blast towards the wave of sand that Shukaku unleashed. "Ni-san!" Chome clicked her mandibles angrily before buzzing her wings. Kurama howled in agony, clutching his ears as the wings rubbed against each other, much like a cicada's. The high-frequency screeching hurt his ears, as well as those of his 3 other siblings, but it was a risk they had to take in order to defeat their brother. Chome then took off, smashing her horn through her brother's shoulder. Kurama roared as Chome dragged him up the mountainside, tearing a massive scar into the rocky formation. Kurama punched his sister repeatedly in the head, trying in vain to get her to lose momentum, but she powered through the pain. Even as he breathed fire over her exoskeleton-covered form, she persevered. She then buzzed her wings rapidly to push off of the mountainside and go into a loop-de-loop. Once she completed the acrobatic motion, she slammed Kurama into the mountain once more, only this time, she had enough force behind the attack to continue pushing. The end result was Kurama being pushed through the entire upper half of the mountain, and the whole portion of the mountain itself being sheared off. Kurama snarled and then raised his legs, planting them firmly against his sister's abdomen and kicked her off. Blood and fur flew every which way as he was freed from the horn that impaled him. He then wrapped his tails around Chome and swung her down to the ground before diving after her, his body exploding into a cloud of crimson flame. Fire rocket! The attack crashed down on Chome and a massive explosion of crimson flame accompanied by a shockwave occurred. The smoke cloud and dust was ripped apart by Shukaku's shockwave, creating roar, and Kakuo thundered across the lands, ducking his head in preparation for a powerful headbutt. Kurama quickly jumped off of his grounded sister, igniting his tails. He rotated in midair, slamming the rear appendages against the body of his five-tailed brother. Kakuo quickly shifted into his steam form and the tails passed harmlessly through his body before the cloud of steam flew right into his face. "Can't see," Kurama growled in annoyance, but his ears and nose twitched as he felt the ground beneath his shift. He quickly jumped into the air, but his eyes widened as he cleared the steam in time to see Matabi bearing down on him. Shukaku smirked from his position on the ground. His fake-out tactic had worked. "Gotcha. Oni-chan," he teased. Kakuo converted his body back into its solid form as he accumulated his steam body above Kurama, falling towards him to cover the above area. With Matabi on the right, Kakuo above and Shukaku below, Chome quickly circled around and charged with her horn to unleash a strike from the left. Being in midair, Kurama was unable to move himself in any direction, especially due to his boxed-in position.
Impressive. Kurama's eyes released a dangerous crimson shine. But it will not be enough. Kurama's 9 tails lashed out and struck his 4 siblings. Matabi, Shukaku and Chome took 2 fiery tails each, while Kokuo was dealt with the remaining 3 tails. The tails then wrapped themselves securely around each of his siblings before he pulled them all towards each other. A massive shockwave tore across the landscape and the 3 older siblings were piled messily atop the Ikibi. Graah!
Kurama fired off a blast of crimson fire, and the 4 siblings were sent skidding across the ground, smashing through another one of the mountains in the mountain range of 7, before coming to a stop quite a distance away from their older brother. "The master will like to have you 4 on his side as well. Ichibi, Nibi, Gobi, Nanabi and Kyubi. The 5 of us can." His dialogue was interrupted as Shukaku unleashed roar and a pillar of sand dug itself into his belly. Kurama's eyes widened as a mixture of blood and spittle was spat out from his mouth. Another burst of sand followed afterwards, wrapping itself around Kurama's waist before slamming him harshly into the ground, a large crater forming. "Will you just shut the fuck up?" Shukaku attacked his older brother repeatedly with each exclamation before he finally used the sand to hurl Kurama overhead, the trees quickly being destroyed as the massive kitsune flattened them beneath his body. However, Kurama easily climbed back to his feet and breathed out a tongue of flame, shifting his head so that they would arch, creating a wall of crimson between himself and his siblings. Matabi held out her paws and the crimson flames were absorbed into her very being, fueling her own already immense fire powers. However, just as the flames were finished being absorbed, the 4's eyes widened as they saw Kurama, his tails arched over his head. All 9 rear appendages converged as open jaws as he tilted his head upwards. Red and blue Eternano swirled and condensed into a tight spheroid violet-black energy. "Shit. Hurry, gather Eternano," Kokuo commanded. Matabi, Chome, Shukaku and Kokuo quickly mimicked Kurama's stance, converging their respective tails over their heads and over their open mouths. The positive and negative Eternano particles converged, but due to being in close proximity to each other, the individual orbs merged with one another to form an even larger sphere of destruction. Powerful pulses of energy and strong gusts wind tore through the surrounding area until the 5 Biju exceed reared their heads back in unison. Bijudama! With simultaneous roars, the powerful attacks rocketed across the battlefield, ripping trenches in the once beautiful landscape. Time then seemed to slow down as the 2 powerful attacks of pure Eternano neared each other until finally, they made contact. Kurama's attack clashed with that of his siblings, hitting it against its bottom surface. The 2 attacks pushed against each other, struggling for dominance, but in the end, due to the angle of collision, they were sent skyward. Upon reaching a certain altitude, it was as if noise never existed. A deafening silence echoed throughout the atmosphere. The stalemate met its end and a massive explosion. A massive mushroom cloud stretched towards the heavens, accompanied by an equally massive and powerful shockwave that ripped buildings free from their grounded positions. The earth was torn asunder, and both heaven and earth quaked at the might of the Biju. Unknown location. 7 The land shook and bird and beast alike took off through the forests of 7 in fear of being caught within the massive amount of destruction that would follow the earthquake. Standing atop a rather tall tree, 2 figures watched the blinding light of the explosion caused by the Bijudama collision. Those magic energy signatures are definitely the ones of the Biju Exceed. The smaller of the 2 stated with a rather deep voice that contradicted his 3-foot tall appearance. "Well, that would be your concern, but mine is with the signature near to them." The second figure spoke with his baritone voice. The massive mushroom clouds began to die away, but his hair rustled as the resulting shockwave raced past him. It is similar to my own. He sniffed the air and a look of intrigue appeared in the figure's golden eyes. No, not similar. It is like my own. The signature of a Dragonslayer. A Dragonslayer of a divine dragon. This must the one that Chichiyu spoke of, the one who feels like Agnologia. Really now? The smaller asked, his coal-black eyes widening in shock. Are you sure? A toothy grin spread across the golden-eyed man's face. Oh, I'm quite sure. Now then. He chuckled, cracking his neck in anticipation. Time to see how you fare against me, cousin. Western Mountain Range, 7 Naruto coughed and sneezed heavily, removing the dust and particulate matter that had lodged itself within his throat and nasal sinuses. Having taken refuge behind the body of Shukaku had been a bit unfavorable as in the end, he was still blown back by the force of the shockwave from the clashing Bijudama spells. He shoved aside the piece of stone he was behind and pinned down by. The stone that was once part of a strong and sturdy mountainside. Once he had effectively cleaned his respiratory tract, he looked down to observe what had become of the combatants. The Biju Exceed were all as right as rain, if not for the few spots of dust that decorated their respective bodies, though it seemed Matabi and Shukaku didn't have that problem, what with being made purely of fire and sand, respectively, and the fact that Kurama was still bearing the image of the Sharingan in his irises.
By the dragons. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer's eyes widened as he then took note of the battlefield. What was once the beautiful forested landscape turned battlefield had become reduced to nothing, and the massive stretch that was a majestic mountain range had been reduced by at least half, vaporized by the high intensity of the energy explosion. A barren, rocky wasteland was what the battlefield had become.
When they clashed, Kurama's Bijudama had hit the underside of his sibling's combined attack. It sent it high into the air, which should have lowered the force of the attack and its level of destruction, but it looks as if the landscape would have ended up no more different than it is now than if they were to have clashed at ground level. Naruto muttered. The full power of the Biju Exceed were truly terrifying, and if Naruto could have remembered what fear felt like, he would have experienced it alongside his overwhelming level of amazement at the level of destruction he was witnessing. On the bright side, there was nothing left for the 5 Biju to destroy unless they escaped the radius of their new battleground, which was highly unlikely since the other half of the mountain's range were literally tiny triangular dots in the distance. Naruto quickly flew back up into the air, hovering a suitable distance away from the demonic beasts. The dust settled between the members of the 9 as they growled at each other. Oni-sama, are you ready to stop being some stupid human's pet? Matabi shouted. Kurama's eyes narrowed. The master will have the destruction that he asked for. All will tremble before the might of the demon, Kyuubi no Yoko. I'm guessing that's a no, Shukaku muttered. Shukaku, Kakuo and Chome glared at their youngest sibling. What? I was just… You know what, never mind. Shukaku waved off the Gobi and Nanabi. Let's just kick his 9-tailed ass off that stupid pedestal he placed himself on. The 4 Biju Exceed roared and charged towards Kurama, but Kurama inhaled deeply and unleashed a powerful roar. The force of the shockwave caused by his vocal attack sent the 4 flying backwards, but they managed to right themselves in midair before digging their feet into the ground and skidded backwards. As they came to a stop, Shukaku swiped his claws through the air and the ground obeyed his will, large volumes of gray and brown sand spearing their way towards Kurama. Kurama unleashed a wave of fire from his body and turned the sands to glass. His tails lashed out and snapped the glass spears off before he hurled them at Kakuo. The sharp weapons passed harmlessly through the dolphin horse's body as he converted himself into steam. He rushed through the air in his gaseous state and went with the momentum as he solidified, increasing the velocity and momentum of his charge. Tsunoori, Kakuo bent his head low to ram his horns against Kurama, but the Gobi's horns were quickly grabbed by his older brother's forepaws. Kurama grunted in effort as he was being carried backwards by Kokuo's charge. The kitsune dug his claws into the ground in an effort to keep himself from being pushed backwards any further before stabbing his tails into the ground. With his anchor secured, Kurama pulled Kakuo up by the horns before wrapping his arms around his brother's waist and bent his body backwards. Kakuo unleashed a cry of pain as the Kyuubi ignited his body, burning him with crimson flames, only for Kurama to then bend his body backwards and slam him into the ground via a fiery suplex. The ground rumbled from the force of the impact and Kurama released his 5-tailed brother from his grip just as the Nibi unleashed an orb of hellfire at him. Kurama skidded backwards as the attack made impact before he felt the earth shift beneath him. He leapt backwards as a tower of sand erupted from the point from where he had been previously standing. Rikuden, the Ichibi slammed his claws against his stomach and a powerful drilling air bullet rocketed through the air. Kurama growled and his body shook as he held back the flames in his jaws so that as they were unleashed, they would be done so with a greater amount of force. The fires ripped through Shukaku's drilling air bullet spell, but Matabi quickly jumped in front of her little brother, absorbing the crimson flames before they could hit him. Matabi roared and then reared up on her hind legs. Goka Shuha, she slammed her forepaws on the ground with terrific force and a streak of hellfire ripped through the ground, tearing a massive crevice in it as it rushed towards Kurama. Kitsune no Konga. Kurama unleashed his own burst of fire in retaliation, the flames morphing into the shape of a giant fox head. The fox's blazing fang crashed against the hellfire wave and the two fiery spells caused a fiery explosion that tore the earth asunder. The smoke cloud was punched through by Shukaku's Rikuden and Kurama quickly crossed his tails in front of his body to block it. Sabaku sho obarisoku. A tower of sand erupted from the area beneath Kurama's body and the kitsune was sent skyward from the force of the strike, but he quickly cloaked his body in fire and rocketed through the air, descending towards his sand using brother like a meteor from the heavens. Fire rocket. Shukaku quickly summoned up a thick wall of sand and Kurama snarled as his attack's impact was absorbed by the defensive structure. He then pushed off of the wall before it could grab hold of him, backflipping so he would land deftly on his paws. He was given no quarter however, as Shukaku sent forth a pillar of sand to strike him from below again. He continued to hop backwards as towers of sand followed after him before Shukaku smirked and then his whole body shot forth, turning into a massive torrent of the granular substance. Kurama breathed out a massive tongue of crimson flame, but the Ichibi spiraled around his brother's attack before slamming into his chest, full force. Kurama grunted as he was sent skidding backwards. Shukaku then solidified into his normal state and slammed his claws on the ground. Sabaku sho obarisoku. The rising sand obelisk spell was repeatedly slammed into Kurama's stomach, sending the mighty Kyuubi higher and higher into the air until Shukaku sent a barrage of sand bullets at his airborne brother, breathing out a Rikuden to increase their speed. Kurama curled his tails around his body to block the barrage of sand bullets. But then Shukaku held his hands out and suddenly, Kurama found his body frozen in the air. "I did it," Shukaku exclaimed with gleeful golden eyes. I am, yes. In your face, you stupid kitsune. You put the sand in my body and used it to control me. Well played, Otuto," Kurama complimented. "Namikaze," Shukaku called to the son of two wizard saints. "Time to free you, you stupid fox." Naruto quickly went through a series of hand motions and then pointed at Kurama. Seal magic. Amaterasu formula number, Kitsune no Koenga. A burst of fire in the shape of a fox head rushed towards Naruto and the blonde was forced to dodge the attempt to burn him alive. "Shukaku, I thought you had him bound," Matabi exlku argued, "but I can't stop his stupid fire breath." "Then shut his mouth," Kakuo shouted. "Stop yelling at me." Shukaku slammed Kurama into the ground in order to vent before taking him back up into the hair and hung him there, crucifixion style, before wrapping sand around his brother's muzzle. The brainwashed kitsune growled as he pushed against his bonds before unleashing a flare of crimson fire from his body and the sands around his body became glass. Naruto's eyes widened when he saw Kurama fall back to ground zero and turned to the geokinetic tanuki. "What just happened? Shit, he burned up all the sand in his body." Shukaku cursed. Because of our regeneration factors, even if his body heat were to turn the sand in his system to glass, it wouldn't do anything to him. "How so?" The tanuki turned to the blonde Dragonslayer and gestured to himself. "Well obviously, we aren't exactly flesh and blood creatures, Namikaze." He answered. "I can turn into sand, Kakuo turns into steam, Matabi and Kurama can deal with fire and Chome is a giant beetle with an exoskeleton as hard as any metal in Earthland. I'm sure Kurama has told you this, but we aren't purely made of flesh and blood, as our very creation stemmed from magic energy. We are magic given consciousness and physical form, which is why your seals are so effective, but we are also immortal and invulnerable. No form of damage can truly get rid of us. You can destroy our bodies, but in the end we will reform." Matabi, Chome, Kakuo. On it, the three older Biju Exceed responded to the Ichibi's call. Matabi leapt into the air and lashed out with a strong swipe of her forepaws. Kurama was sent down to the ground zero, cratering the earth from his impact, only for the crater to increase in size as Matabi smashed down right on top of him. She dug her fangs into one of his tails and the fiery Nibi swung him around in a circle to build up momentum before throwing him through the air. Gukakyu. The raging fireball was released from the heterochromatic Bakuneko's jaws, making explosive impact with the Kyuubi. However, Kurama was then sent into the ground as Kakuo slammed all 5 of his furry tails down on his back. The ground cratered from the force of the impact, but the recoil allowed Kurama to bounce back into the air. Kakuo then performed a mule kick, crashing his hind legs' hooves against his older brother's jaw. The resounding crack of his lower jaw being broken echoed through the air and Kurama was sent skyward. Chome buzzed her wings rapidly to keep pace with her brother's rapidly rising form before flipping and slamming her tail down on his skull. She quickly followed after him and drove her horn into his back, driving him into the ground. She pulled up almost immediately and then unleashed a haze of white magic energy from her mandibles. Rinpungakure. The scaled powder spell drifted lazily down upon her brother, but the brightness of it all blinded him. "Alright guys, get into position." The 4 younger Biju Exceed quickly boxed in their blinded brother before arching their tails over their heads. Magic energy built up in their gaping jaws, positive and negative Eternano pooling within them. Bijudama. The spheroids of destruction rocketed from their mouths before racing towards Kurama. However, the mightiest of the 9 roared, scattering the scaled powder from the shockwave before spinning around rapidly. His tails burned intensely with crimson fire before slapping against each and every Bijudama that came his way. His younger siblings watched in awe as their attacks were sent sailing through the air before crashing down onto the faraway forest grounds outside of their battlefield. Massive domes of fiery destruction expanded from the points of impact, and Kurama raised his 9 tails and swung them through the air at high speeds. The air currents bent and swirled from the powerful motions, and soon the clouds were dark as the oncoming storm appeared. Cumulonimbus clouds unleashed arcs of lightning and thunder boomed across the skies, but that did nothing to stop the fires of both Kurama and Matabi from burning when they unleashed their respective fire blasts at each other. The point of collision became a smoking crater with embers of crimson and blue and black flame laying within. Kurama roared before swiping his tail across the stormy skies, and the powerful windstorm he generated began to tear the land apart. He raised his arms and began swiping the air with his claws. Powerful gale force winds tore scars across the landscape, and they swirled, becoming terrible twisters of destruction. Kurama's 4 opponents roared, generating shockwaves that were capable of dispersing the twisters. Kurama then raised his arms high into the air and smashed them down on the ground. 4 streaks of fire raced forth from the point of impact, each streak heading towards their respective target. Shukaku quickly stabbed his claws into the ground and manipulated the earth and summoned up 4 thick walls of sand, one for himself and one for each of his allies. The fires curved around the sand walls, but they were successfully diverted. Chomei then flew up high into the air and sent a Bijudama at Kurama. Kurama snarled and batted aside the condensed sphere of Eternano. The spell arced through the air before crashing down into the mountains outside of their personal battlefield, and the explosion lit up the stormy sky as it detonated, taking 2 mountains and a large segment of forested land with it. A massive smoldering crater was all that left. The Nanabi released a gasp of surprise when the 260-foot canine leapt up to meet her in the air. With a roar, Kurama latched onto her with his flaming claws and forced his full weight upon her. Chomei released a cry of pain as she was now laying in a crater, but as Kurama raised an arm to slash at her downed visage, he found his arm being held back. He turned to the side to see Shukaku had actually taken a physical initiative and bit down on his arm, his massive jaws easily keeping the limb at bay. The earth rumbled and the Kyuubi looked to see the Gobi galloping across the battlefield. "Do not underestimate me just because you are above in me in terms of numbers, little siblings," Kurama roared. He reared back his free arm and unleashed a devastating flaming punch to Kokuo's head, knocking the dolphin horse's head back and sending him flying through the air. He bounced across the ground 1 and then twice before slamming into the towering rubble that had once been a part of the mountain range they had all destroyed. "Oni-sama." Matabi leapt towards him with her fangs bared. "You want to fight with Shukaku?" Kurama growled. Shukaku's and Matabi's eyes widened when Kurama flexed his restrained arm. Shukaku was then swung through the air like he was made of marshmallow. "Well, here, take him, Imoudo." Shukaku was swung into Matabi's descending form, and a massive shockwave raced through the air before the youngest of the Biju Exceed were sent flying through the air before crashing down in a heap. Rinpungakure. Chomei unleashed a spray of magic scale powder into Kurama's face, and the mighty Kyuubi was sent into a sneezing fit as the blinding powder rushed into his nostrils. The canine beast was then swept off of his feet when Chomei's tail latched onto one of his hind limbs before he was swung through the air, landing a few feet away from his sister. Chomei got herself airborne once more and then charged towards her brother with her horn ready to take him down. However, the kitsune quickly ducked under the attack and gripped his sister by the abdomen in her horn and brought her down upon his raised knee, digging the joint into her thorax. Chomei released a gasp of pain, and the giant kabutomushi was quickly used as a shield to block against Kokuo's rampaging charge. However, before the Gobi could make contact with the Nanabi, said Gobi quickly turned into steam and passed through the air and solidified behind Kurama and then stamped a hoof on the ground. A rush of steam erupted forcibly and Chomei flapped her wings to take off. Bijudama. Kakuo fired off the condensed sphere of Eternano, but Kurama cloaked his tails in fire and magic. He batted away the high-velocity orb of destruction, causing a massive explosion to go off a few kilometers outside of the edge of their wasteland. Seven's forest grounds were quickly going to be reduced to nothing at this rate. Kakuo then wrapped his tails around his brother and forced him to the ground, but the kitsune's tenacity was paramount as his body burst into flame. "Annoying little pests," Kurama bellowed, and he pushed off the ground, rocketing towards the dolphin horse. "Fire rocket." Kakuo released a gasp of pain as blood and spittle flew forth from his lips. The wind ripped forth from his lungs as his brother's burning skull embedded itself into his belly. Kakuo bounced and rolled across the battlefield before Matabi and Shukaku inhaled deeply. Goukakyu, Rikuden. The massive fireball and drilling air bullet tore through the air at rapid speeds before mixing with one another to becoming a raging inferno of a projectile. Kurama turned, his eyes widened before the attack struck his body. A massive explosion of blue and black flame scorched the earth, rupturing it and generating a fiery shockwave that sent Kurama flying through the air before he was hit in the face by Chomei's horn. The massive kabutomushi beetle drove Kurama through the few hills of stone that had once been mountains, reducing them to nothing more than rubble before letting Kurama smash into the ground. However, Kurama rolled with the momentum of his fall, digging his claws into the earth as he skidded so that friction would bring him to a halt. His tails then fanned out behind him and he extended them, whipping them at his airborne sister. Chomei's eyes widened before she flew around, avoiding the tails. She barrel rolled, dove, climbed, looped and even flew backwards, performing every single aerial acrobatic trick in the book and then some. She then ducked under the latest strike from one of her brother's tails before charging up the Eternano from the atmosphere, Kurama doing the same. Bijudama. The two beasts shouted and let their attacks fly. The two violet-black orbs pushed against one another, struggling for dominance, but they became a stalemate and generated a powerful explosion in the air that punched a hole in the clouds above. Chomei had used the smoke cloud generated as a cover, but Kurama's sharp senses kept him very much aware of the Nanabi's actions. The large kabutomushi beetle was caught off guard as a result when one of Kurama's tails stretched out and latched onto her. "You annoying little insect," Kurama snarled as he pulled Chomei back towards him. He gripped the kabutomushi beetle and then slammed her harshly into the ground, kicking up a small cloud of dust and debris. He then pinned her down, his limbs holding down 4 of her 6 wings, while his tails held down her own. His entire form was cloaked with fire and Chomei screamed as she struggled beneath the gargantuan kitsune, but to no avail. Insert music. 2 steps from hell after the fall. "You have been a thorn in my side since the day we were born, Chomei," Kurama grinned, his Sharingan-imprinted eyes glowing with mad glee. "You and your incessant buzzing, grating on my ears, it's because of these wings of yours. Well, let's see how well you can buzz when I break them." Chomei's eyes widened beneath her exoskeleton-covered face. "Ni-san, no," she shouted as 2 of Kurama's tails ignited and then wrapped themselves around her middle pair of wings, the ones not being held down. "Please, Ni-san, don't, Ni-san? Ni-saw?" A resounding snap echoed across the battleground as Kurama's burning tails broke the 2 wings. Matabi, Kakuo and Shukaku looked at the scene with complete horror, while Naruto was in absolute shock at seeing what his partner had done. Silence seemed to reign supreme over the battlefield, but that silence was then broken by Kurama's next words. "2 down. 4 to go," Kurama said with a dark tone. However, the kitsune was interrupted in his follow-up actions by the earth-shaking charge of the dolphin horse that was Kakuo. "Kurama!" Kakuo roared, bestial rage burning within his eyes. Kurama unleashed a blast of crimson fire from his maw, but Kakuo immediately converted to steam so it would harmlessly pass through him. Kurama then raised Chomei's burned and broken form up to use as a shield from his brother's continued charge upon his solidification. Kakuo skidded to a halt, but then reared up on his hind legs to stamp his hooves on the ground. A massive crack stretched its way across the landscape before a powerful rush of steam erupted forth beneath his older siblings. Kurama howled in agony as the steam burned him, as well as Chomei. Matabi snatched Chomei with her tails and flipped, skidding across the battlefield. Going with the momentum of her skid, she spun around and unleashed a stream of hellfire. Kurama's claws burned with crimson fire and he slashed at his sister's flames, ripping through them with ease. He then ducked under Kokuo's charge and grabbed him by his tails and swung him overhead. Earth met sky before Kakuo found a fire blast buried against his stomach, sending him flying through the air towards his 3 other siblings. Kakuo was caught by Shukaku's sand and then rested gently down on the ground. "You okay?" Shukaku asked. "Yeah, I'm good, thanks for the save." Kakuo nodded to the geokinetic tanuki. Chomei whimpered, sniffling as she fought to not let the tears of pain fall from her eyes. "Why yeah," she grunted. "I'll live and I'll heal eventually." She then pushed herself back into the air. "Chomei, don't," Matabi exclaimed. "You've lost 2 wings. You can't hope to fly as fast as you normally can with only 4 wings." "I can heal them. We aren't magical beings for nothing, Spitfire," Chomei told the Bakaneko. "Besides, I don't need to fly faster, I just need Ni-san back and I don't care if 2 wings or all of my wings are broken." She turned to Kurama. "Ni-san. He's so strong. It's this kind of strength that made always look up to him, you know?" Kakuo, Matabi and Shukaku glanced at their brother's roaring visage, but nodded. The feeling of admiration towards their older brother was no feint, and even in his manipulated state, they still continued to do so. In Aeolus, humans feared him. Some even went so far as to call him deity. Kakuo chuckled. But despite his ego, he never let all of that get to his head. Hagoromo Jiji saw to that. Matabi laughed. Because of that, we not only admired him, but we respected him. If things were destroyed by his power, he was seen as a natural disaster. The dreaded Kyubi no Yoko, who with a single swing of his mighty tails could flatten mountains and summon tsunamis. Even among us Biju, Oni-sama was the best of us, but that thing. She gestured to the brainwashed Kitsune. That is not our brother, that is not Kurama. Chome flared her magic energy and immediately, her 2 damaged wings snapped back into place and regenerated the burned and lost tissue. So we're gonna kick that asshole we call a brother so hard in the head, he's gonna have to snap out of it. Spitfire, Kakuo, Odo. Remember that combo we made when we were younger? Which one? Shukaku asked. What do you mean, which one? Matabi deadpanned. We only made one. We did? Shukaku's eyes widened in shock. Could have sworn we worked together more than once. We did, but you were more inclined to work with Son Goku and Gyuki than us. But we did make a pretty badass combo when the 4 us were fighting with each other. Kakuo reminded the demonic Tanuki. Do you remember now? Shukaku pursed his lips, his narrowing until they were practically horizontal lines. After a few moments, the epiphany struck him and his eyes widened in realization. Oh, I remember now, he exclaimed excitedly. Oh, this is gonna be so badass, let's do it. You're so cute when you're Atabi giggled. Go hack up a hairball. Shukaku raised up his middle claw to his sister. Insert music. Fate Stay Night UBW 2014 Fist of Desperate Awakening. Shuaku raised his arms and Kurama quickly breathed tongues of flame as Shukaku bombarded him with spikes of sand, turning the projectiles to glass. He then raised his claws and slashed them, generating gale force winds that ripped scars into the earth and dispersed the sand sent his way before charging at his siblings. Chome's wings buzzed as she went to meet her brother head-on as Kurama opened his jaws widely. Fire built up within his mouth, condensing into a powerful spheroid of crimson. Gukakyu, he roared, exhaling the powerful fireball. Chome quickly flew around the fireball, a powerful explosion forming behind her as it made impact with the ground. The force of the shockwave gave her a bit of a push, increasing her speed. Her horn was positioned to impale Kurama, but the fox quickly raised himself up onto his haunches and gripped the horn with his forepaws, skidding backwards as Chome's momentum kept her going. Kurama's body ignited and he slapped his burning tails down on her body, but Chome quickly dug her legs into the ground to keep herself from being hurt even more. The ground cracked as Kurama whipped her with his 9 flaming tails, but she then buzzed her wings and breathed her blinding scale powder in his face. Kurama was effectively, temporarily inhibited in 4 of his 5 senses before he was stabbed in the stomach by Chome's horn. His grip on her was relieved and she quickly flew back as Shukaku generated a wild sandstorm. You think a mere sandstorm can stop me? Kurama roared. No, but we think this can, Matabi and Shukaku exclaimed. The 2-tailed cat reared up on her hind legs, her forelegs raised high into the air. The sand-using Tanuki moved in tandem with the Bakaneko as he thrust his arms forward and then swung them towards himself. Rikuden, Goka Shuuha, Shukaku slammed his clawed hands against his belly and a magic seal formed in front of his gaping maw. A powerful bullet of compressed air and magic energy rocketed out of his jaws. Matabi slammed her forepaws on the ground and a magic seal formed in front of her before a raging stream of hellfire ripped through the earth towards Kurama. The 2 elemental attacks mixed with each other and the hellfire was augmented by the powerful winds. The attack then mixed in with Chome's scale powder, igniting it and soon a powerful explosion of hellfire erupted forth around Kurama's form. The fires of the explosion then mixed in with the swirling winds of Shukaku's sandstorm and Kurama's howl of pain echoed across the country of 7 as he was trapped in a swirling tornado of dual-colored flame. Kitsune no Koenga. Kurama's voice rose above the volume of the hellfire tornado and then crimson flames mixed in with it before the tornado swelled in size. The crimson fire was then manipulated and Kurama walked out of his new weapon before sending it straight at his siblings. The 4 Biju Exceed leapt out of the way as the hellfire tornado, mixed in with Kurama's own flames, just carved a massive trench in the wasteland, leaving a burning trench in its wake, only to then exit the edge of the wasteland that was their battlefield and set the forests aflame. Hellfire and foxfire burned brightly as the fire tornado went on its rampage before exploding outwards, decorating the lands of 7 with another burning crater. Shukaku, Matabi, Kakuo and Chome then arched their respective tails over their heads and Kurama did the same with his 9. Bijudama. The Biju Exceed roared and fired off their respective attacks, only this time, it was multiple shots. The condensed orbs of pure Eternano were like bullets as they were launched from the jaws of the demonic beasts and explosions dotted the skies, generating hurricane-force winds due to the shockwaves they generated. In some cases, the colliding orbs would deflect off of one another and crash into random areas of Seven's forests or random areas of the wide wasteland, forming massive craters. "Kakuo, get him!" Chomei commanded. The dolphin horse nodded as he stopped his Bijudama barrage and galloped straight towards his older brother. He quickly converted to his steam body to avoid the explosions and incoming attacks that decorated the battlefield. Before he was finally within striking distance, he solidified and Kurama's crimson eyes widened. "What? Tsunoori?" His magic energy enhanced charge made impact with the kitsune and terrific shockwave raced out from the point of impact. The gobi's horned head had crashed against his brother's chest, dragging him along the ground once he stabbed them into his furred body. He then raised his head and unhooked him, ripping flesh and fur off from the momentum, before Shukaku's sand turned into a massive arm. The clawed limbs of sand crashed against Kurama's face, knocking him through the air. Another clawed limb lashed out and sent Kurama upwards at an angle, only to be roughly grabbed by three of his tails and swung into the path of Kakuo as the five-tailed Biju exceed turned around and mule kicked his brother in the face. The sound of Kurama's jaw breaking, along with several teeth flying free from his gums, was satisfying to hear for the two younger brothers. Kurama spiraled through the air and smashed into the ground, tearing a trench in the earth as his momentum carried him across the battlefield. Sand then rose up and bound his limbs and tails, but his crimson flames were quickly turning the thick mounds of sand to glass. "When will you learn, Shukaku?" Kurama snarled. "Your sand cannot hold me." "It doesn't need to," Shukaku grinned widely. "It just needs to distract you." The ground rumbled and Kakuo galloped across the burning, crater-filled battlefield. With a roar, he leapt into the air and performed a series of front flips to build up momentum. Magic energy built up around his hooves as he fell and Kurama's eyes widened as the full weight of the gobi bore down on him. Gozen Tobi. Time seemed to slow down for the Kyuubi before the attack made impact. The 5-mountain jump sent out every ounce of power and magic energy from the point of impact. The ground ruptured and a fiery shockwave tore the earth asunder afterwards. The massive smoke cloud that resulted was quickly dispersed and Kakuo galloped out of the way. "Shukaku, do it!" "Right." Shukaku made a quickly circling motion with his outstretched paws. Kurama growled, rising back to all fours as the earth beneath him swirled and bent to Shukaku's will before rising up to imprison him. Kurama roared and the sand was blown back by the shockwave, only for more sand to replace it just as quickly. Chomei buzzed her wings, the massive kitsune howling in agony as his inner ear was assaulted by the high-pitched vibrations. Matabi then kept Kurama effectively pinned down when she leapt overhead and unleashed a small barrage of fireballs. Shukaku then nodded before rearing his arms back and shooting them forwards. They extended and slammed into Kurama's entrapped form before slamming him into the ground, and soon the sands increased in size and volume. Once the sands were compiled in a manner fitting for Shukaku then channeled his magic energy into the granular prison. Sabaku Sotai Fuen. The sand solidified in an instant, taking the shape of a massive step pyramid. The black markings across Shukaku's body then traveled along the length of his arms and stretched across the entirety of the massive pyramid. The chains of markings then interlocked in certain areas and the Grand Sand Mausoleum spell was completed. Naruto. Chomei flew to the airborne blonde. "Shukaku's seal is strong, but it won't off Nissan for long." Her point was further emphasized by the fact that the sands were literally becoming red hot. "I can see that," Naruto replied. "I'll get into position. Once he breaks through the mausoleum, I'll bind him with the seals." The Grand Sand Mausoleum was now blindingly bright red the material, until a mighty crash occurred. The wave of crimson fire spread out from the center of the massive step pyramid, but they were readily pulled in by Matabi's pyrokinetic abilities. The brightness of the glow then died away and Kurama leapt out of the smoke cloud, his jaws open wide. Naruto's sapphire orbs met the Sharingan-imprinted ones of his best friend, but despite the fox holding such a title, the blonde showed no mercy as he had already finished going through the hand motions and pointed his fingers at the Kyuubi. Seal Magic. Amaterasu Formula Number 66. A vibrant violet magic seal appeared and Kurama's eyes widened as the force of gravity in the area increased to over 10 times the usual amount. Kurama slammed into the ground, causing it to shudder and quake as that particular area of the earth was depressed. What have you done to me? I'm saving you, you mangy fox." Seal Magic. Amaterasu Formula Number 60. Magic was slowly being siphoned off of Kurama's body and the kitsune looked on in shock as he felt himself shrink in size, his body growing weaker. "Stop this useless attempt, Naruto," Kurama howled. He roared, but the shockwave was blocked as Chomei sent out a roar of her own. Naruto continued the onslaught of seals and Kurama's eyes widened as his form continued to grow steadily weaker. Seal Magic. Gravity. Naruto's magic energy pulsed numerous times and soon, Kurama was decorated with violet magic seals on nearly every part of his body. The feeling of gravity acting on his body had increased over 100-fold, literally. The ground then cratered in on itself due to the downward acting forces. Seal magic. Chains? Naruto thrust his hands out and massive golden chains sprang out from his body. From his shoulders, knees, palms and vertebrae, the chains snaked towards their target. The spikes that protruded from each chain link dug into Kurama's flesh, wrapping around his limbs, his 9 tails, his neck and finally wrapping around his jaws before he could aim a fire blast at the blonde Dragonslayer. With a final pulse of magic energy, Kurama was brought to the ground with a resounding crash. Naruto then vanished into the wind and reappeared in front of Kurama's face. Mokashiryu no Byakugan. Naruto's eyes were cloaked in the ethereal white light as he utilized the magic of his draconian father and he stared directly into Kurama's eyes. Now whoever the fuck you are. Get out of my best friend's head. Now. The Sharingan imprinted eyes widened as the sun of Acknowledgia ripped through his partner's psyche, tearing out any and all unknown variables. The metaphorical chains that allowed the Kitsune to be controlled were snapped apart and crushed beneath the power of the eyes of a dragon. When all was said and done, the Sharingan image faded out of existence, reverting back to his vertical slit pupil. Kurama groaned before looking at Naruto. The Kyuubi went to speak, but found he couldn't as he registered the fact he was coated in numerous magic seals and had chains binding his body, all of which originated from the blonde Dragonslayer's body. Kurama raised a non-existent eyebrow before motioning to the chains with his eyes. Insert music. Fairy Tale Kazuna. I don't know. Naruto smirked. You're a lot less annoying when you're bound. Kurama glared at Naruto, but the blonde merely gave the fox a wide grin. Naruto snapped his fingers and his magic energy stopped flowing into the seals, all of them vanishing into oblivion. The chains retreated back into Naruto's body and the Kyuubi rose back to his full height. I can't believe it. I endured every single form of torture they tried to use to get me to break, and I end up falling for a freaky case of pink eye. Kurama grumbled. Pathetic.
Ni-san, Oni-sama. Kurama's eyes widened as he was suddenly tackled to the ground by his sisters. The Nibi and Nanabi nuzzled their faces into their brother's chest. Kurama looked at the two in shock before he rose back into a sitting position and patted his sisters atop their heads.
It's okay, you two, he said softly. I'm back and I'm okay now. You two got so much stronger. Utabi grinned and Chome buzzed her wings happily at receiving praise. Same goes for you too. Kakuo scuffed the ground with his hoof while Shukaku merely turned away with a huff. Yeah, well, we wouldn't even have to have done this at all if you weren't so damn weak. Why'd you have to go and get yourself captured in the first place, Baka Kitsune? Shukaku. Kakuo grumbled with a sigh. Kurama raised his hand like paws and his 3 other siblings calmed down almost immediately. You're right, Shukaku, Kurama stated. Shukaku's eyes widened. What? He coughed before standing up a bit straighter. I mean, yeah, of course I am. I let myself get cocky, thinking that just because my opponents were mere humans that I immediately had the advantage and I was the stronger combatant. He said, I was weak mentally because I failed to fight off the effects of the Sharingan, and I was weak because I needed to have you 4 and Naruto be the ones to get me out. Kurama growled, his claws digging into the ground in anger. But, you have my thanks. Utabi, Chome, Kakuo, Shukaku. You held your own against me and helped me at my lowest point. I could not be more proud to be your older brother. You've gotten so damn sappy, Shukaku stated. His siblings laughed at him as they could see the way his eyes shone with pride at being complimented in such a way by Kurama. And you've gotten a lot more fat. Kurama shot back, poking Shukaku in the belly. All was silent for a moment as Shukaku looked at the small indentation in his stomach before it popped back to normal. Shukaku frowned and poked his stomach a few times, watching the sand of his body refill the small holes he made from poking himself. It's the sand and you know it, Shukaku muttered. This has been quite a heartwarming moment, but we need to return to the castle, Naruto said as he looked at Kurama. We need whatever information you have on Tartaros, and plus. He turned to Matabi. You need to be with Yugito. Did something happen to her? The Bakaneko asked. She lost an arm during her battle with the 3rd generation Dragonslayer. Matabi's eyes widened. But we can give her a new one and heal her. Wind Dragon and the others should have returned to HQ by now, so it's merely the matter of actually giving her the prosthetic limb. I suggest we leave Imid. Naruto paused in his speech and the Biju Exceed all tilted their heads in confusion. Suddenly, the large force that came with the usage of a large quantity of magic energy was felt. They turned their heads to where the source of the magic energy was coming from and they watched in fascination as the space in the area was twisted and bent before it was split apart to reveal the darkness of the void. In burst of speed, 2 figures rushed out of the void. Naruto's eyes widened and he quickly raised his arms and blocked the strike aimed at his heart. A massive shockwave raced out from the point of impact and the Biju Exceed were quickly defended by Shukaku's sand as the granular material rose up to block the wooden tentacles that burst out of the ground. Insert music. Fate Zero. The world is tumbling down. Interesting, The golden-eyed figure smirked before turning to his compatriot. "I'll be taking my dear cousin away for a fight. I believe your mission from King Faust involved these creatures." "It does." The smaller figure nodded in confirmation. Naruto then turned to Kurama and the other Biju Exceed, their eyes all wide with shock when the void opened up once more, both humans vanishing into it. "Naruto." Kurama reached for the void before it closed, but he was forced to retract his hand like paw when a wooden tentacle nearly struck him. The kitsune turned and growled at the newcomer. "You, who are you? And what is this talk about a mission involving us?" The newcomer grinned toothily as he hovered in the air by his pair of white wings. He was an Exceed, but his ears, paws and the tip of his tail were all charcoal black. His eyes were a similar shade of black. He was also wearing red samurai-like armor that covered his arms, legs and torso. It was almost hilarious, seeing the tiny 3-foot-tall cat wearing slightly oversized armor. "And what is this talk of Faust? Shouldn't he be dead?" Shukaku asked. "King Faust is still alive and well, I assure you. As for who I am, I was created with whatever residual energy was left from when U9 opened the anime over 40 years ago. They continued using the anima to open gateways into Earthland and continuously supplied me with magic energy in the tube that I was created in, and once they found that I was battle ready, they sent me to find U9, and well, I already found the other 4. Isobu, Son Goku, Seiken, Yuki. They are all safely returned to Daedalus. All that's left is for you 5 to come with me." Magic energy flooded the Exceed's body, and the 5 Biju Exceed tensed as they felt the energy coming off of the small body in waves. The magic energy caused bones and musculature to grow and lengthen until the small Exceed before them was suddenly human size. Standing at a suitable height of 6 feet, the anthropomorphic feline grinned widely as he saw the shocked looks on their faces. "Mokuton." Mokujin, the earth rumbled, and it was as if the very force of nature itself came alive. Out of the ground came a massive wooden titan, its fanged teeth bared and its glowing yellow eyes fixated on the Biju Exceed. It was far smaller than any of them, only standing at a meager height of 200 feet in comparison to the 260-foot-tall beasts it was facing off against. Wrapped around its torso was what appeared to be a wooden dragon, the dragon's eyes being a bright gold as well. "My name is Hashirama Senju." The anthropomorphic Exceed tapped the side of his head with a small smirk. "Got it memorized?" Insert music. Fate Stay Night UBW 2014 Souls to Fight. Savage Lands, Earthland. The void opened up and Naruto and his assailant fell from the void as it closed shut, but Naruto quickly raised his legs and planted them against the unknown figure's chest before going into a backflip. He adjusted their bodies so that his assailant was beneath him, and then pushed off, sending his opponent rocketing to ground zero while he flew up. Naruto snarled as he glanced down at his attacker, but his sapphire orbs widened in amazement as he saw a portal not unlike the one he had just been pushed through suddenly appear beneath him just as he was about to hit the ground. The golden-eyed man vanished into the void, and suddenly, another portal opened up right in front of Naruto. The son of Agnologia watched as his opponent stepped out of the portal, mockingly dusting himself off as he too hovered in the air. "I must admit, cousin, you are quite the combatant. Not many would be able to react as swiftly as you would have after being flung through a portal." Naruto rubbed his forearms, feeling the seal of his parents heal his bruised areas. "His physical strength is immense, almost as great as my own." Naruto's eyes narrowed as he looked over his newfound opponent. The young man was the same physical age of 20. His skin tone was a natural light brown, as no form of tanning could give a person that color of skin. His musculature was lean and well defined, but there was a great deal of strength hidden within him. The magic energy that Naruto felt within him was a testament to that. His hair was dual-colored, the majority being black, but the frontal area being snow white. His clothing consisted of a silver vest with black flame-like markings decorating it, a pair of black pants and a black and silver combat boots. Naruto growled as he took note of the sharp claw-like nails, larger than average canines, and the vertical slit of a pupil within his opponent's golden eyes. "You're a Dragonslayer, but you are far stronger than any of the others I've met." Naruto's eyes narrowed. "You're a divine Dragonslayer and you manipulate space, traveling through the void and manipulating it as you see fit. You're the Dragonslayer of the void. You're Zenu's child, aren't you?" "That's right, cousin." He grinned. "Name's Kinkaku. Chichu always told me how that Agnologia Oji-san always escaped his sight. After all, Oji-san is a divine dragon, and with you being his son, you obviously aren't affected by the ability of the Dragon King to watch over all of Earthland. He's felt your magic for a long time, cousin, but since he could never pinpoint you. The oath of the dragon that occurred by the Dragon Kings after the Dragon War, the sworn pledge that they would never involve themselves entirely in mortal affairs. Zenu would never let his pride allow him to get off of his scaly ass and kill me himself anyway, so he sent you to do it for him." "I'm not here to kill you, dear cousin," Kinkaku said, but then his happy-go-lucky attitude did a complete 180. "Look around you." Naruto kept his guard up, but he glanced around the area. It was even more of a wasteland area than what the Biju Exceed had created. However, there were some remnants of vegetation in a nearby mountain range. He then sniffed the air as the winds shifted in his direction. The scent of death permeated the area. Numerous crevices and chasms had ruined the land, and the skies above were forever obscured by the dark clouds. He then glanced down and his eyes widened as he noticed that he was hovering over a large depression in the earth. But that depression was in the shape of a massive palm print with clawed digits. A dragon's paw print? Naruto whispered in disbelief. It was then that everything clicked inside his mind as he looked around the wasteland. These are the savage lands. That's right, my dear cousin. Kinkaku nodded. This is only a fraction of the destruction that was wrought upon the planet when the fourth Dragon King made his decision to end humanity. Nothing was spared. Not the birds in the sky nor the trees in the land. The savage lands are a reminder to all who voyage beyond Earthland that nothing can be brought back once you have battled with a Dragon King. That is an opinion that only you yourself have, Void Dragon, Naruto snarled. And that is where you are wrong, son of Agnologia. Kinkaku stated, as you know, Zenu, my lord and father, is the sixth Dragon King. He who governs over the entirety of the universe, holding powers that not even us divine Dragonslayers could comprehend. He has the accumulated power of the other 5 Dragon Kings held within him due to his ascension to the throne. As the Dragonslayer of energy, you can be an asset to Chichu. Your father, Agnologia Oji-sama. He is a threat to Chichu, and with you wielding his powers, you can help us kill him. Tu-san does not deserve death. If anyone should die, it should be Zenu, Naruto exclaimed. I have heard of what Tu-san has done, but I have also been told as to what Zenu himself has done. As a result, once I have sufficiently prepared for it, I will open the Eclipse Gate, I will lead my armies, and I will bring war upon Algesia. Kinkaku's body shook as he tried to contain his amusement. His giggles became chuckles, but he could not contain it for long as his chuckling turned into full-blown laughter. Naruto gritted his teeth, his fists tightening in annoyance as he watched the brown-skinned man wipe a few tears away from his eyes. Oh, that is quite an amusing proclamation. You of all people should know that to challenge the Dragon King and beyond suicide, it would mean wiping yourself out of existence. This is the reason why I have brought you here to the savage lands. Kinkaku spread his arms out to gesture to the expanse of barren land. This is what will become of your eventual forces. Your infantry, your mounts, every single member of your forces alongside you in Agnologia. They will be reduced to nothing should you be successful in getting to Algesia. You little. My dear cousin, please. I have followed these past few months, and it is only now that I have been able to find you. I am asking you as your family in draconian blood, and as an eventual Nakama, do not make the foolish mistake that Agnologia did of challenging Chichu. You have insulted him and belittled him, and Kinkaku's eyes narrowed at his cousin by draconian blood. While I do not take insults towards Chichu very lightly, if you choose to kneel to the Dragon King and accept my offer to be a part of his legion, I will ignore those insults, and in addition, I will make sure you are given a high rank so that we may stand together as brothers in arms to defeat all those who dare threaten Chichu's rule. Naruto spat at the ground. I will never join you, and even if Agnologia were not my father, I still would not accept. I will never choose to serve someone who chose to abandon the bonds of their flesh and blood for the sake of gaining a position of power. Last I checked, Agnologia was the one who nearly destroyed Algesia all those years ago, Kinkaku argued. That was fault of both Zeref and Zenu, and you know it, Naruto roared. His magic flared and his blue irises shone within the sea of ethereal white. Zenu was jealous of Tu-san, jealous of everything he was and would become. He took the throne and framed Agnologia for everything that happened all those years ago. The sixth Dragon King is an usurper. That was the straw that broke the camel's back, and Kinkaku's eyes blazed with golden light, his magic energy and killing intent flaring. Liar. The 2 divine Dragonslayers then rushed at each other and reared back their fists. Time slowed as the 2 limbs neared each other, growing closer and closer until they finally made impact. The powerful shockwave that rushed through the atmosphere made even the rotten trees below them bend back from the force. They then took off, shockwaves occurring at each point they collided as they followed each other through the air. Take that back, Kinkaku snarled. Never, Naruto snarled right back. Boom, my dragon parent is the strongest there is. Take it back. Boom, I am the strongest of all Dragonslayers. No you aren't. Boom, I am, cousin. Naruto spat the word out like it was acid on his tongue. I will declare war on the Dragon King, and I will spark that war by sending back the head of his son and Dragonslayer. I will kill you, Kinkaku. The 2 Dragonslayers glared at one another before pushing back away from each other. They then took off once more, seemingly vanishing into nothing before numerous shockwaves echoed across the battlefield. Right punch. Left punch. Spin kick. Headbutt. Knee strike. Elbow strike. Roundhouse. The 2 divine Dragonslayers met each other blow for blow, and the winds generated by their collisions was akin to a hurricane. Trees were felled before the two Dragonslayers gripped their hands tightly in an effort to overpower one another. They went into a spiraling dive, nearing the ground in under 5 seconds before they nailed each other in their respective stomachs with well-placed kicks. They tumbled through the air before righting themselves, skidding across the ground as they dug their heels into the dirt. Glowing gold met ethereal white as the two prideful Dragonslayers circled each other like two territorial tigers. "I honestly was not going to kill you, cousin," Kinkaku stated, "but you have forced my hand. I now know why anything involving Acnologia upsets Chichu. Because everything involving the Black Dragon of the Apocalypse always ends in destruction. So says the son of the usurper," Kinkaku growled, his golden eyes shining with unearthly rage. "Divine Dragonslayer of energy you may be, but I have been raised in Alagesia's walls. I have seen the Holy Land. I fought with the dragons and against them. You cannot beat me." "I have fought dragons too, Void Dragon," Naruto countered. "Surely you would know the tale of Morpheus and how he came into our world." "What of him? His head hangs on my wall." Kinkaku scoffed at that, causing Naruto's eyes to narrow in annoyance. "You doubt my words, Void Dragon?" "I do. Morpheus may not have been a part of our world, but he never would have made it to Earthland." "I never said I fought him in Earthland. You continue to stand by your lies." "They are not lies, Datbeo," Kinkaku chuckled at Naruto's verbal tick before rushing at him. "Then show me your strength, cousin. Show me the power of Acnologia, the Apocalypse Dragon." Kinkaku reared back his fist and let it fly. Insert music. Fairy Tail released power. Naruto sidestepped the strike and the earth cratered slightly from the punch, but the golden-eyed Dragonslayer spun on his heels so that his hunched form could aim a spinning heel kick to the blonde's face. Naruto quickly ducked under the leg and wrapped his hand around the ankle. Kinkaku winced from the strength of the grip and earth met sky as he was suddenly thrown through the air. Several trees were sent toppling as Kinkaku flew straight through them, the tough bark snapping like paper. Kinkaku smashed into the ground and rolled with the momentum, climbing back to his feet as he did so. His ears twitched and Naruto suddenly appeared above him. Naruto roared and spun his body, swinging his heel down onto his opponent's head. However, Naruto's eyes widened as Kinkaku smirked. A pulse of magic flowed from his body and Naruto suddenly found his leg disappearing into Kinkaku's head. It was as if it weren't there, as if the Void Dragonslayer was a ghost. Naruto then released a gasp of pain as Kinkaku's fist came up in the form of a dreadful uppercut. A mixture of blood and spittle escaping from his mouth before Kinkaku then went into a front flip, crashing a powerful axe kick down onto the blonde's head. Naruto rocketed to ground zero, but he quickly regained his bearings and channeled magic to the bottom of his feet and he bent the winds to his will. A sonic boom echoed through the air and Kinkaku merely allowed Naruto to pass right through him. Just as the blonde had done so, Kinkaku's arm reached out, his hand latching tightly onto Naruto's ankle before he pulled Naruto down. He opened up the void and Naruto fell into the hole in space. "Let's see how you like being buried under the earth." Kinkaku chuckled as he closed the void. However, the Void Dragonslayer's amusement was brought to a swift end as the earth rumbled. Kinkaku quickly stepped back as he saw the spiderweb of cracks that appeared beneath his feet. Rays of black and blue light peeked out from the cracks before the ground was torn asunder. A tower of energy pierced the heavens, punching a hole in the clouds and Naruto flew out of the hole he had created. "It's going to take more than 30 feet of stone to defeat me, boy." "Boy?" Kinkaku gave an amused smirk. "I'm 110 years old." 110 and a half. Naruto smirked back, the feeling of age-based superiority increasing once he saw the scowl on his fellow Dragonslayer's face. Naruto then flew up and went into a series of front flips as he fell. Seal magic. Release. Kinkaku's eyes widened when he saw the gold and silver magic seals that hovered over his opponent's wrists. In a flash of gold and silver light, the blades of Merlin appeared in the hands of their user. Gold flames sprung to life around the blade of Excalibur, and silver flames burning brightly around Ascalon's. Hijin no Ken. Naruto swung the blades of Merlin down and a massive fiery explosion raced outwards from the point of impact, the dome of gold and silver burning the earth and scorching it. The resulting smoke clouds slowly dispersed and Naruto's eyes widened as he saw Kinkaku standing in the center of the large crater he had created. The Void Dragonslayer's arms were raised in a X-shaped position to block the swords, but around said limbs were silver and black gauntlets. The fingertips were sharpened to be akin to claws and they were decorated such that they looked as if they were made of scales. "How?" Naruto asked as he continued to push against the gauntlets. "The Millennium Ganair forged by Chichu specifically for me in case I was ever in a bind," Kinkaku explained. "Forged from Alagesia's strongest metals to become an alloy capable of breaking dragon scales, shattering dragon bones and ripping through dragon entrails. And it seems that they are more than capable of holding their own against the blades of Merlin himself." Kinkaku then pushed Naruto back, uncrossing his arms in the process. Naruto hovered in the air, but Kinkaku quickly slashed at Naruto as he leapt after him. Naruto blocked the gauntlets and was forced to the ground, the earth cratering beneath his feet as he resisted against his fellow Dragonslayer's attack. Naruto pushed Kinkaku back, but the dual-hair-colored man left a streak of dirt as he sped towards his opponent and appeared to his left. Naruto turned and crossed the blades of Merlin, a resounding clang echoing across the savage lands as the dragon-killing weapons collided before he countered with a horizontal slash with Excalibur. Kinkaku ducked under it and went for an upward slash with his clawed gauntlets. Naruto stepped backwards to avoid it before backflipping over the follow-up slash before delivering a powerful double downward vertical slash. Kinkaku was quick to hop into the air and twist his body to avoid the strikes, a massive stream of gold and silver fire melting the earth as it traversed the savage lands. Kinkaku then slammed one of his Millennium Gauntlets down the blades and Naruto moved to raise his blades. His blue eyes widened in shock when he found that the Void Dragonslayer's weight was preventing him from doing so. Kinkaku smirked as he then lashed out with his second gauntlet and delivered a strong uppercut to chin to send his opponent skyward, but Naruto had went into a backflip and landed on his hands. Mokashiryu no Zanso. His legs were coated in blue and black magic energy as he twirled his body. Kinkaku quickly blocked the whirling kicks only for Naruto to then bend his arms and flip to deliver a strong spin kick. The strong blow crashed against the gauntlets with a resounding clang before Kinkaku was sent rocketing away from the blonde. Kinkaku quickly flipped in the air and dug the Millennium Gauntlets into the dirt, tearing trenches in it as he slowed himself down. Once he came to a stop, he slashed the air with his clawed gauntlets and black and silver magic energy sprung to life around his body. Uchiryu no Shinku Sume. Naruto raised an eyebrow as nothing seemed to happen, but not a moment later did the effects of Kinkaku's spell activate. The Void Dragon's vacuum claw ripped open 10 large gashes in the fabric of space itself. Naruto then felt his body being painfully lengthened as the powerful pull of the vacuums pulled him towards the void, intent of ripping his body apart. However, his white eyes shone brightly and he resisted, drawing upon the magic energy that supplied the spells. The voids closed shut and Kinkaku's eyes widened upon seeing such a feat. "Impossible," he muttered. "You closed the void. And you ripped open the very fabric of space," Naruto replied. "Chichu always told me that because of what I am, a divine Dragonslayer, nothing would be capable of beating me. Nothing besides himself. Or another divine Dragonslayer. To think such words were true, Energy Dragonslayer. Energy is my traditional title, but Tu-san and I, we let go of such petty titles long ago and instead made new ones for ourselves. I am the student of destruction and annihilation. I am the cataclysm that will bring about the end of all things, the Apocalypse Dragonslayer." Black and blue magic energy rose from his body, licking the air as if it were fire. "And you will be among the many that I have killed." He rocketed towards Kinkaku with terrific speed, his leg outstretched for a powerful kick to the sternum. However, Kinkaku slashed the air multiple times only for Naruto to take the magic energy for himself and increase the amount of magic that supplied his spell. The Void Dragonslayer finally made the decision to move and he jumped into the void as Naruto crashed down upon his former location. Mokashiryu no Jishinkyaku. A massive crater formed from Naruto's impact, the shockwave sending Kinkaku skidding backwards. Kinkaku stumbled as Naruto's seismic stomp spell literally resulted in the formation of an earthquake that caused the land to rise and depress. Kinkaku reappeared and his eyes widened, marveling at the destruction he was bearing witness to. However, his sightseeing was cut short as Naruto pointed a hand at him and a violet magic seal hovered over his head. Huh? Seal magic. Gravity. The force of gravity increased and Kinkaku found himself being brought to ground zero. However, he quickly opened up the void and fell into the abyss. He then popped out in another area of the air, but he allowed himself to continue to fall as he smashed his feet down on the ground. Earth magic. Mountain collider. One thick slab of earth rose up on either side of the blonde Dragonslayer before the slabs quickly moved to sandwich him and turn him into nothing more than a bloody stain. However, he quickly stabbed the Excalibur and Ascalon into the earth slabs before unleashing bursts of fire from their tips. The slabs exploded and turned into molten slag. Uchiryu no Waramayoku. The silver and black magic energy coated his armored arms before shaping themselves into wings that appeared as if they were made from pieces of the final frontier itself. He then stabbed the wings into the ground and tore open a rift that stretched itself across the land, taking whatever piece of earth and foliage that was in its path and flinging it into the void. However, Naruto quickly opened his jaws and drained the spell of energy before it was even 3 feet away from him and nothing was left of the spell except for the massive chasm it had formed. Naruto then took off from his position, cratering the earth from the force at which he pushed off, and flew across the chasm and slashed at Kinkaku's head with Excalibur. The black and white-haired Dragonslayer ducked under the slash, the arc of gold flame passing overhead as well and set a dead tree ablaze. Naruto leapt back as he allowed the tree to fall forwards atop his opponent. But Kinkaku opened up the void and the tree was sucked into its depths before another rift in space opened up above Naruto and the burning tree was now about to fall atop him. Timber. Not even close. Void Dragon. Naruto roared as he sliced the tree into nothing but burning splinters with both ancient weapons. However, his eyes widened as Kinkaku shot forward and buried his gauntlet-covered fist into his stomach. Blood escaped from his lips before he was sent flying through the air. He smashed through a few trees before leaving a deep imprint as he crashed into a boulder. Earth Magic. Mobile Earth Core. The boulder and the ground beneath Naruto's feet suddenly rocketed high into the air. It was as if Naruto was being crucified atop the Tower of Earth due to his body's positioning, but that idea came to a swift end when the tower rocketed back down to Ground Zero, and then went below Ground Zero. The boulder and Naruto were forced 10 feet into a neatly made, square-shaped hole in the ground. Earth Magic. Rock Slide. The four walls then cracked and shattered, massive pieces of rock falling towards the blonde beneath them. But Naruto quickly crossed Excalibur and Ascalon in front of his body before slashing the air, sending out a massive X-shaped fire blast. The rock slide was completely reduced to a mess of descending pebbles as Naruto shot into the air, exiting the hole. Kinkaku met his fellow Dragonslayer in the air and slashed at him with his gauntlets. Sparks and silver embers flew as Naruto blocked the blow with Ascalon before unleashing a burst of silver flame. Kinkaku sucked the fires into the void, quickly closing it before his adversary could utilize its magic energy for his own purposes, before lashing out with a strong kick to the wrist. Say goodbye to your toy. Naruto's eyes widenched into the air and Kinkaku opened the void. Futon. Shunpo no Kazejin. The golden-eyed Dragonslayer was shocked when the blonde vanished into the wind and reappeared in the face of the void Kinkaku opened up. He ate the magic energy and sealed the ribbed fabric of space while simultaneously grabbing Ascalon out of the air. He landed on the ground and then flung both swords towards his opponent at breakneck speeds. Kinkaku stopped the blades with his gauntlets, batting them aside. Ascalon flying away to his right, and Excalibur on the left. The swords crashed into ground, impaling the earth as they formed their respective craters. Insert music. 2 steps from Hell Skyworld. Earth Magic. Earth Flow Spears. He then stamped his feet on the ground and a series of earth spikes rose up around Naruto at various angles in order to impale the son of Agnologia, but Naruto quickly summoned forth the barrier of his parents to protect him. The spikes cracked the crimson orb, but did no more than that. Futon. Senpu Kyaku. The blonde dropped the barrier and then spun around, the kick with the force of a cyclone destroying the surrounding earth spikes and sent their pieces into the air. Naruto then aimed them at Kinkaku, striking with expert precision with his kicks. Kinkaku then hopped into the air and went into a front flip as a tail of ebony and silver magic energy sprouted from his tailbone. The tip of the tail then grew in size as most of the magic energy accumulated at the tip. Uchiryu no Kometo Shippo. The comet tail fell, ripping through the projectiles and then went to slam down on Naruto, moving at the speed and force of an actual comet. However, Naruto quickly rotated his body and his own tail of energy came to life. Mokashiryu no Shippo. The two tails collided with terrific force and tore the earth asunder from the resulting shockwave. Naruto was sent skidding backwards while Kinkaku quickly manipulated the space in the air to keep him aloft. However, a sonic boom echoed across the battlefield and his golden eyes widened as Naruto appeared above him with his arm reared back, cloaked in the fiery black and blue magic energy of his draconian father. Mokashiryu no Hakai Sume. The Annihilation Claws spell smashed down on Kinkaku as he raised his gauntlets to block the strike, but the force still sent him crashing down onto the ground. He tore a trench in the earth as his momentum kept him going. He rolled with said momentum in order to climb back to his feet before coming to a halt. He then looked to see Naruto was already in motion, but Kinkaku quickly raised his gauntlet-covered fist and smashed it down on Naruto's skull. The physical attack made a terrific impact, sending the blonde down to the ground. However, he quickly rolled to the side as the space warped where his head was. The ground bore a head-sized hole as the earth was sent to the void. Naruto then climbed back to his feet and leapt back to give himself some room before his magic energy spiked as he utilized his mother's signature spell. Seal Magic. Chains. The chains lashed out at Kinkaku, but the golden-eyed Dragonslayer gave a bored look at the incoming weapons as they moved to strike from various angles. Without even a word, the void responded to his will and the chains were swept into the final frontier, lost to the stars as they were being pulled in. Due to their attachment to Naruto, the blonde was quickly being pulled along for the ride, tearing a pair of trenches with his boots as he tried to utilize friction to stop. "It's no use, cousin," Kinkaku stated as he shifted into a position to strike. "Your chains are stuck in the void and you can't remove them no matter what you try. You need close proximity to the voids in order to take the magic energy from them, and by the time you do, you'll be dead." Naruto gritted his teeth as he was drawn closer and closer to the son of the Dragon King. However, the son of the Black Dragon suddenly stopped his acts of resistance. His blue irises then gained a light of mischievous glee within the sea of ethereal white before he grinned toothily. "Don't ever underestimate me, Datbeo." The verbal tick he unknowingly inherited from his mother let itself through as the earth under Kinkaku's feet suddenly cracked and burst apart. More chains? Kinkaku's eyes widened in shock as the multitude of spiked tips ripped through his thighs and arms. He then released a cry of agonizing pain as the chains exited directly out the other side of whichever leg or arm they had impaled. They then wrapped themselves securely around his limbs and torso. With a mental command, the underground chains were freed from their earthen confines. When I saw the chains shooting out, I assumed those were all he had, Konkao thought as he followed the path of the chains he was bound with. To think they could sprout from his vertebral joints as well. "I need to get out. Teleport." Kinkaku acted to summon forth a portal to teleport away to safety, but he wasn't given the luxury as Naruto made the chains pull Kinkaku towards him. "Gah!" Kinkaku screamed as the chains tugged his injured form through the air directly towards Naruto. A quick pulse of magic energy then allowed Naruto to break off his chains that were being drawn into the voids. The broken lengths were lost to the portals, but the shortened magic constructs were already reverted back to their original forms when Naruto sent his magic into them. Now for extra assurance. Naruto smirked as the chains from his elbow and knee joints arced around and tore through Kinkaku's back and shoulders before the ones from his palms had run through the ground to avoid the still active rips in space. They burst out of the ground and wrapped themselves securely around the hilts of Excalibur and Ascalon as they were laying. The chains flung Excalibur and Ascalon towards their sole user as Naruto leapt forwards just as Kinkaku was within striking range. Naruto utilized the connection to the blades of Merlin and the swords found their way back into his grip, alight with their unique magic-fueled fires. "Die!" With a roar, Naruto slashed at Kinkaku's neck, aiming for the decapitation strike that would end the life of the Dragon King's son. However, as the swords neared his neck, Kinkaku's body suddenly released a pulse of magic energy and everything fell apart. The chains that held his body fell away and the fiery blades of Merlin phased through his neck. There was no blood, no cauterization of flesh. It was as if the void Dragonslayer had made himself intangible for that split second where he would have died. Once the swords had completely passed through his intangible flesh, he suddenly solidified, and Naruto was slashed across his chest with the Millennium Gauntlets. 5 bloody gashes stretched across his chest and he was sent flying back, but he quickly recovered so that he was floating in the air. "You're very good, cousin," Kinkaku grunted, as he looked at the holes in his body. "Forcing me to use my intangibility is quite a feat since only dragons have ever forced me to use that technique." "I saw it," Naruto stated, his eyes shining as he glared at the void Dragonslayer. "You manipulated the very space that your body existed in, making it a void in itself." "That's right. It is one of the few spells I can utilize to counter your ability to absorb energy as well." The son of the Dragon King stated, "You take energy from everywhere and in almost every form. The sun, the wind, heat, the atmosphere itself. As long as it has some form of tangible energy that you can make contact with, you can take it for yourself. However, my spell of intangibility sends magic in my body through the void, across entire dimensions. Not even you, son of Agnologia, can absorb energy that's been sent across spacetime." Steam then began to rise from Kinkaku's body as his bloodied flesh began to heal. Bright blue magic energy increased the rate of regeneration to a level that equaled that of Naruto's 5-point elemental seal. In the same time it took for Naruto's gashes to lead all the wounds he received from Naruto's chains. "Life aura magic." Naruto growled out. "Taking the magic energy from every living thing around you, whether it be plant or animal, you take it to heal yourself. I take whatever I can get in order to bring about victory. The savage lands are barren, so I am forced to resort to recycling my own magic energy for healing purposes. For Chichu's sake, I learned whatever branches of magic I thought would allow me to serve him best. You know the pride of a Dragonslayer. We are divinity in human form. We are above all." "That may be true." Naruto's eyes shone brightly, his magic energy cloaking his form as Excalibur and Ascalon blazed brightly. "But it does mean that we are immortal. And I will prove that when I eradicate you. Not if I kill you first. Insert music. 2 steps from hell united we stand, divided we fall." Biju Exceed vs Hashirama. Gukakyu, Kurama and Matabi roared as they sent forth their respective spheroids of raging fire. Hashirama's wooden giant swung its massive arm through the air, the thick exterior allowing it to part the flames with ease. The wooden giant's yellow eyes glowed before it charged forwards. Shukaku manipulated the earth beneath its feet, turning it into sand before aiming to sink the titan beneath it. Taking advantage of the wood giant being immobilized, Kakuo quickly drew magic energy into his dolphin-like maw before firing out the Bijudama like a bullet. The attack ripped the earth from its momentum and scattered the sands. However, Hashirama clapped his hand-like paws together and activated his defensive spell. Mokuton. Mokujoheki, wooden pillars sprouted out from the earth on either side of the wood giant. ripping through the sands before arching and interlocking with one another to form a massive, dense dome of wood. The Bijudama slammed into the wood-locking wall with terrific force, and the Gobi's eyes widened in shock as he saw the wall bend before snapping back into shape as the violet-black orb arced through the air and slammed into a far-off area of the rocky wasteland where it detonated. The wall then dropped and Hashirama willed the wood of his giant avatar to protrude from the bottom of its feet, giving it the ability to lift itself into the air. The wood giant then fell towards the earth and reared its fist back before letting it fly, hitting Shukaku directly in the forehead. The tanuki stumbled from the blow only for the giant to follow up with 2 quick punches to the face. It then twisted and slammed its elbow against the side of Shukaku's jaw before jumping and delivering 2 strong kicks to chest. Mokuton. Mokuyari. Hashirama clapped his hands and then a massive tree trunk erupted forth from the wood giant's back. The tentacle slithered through the air before it straightened out. The spear was then ripped out and then hurled through the air. However, Chome flew down and batted away the weapon with her horn before it take down her little brother. With a loud buzzing of her wings, she charged. The wood giant gripped her by the horn to stop itself from being impaled, but it was still being forced backwards. The wood giant then pushed Chome back and sent 2 straight palm strikes. From each palm, a single wooden dragon rocketed out towards the kabutomashi beetle, but Chome slapped them aside with her large limbs, their scythe-like capabilities easily serving to behead the reptiles. She then aimed to use this capability against the titan she fought, but the giant hopped, ducked and jumped to avoid every one of her slashes before crossing its arms in front of its body to block the horn strike from her. The wooden giant then attacked with the wooden dragon wrapped around its torso and the giant reptile slammed into her before gripping her by the horn with its teeth. The dragon slammed her into the ground multiple times before tossing her through the air and opened its jaws, a golden beam of energy firing from it. She quickly fired off the beam version of her Bijudama and a powerful explosion rocked the land. Mokuton. Kongoken. The wood giant quickly leapt into the air and reared back its arm before crashing its adamantine fist down upon Shukaku. The large tanuki released a gasp of pain when the force of the attack traveled through his sandy body. A spiderweb of cracks originated from the center of the crater he now lay in. Tsunori. Using the resulting smoke cloud as a cover, the wood giant was then hit with the powerful headbutt of Kakuo and rolled along the ground, a massive crack stretching across the length of its arm. Kakuo released a roar as he charged forth once more and Hashirama moved the giant's arm to deliver a counterpunch. However, Kakuo quickly converted his body into steam and flowed into the cracks in the wooden giant's arm. The cracks lengthened and widened before an explosion of white blew apart the limb. Kakuo solidified a few feet away before ducking as Kurama leapt over him. Fire rocket. The Kyuubi's body was engulfed in fire as he descended upon his foe, but the dragon that was wrapped around the giant's torso sprung to life. It slithered through the air with a roar and slammed into Kurama's body with terrific force. The kitsune quickly gripped the dragon by its throat and aimed to burn it into ashes, but the wooden reptile snaked its way around Kurama's limbs and torso before biting down on the fox's throat and forced into the ground with a deafening crash. Ni-san, Oni-sama. His sisters turned to him and moved to help him, but the wooden giant suddenly slammed its arm down on the ground. Mokuron. Mokuryu. The earth shuddered and shook before 4 more wood dragons appeared and moved to bind his siblings. No, the fox struggled against his bindings, but his flames were suddenly nullified and Kurama's eyes widened as he watched the crimson flames flow into the dragon's jaws. It's taking my magic, he realized. His eyes widened even further as he looked around to see the struggling forms of his siblings. The massive wooden dragons were even capable of remaining intact despite Matabi's hellfire eating away at their toughened bark. Kurama's eyes glowed with rage before he lashed out and gripped the arm of the wood dragon that held him down. No one fucks with my little brothers and sisters, Kurama roared as he ripped the arm off. He then gripped the wood dragon by the head, removing its grip from his neck before holding it by the jaws. With a powerful show of force, he pulled the dragon apart and sent splinters every which way. Kurama's tails fanned out behind him before extending outwards. 2 tails each wrapped around the throats of the wood dragons and ripped them off of his siblings before he swung them all through the air, slamming them against each other with a deafening crash. The dragons roared as they were smashed together before being forcibly ripped apart by the kitsune's rear appendages. His free tail then ignited before a fireball formed at its tip. He swung the tail and the fireball scorched the very air around it, but Hashirama made his wood giant held up its single arm in front of its body. A massive explosion engulfed the wood giant, but it did no more than peel away at the bark on the giant's arm and part of its chest. However, it served its purpose as a distraction as Kurama had already thundered across the battlefield and headbutted the giant. Hashirama gripped his titan tightly as the giant was bombarded with ferocious flaming slashes that scarred its chest and face. His tails then wrapped themselves around the giant's waist and Kurama hurled the giant through the air before charging up a Bijudama. Sorry buddy. Gotta let you take this one. Hashirama patted his giant lightly on the head before leaping off of it as Kurama's spell turned the powerful giant into nothing more than embers in the sky. Hashirama tumbled through the air, but then spread his wings with air magic. The Mokuton spell user then fell to the ground and the earth cratered beneath his feet upon landing. However, that earth quickly morphia. Kurama turned to the Ichibi. "I know, don't tell me what to do, Baka Kitsune." Shukaku slammed his claws into the ground and the sand rose up and became a massive pyramid. The black markings of Shukaku's body then moved as if they had a mind of their own, snaking their way across the sands before forming a binding formula on the pyramid. Sabaku Sote Sofuan. Rinpungakure. Chomei unleashed a spray of powdery magic energy from her mandibles before Kurama and Madatai breathed out streams of fire. The powder ignited a massive explosion rocked the wasteland battlefield, adding another crater to the population that decorated said wasteland. The sand then fell away to reveal nothing within them, but Shukaku's eyes widened when he saw the hole in the ground. Shit! The ground rumbled and a wood dragon burst forth from the ground with a deafening roar. The wood dragon slashed its claws at Kakuo, sending the goby skidding backwards before it lashed its tail out and caught Chomei around her abdomen. Chomei buzzed her wings rapidly and lifted the dragon off of the ground before it could try to drag her down. The dragon arched its body to try and bite her, but the Kabutomoshi beetle's tough horn fought it off before she zoomed down to her younger sister, Spitfire. Gukakyu. A powerful sphere of hellfire exploded against the dragon's face, loosening its grip around the Nanabi, which allowed said insect to rip it off of her and then throw it down to the ground. The dragon immediately slithered across the wasteland to avoid the bombardment of crimson flames from Kurama. But Kurama slammed his claws on the ground and a streak of pure force tore a crevice in the earth that threw the wood dragon off balance before it was impaled by a series of sand spikes. Hashirama gritted his teeth as he glared at the Biju Exceed. "You lot are proving to be quite uncooperative. We are not going to be used as weapons for humans," Kurama growled. "We fought for our freedom. And now it will be lost, Kyubi." Hashirama clapped his hands together and his magic responded in kind. Mokuton. Kajukai Korin. Massive plants suddenly sprouted out of the barren earth. "How is he making plants grow in this stuff?" Shukaku exclaimed. "Well shit, Shukaku." Kurama snorted. "It's almost as if he were doing feats that people would call supernatural, fantastical maybe even. Oh, what's word, oh right. Magical. It's fucking magic, you twat. And you wonder why I hate you," Shukaku growled. "You know your question was stupid, so shut up and fight." Kurama glared at his tanuki of a brother. His red eyes then turned back to the massive plants that formed around Hashirama, but the humanoid Exceed didn't end it there, for the plants suddenly bore flowers, their petals being a fluorescent pink color. The color that promised that all things must die. The flowers then began to release a golden mist, their pollen. The Biju Exceed's enhanced sense of smell caught a whiff of the mist before the majority of it could even arrive at their locations. Suddenly, their eyes began to droop slightly. "Knockout pollen that affect even us," Chomei muttered. "Just what has Faust done that this Exceed can even do that? All magic energy in Daedalus once stemmed from us. Or rather our primordial form." Kakuo reminded his elder sister. "It's only logical that their little science experiment would be capable of committing such feats. It's lasted this long against us, even with Kurama on our side. And that bothers me," Mitabi muttered. "Chomei, blow it back with your wings. Shukaku, help her out." Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Night Attack. Rikuden. Shukaku slapped his round stomach and a strong bullet of wind erupted forth from his jaws. The winds melded with the current generated by Chomei's wings and the pollen was blown back by the violent windstorm. "Onisama." Kurama nodded to the Bakaneko before he and Mitabi unleashed waves of fire from their bodies. Hellfire and foxfire melded together to become a massive wave of burning destruction. Unison Raid. Goka Mekkyaku. True to its name, the Great Fire Annihilation spell did need annihilate. The ground was turned to magma from the intense heat and that it turned served to further the purpose of burning down the flowering plants, melting them into nothing. Hashirama hovered over the magma-coated lands before he summoned forth a myriad of wood tentacles that tore their way across the battlefield. The gigantic tree trunks were even capable of towering over the Biju Exceed themselves, rising to heights of 300 feet in mere seconds. However, they were forced to an abrupt halt by Shukaku when he brought up a gargantuan sand wall. "I'm not the weakest, but I know I'm not the best at combat. I am the ultimate defense, and no way in hell you're getting through this." To back up his words, Shukaku pushed the wall forwards and the tree trunks were snapped by the immense pressure exerted by the resisting force. Shukaku then split the trees down the middle and then parted his arms, the sand moving in tandem before they were morphed into giant arms that lashed out at Hashirama. Hashirama flew through the air with his wings, performing every aerial acrobatic trick in the book and then some, even lashing out with wooden weapons that he summoned forth from various parts of his body. One giant arm was sliced apart at the wrist by a massive wooden sword. The sword was swung twice more to stop 2 more sand arms before it was wrenched free from his grip. A spear of sand branched off from the arm then took away his weapon, but a shield formed itself from Hashirama's chest before it sprouted a multitude of spikes that then proceeded to tear the sand arm apart from the inside out. Hashirama ripped the shield off of his chest as if he hadn't even grown it from his own flesh, and manipulated it to become a giant buzzsaw in appearance. He flung the circular serrated weapon and it cut its way through the dense sands, flying right past Matabi's head, nicking her ear. The weapon of Daedalus then released a loud cry of pain as he was slapped through the air by the palm of a giant sand hand before being driven deep beneath the earth by the 2 arms of sand that followed after him. However, he didn't remain underground for long as a massive fist punched its way to the surface. The Biju Exceed prepared to do battle with another Mokujin, but this was no ordinary wooden giant as shown by the seemingly endless shadow this thing seemed to cast over them. "What the actual fuck?" Shukaku muttered. "What is that thing?" Chome buzzed her wings in a slight amount of fear. "It's huge," Kakuo stated. This giant was different. This giant matched them in size, and actually managed to tower over them as it stood as a massive height of at least 400 feet, dwarfing the fully grown tailed beasts. It looked akin to the ancient Buddha seen in human temples before the Dragon War. 2 arms were held in front of its chest as if it were in prayer, while several thousand other arms were sprouted out from its back in seemingly countless concentric rows. The humanoid Exceed smirked as he looked upon the surprised Biju Exceed from his perch atop his ultimate combat spell's head. "Let's see you take on something that's not your size." "Behold," Hashirama spread his arms, grinning like the feline that he was. "Mokuton. Shin Susenju. Insert music. Fate Zero. The battle is to the strong." Naruto vs Kinkaku. Futon. Atsugai. Naruto charged up a ball of compressed air before launching it from his hands. The ball phased through Kinkaku's chest as if he weren't even there before being forced to duck out of the way of the arcs of fire generated by the blades of Merlin. As the wind sphere smashed into the ground behind him, it began expanding outwards as a massive dome of slicing winds that unleashed a devastating amount of downward pressure that forced the land to depress in that area. The winds were then ignited and a massive storm of swirling fire burned the land's surface and veins of molten magma traversed the lanes above glowed with the colors of fire, reflecting the burning lands below. Earth magic. Earth flow spears. A straight line of earth spikes headed towards Naruto, but the blonde Dragonslayer quickly blocked them with his crimson shield of energy before he spun around and sliced them apart with his swords. He then came to a stop and stabbed his sword into the ground and streams of gold and silver fire rocketed across the earth, leaving burning destruction in their wake. As they reached Kinkaku's location, the flames erupted from beneath his feet as towering tornadoes. The fire tornadoes were quickly sent through the void and Kinkaku was revealed to be relatively unharmed, slightly singed by the dragon-slaying fires. Kinkaku then teleported to get behind his opponent and Naruto reacted due to his enhanced senses, delivering a horizontal slice with Excalibur. They were blocked by the Millennium Gauntlets before the Void Dragonslayer gripped his opponent by the wrists and then pulled him forwards, driving his knee into his gut. Naruto unleashed a gasp of pain, spittle and blood escaping from his lips before the knee found itself embedded in his face. His arms were twisted and his grips on his deceased mother's weapons were lost before he was kicked away. Kinkaku smirked as he then reached for the swords and gripped them by their handles. "Let's see how you feel to be struck down by the son of your most hated enemy, and by the very weapons that you wield." Kinkaku chuckled as he then made the motion to pull them out of the dirt. However, he found that he couldn't. "What?" He grunted and screamed as he aimed to pull them out, but it was if the swords were over 100 tons. "Why can't I lift them?" he grunted. Naruto chuckled as he wiped the blood from his lips and his nose cracked back into his place due to his healing factor. "It's very simple, Void Dragon." His mad appearance was enhanced by the manic glow in his eyes as he held up his hands and the swords rattled in response. "You are not worthy." He then snapped his fingers and the swords unleashed powerful explosions of fire. Domes of searing heat that expanded outwards and turned every living thing they touched to ash. Towering clouds of smoke wafted into the dark clouds above before they dispersed by the wild winds of the shockwaves, but they revealed Kinkaku to have escaped his fiery demise as he had shielded himself with the Millennium Gauntlets. The gauntlets were literally red hot, the air around them rippling due to the intense heat. His pants and legs were heavily burned, but his life aura magic activated. Steam rose from his legs as the skin and muscle were healed. "Huh?" Kinkaku laughed triumphantly. "You missed, huh?" A sonic boom echoed across the landscape and Naruto immediately appeared in his cousin's field of vision with a snarl. "Fuck you," was his retort before he lashed out with a strong right jab that struck Kinkaku in the chest. His golden eyes widened as left jab dug itself into his belly before an uppercut to the chin sent him skyward. Naruto followed after him by planting his feet against Kinkaku's chest, and pushed off to go into a backflip, the tip of his boot hitting Kinkaku against his already injured chin to send him higher into the air. Futon. Senpu Kyaku. A sonic boom occurred as Naruto then spun and his wind-coated limb lashed out, striking Kinkaku with the force of a cyclone. The Void Dragonslayer flew through the air, smashing through boulders before he came to a stop by stabbing the Millennium Gauntlets into the ground. He gripped the boulder he would have slammed into, his bloodied face healing from Naruto's kick as some of the tree's life force was taken from it. With a roar, Kinkaku's muscle bulged and his magic energy and killing intent flared. The earth cratered beneath his feet as he then ripped the rock formation out of the ground before spinning around and swinging it at Naruto when the blonde was just about to begin his attacks with the blades of Merlin upon recovering them. Time slowed for Naruto as the impact registered with his body, his ribs breaking of his right side as he was hit with the massive piece of stone. He rocketed through the air, smashing through his own set of trees before a massive shockwave occurred as he slammed into the side of one of the remaining mountains left behind by the Dragon War. Earth Magic. Gaia Force. Kinkaku unleashed his magic energy and a massive brown magic seal appeared beneath his feet. The land shifted, rising and falling as Kinkaku's magic reshaped it. Rising from the subterranean depths came a massive giant of stone. It released a low roar before it reared back its fist. Naruto groaned as he shook his head as he crawled out of the hole his body had made, only to quickly be driven back into it and even deeper when the stone giant's fist made terrific impact with him. The giant continued its barrage of blows, a series of cracks running up the mountainside and bringing about a rock slide. After about 10 more punches, the stone giant stopped its attacks, staring at the massive smoke cloud it had generated. Silence reigned supreme as the Golden Dragonslayer and his earthen avatar kept their eyes trained on the massive fist-shaped hole in the mountainside. The mountain itself then began to shake and Kinkaku readied his Earth Titan for another attack, but then, the shaking died away. The earthquake had ended so abruptly that for the few moments of silence, Kinkaku actually wondered if he had just imagined that something happened. Maybe it was just the adrenaline, he muttered. The earth shook once more, then again, maybe not. The ground beneath the stone giant's feet cracked and shuddered before rays of blue energy peeked through to the surface. The ground then burst apart and Kinkaku looked down to see a massive orb of swirling blue energy grinding through his giant like it was nothing. Kinkaku quickly flew up before the Cho-Odama Rasengan could end him, but the same couldn't be said for the stone avatar as it was literally dust in the wind. However, Kinkaku was once again faced with the orb of swirling destruction as Naruto took his position above his airborne foe, the massive spiraling sphere held above his raised hands. Energy Make. Cho-Odama Rasengan. He flung the massive spheroid downwards, but Kinkaku quickly opened up the void and the attack was sucked into the rip in space. Kinkaku then flew up via spatial manipulation and summoned forth the magic of his draconian father. Uchiryu no Shinku Sume. Black and silver claws of energy tore the very fabric of space as they struck Naruto. A trio of slash marks formed against his body, but the voids were closed as Naruto took the energy from them and made it into a counter as his arms lashed out and whips of black and blue slashed Kinkaku across the chest. Mokashiryu no Soso. The twin spear spell left a large X-shaped wound on Kinkaku's body, but Kinkaku quickly teleported out of the way to land on the ground and avoid the wind blade that was aimed for his heart. Steam then wafted off of their bodies as their respective healing capabilities came into play. The wounds on Naruto's arms sealed up and the entire colony of ants Kinkaku touched suddenly withered and died as he took their life force. Seal Magic. Gravity. Naruto made a series of hand motions and pointed his fingers at his opponent and gravity increased tenfold. But Kinkaku quickly teleported out of the spell's range, the earth caving inwards from the increase in downward force. His ears twitched and his eyes widened, ducking when Naruto slashed the air right above his dual-colored hair. Kinkaku then reacted quickly and lashed out with a strong kick to the outstretched arm, leaving Naruto wide open for the follow-up kick to the chest. Naruto stumbled backwards before he was struck with a strong punch to the face. The brown-skinned man then twisted his body at the hip to slam his elbow against Naruto's chest before rotating to jam the same elbow against the same point. Naruto felt his sternum creak from the force and he windsoaked the final elbow strike crashing down from above, sending him to his knees. However, Naruto's white eyes shone brighter as he slammed his hands on the ground and a massive rush of wind erupted forth from his body. Futon. Arashi no Hanseki. The Storm Crusher spell had Kinkaku skidding away before he leapt back as Naruto's punch cratered the earth where he had been previously standing. The two Dragonslayers then rushed towards another and Kinkaku's arm was quickly coated in a thick layer of the ground as he dragged it along its surface, while Naruto's leg became surrounded by swirling winds as if it were caught within a miniature cyclone. Earth Magic. Tectonic Impact. Futon. Senpu Kyaku. Naruto leapt into the air while Kinkaku skidded across the ground and shifted his body, driving the full momentum of his body through his arm. The uppercut collided with Naruto's axe kick and the two elemental attacks clashed with terrific force that ripped the ground beneath their feet and generated a massive shockwave that uprooted the nearby trees. The two skidded backwards from each other due to the stalemate before they lashed out with the claws of their Dragonslayer magic. Mokashiryu no Hakai Tsume. Uc Hyoryu no Shinku Tsume. Energy and space tore the land asunder as it rose up and depressed, bursts of energy scarring the land while other areas vanished from view into the rips in the fabric of space. However, the clash came to an end when Naruto spun on his heels and drove his legs skyward against Kinkaku's wrists when he went for a hammer blow. Mokashiryu no Zanso. The decapitating talon spell sent Kinkaku skidding backwards, but a tail of warped space and magic swirled to life from the void Dragonslayer's tailbone area as he spun around. Uchiryu no Kometo Shippo. The comet tail spell crashed against Naruto's ribs, the bones breaking from the impact before he flew through the air. He quickly flipped and planted his feet against the side of the mountain before pushing off with enough force to break the stone. His body phased through Kinkaku's body as Kinkaku became intangible, and then the brown-skinned Dragonslayer turned to strike back with the clawed gauntlets, but his eyes widened when Naruto vanished with a sonic boom. Energy Make. Double Odama Rasengan. The son of two wizard saints appeared above Kinkaku before crashing the two giant orbs of swirling magic down on his opponent's back. Kinkaku released a loud cry of pain as his flesh was ground into by the orbs, the ground cracking apart as he was taken down. However, upon slamming into the ground, Kinkaku made a move to escape. The ground opened up with the void and the golden-eyed Dragonslayer entered its darkness, but Naruto would have none of it. Not this time, Void Dragon. He roared as he dove into the void. You're not getting away from me this time. Kinkaku's eyes widened as he turned around and found himself being followed through the void. The rip in space was a tunnel that Naruto was quite familiar with due to his escapade involving his bout with Morpheus alongside his other self, but he was not searching for a doorway to his homeworld. He was aiming to kill the son of his father's most hated enemy. Naruto swung Excalibur and Ascalon at Kinkaku, the void Dragonslayer being forced to block the explosive blow with the Millennium Gauntlets. The shining explosion sent Kinkaku off course and he flew through a rip in the void, Naruto following after him. Steam rose as Kinkaku's flesh healed and his heated gauntlets were now in touch with the icy lands he slammed into. Naruto crashed down, his clothes fluttering in the heavy winds generated by the blizzard. Kinkaku looked around, his golden eyes wide with shock as he found himself in the unfamiliar territory. "What have you done?" Kinkaku exclaimed. "You sent us tumbling out of our dimension. These aren't the snowy peaks of Northern Fury and these aren't the Arctic and Antarctic regions at the poles of our planet. This is an entire dimension of ice. I've traveled through space and time before, Void Dragon." Naruto stated. "I can find my way back, but you won't once I bury your corpse beneath the ice. The only thing making it back to Earthland is your head for when I present it to your father when Agnologia regains the throne." "You ignorant asshole," Kinkaku roared. "I've had enough of your foolishness, cousin. If blows and words will not allow you to see reason, then it is only right that you die." Insert music. 2 steps from hell, strength of 1,000 men. The dual hair-colored Dragonslayer snarled and his golden eyes glowed. Silver and black energy flared out of his body and the white part of his hair then began to bleed off into the black areas before gaining a silvery sheen. Soon his hair was turned entirely silvery white and his brown skin became coated in silvery scales with black flame-like markings. His fangs and nails sharpened and his golden eyes were now shining brilliantly with power, piercing the darkness of the cavern. The phantom of a silver-scaled dragon similar in appearance to Agnologia, but with black flame-like markings, appeared behind him. The appearance of Zenu the Dragon King seemed to amplify his fearsome image. Voido Doraibo. At the same time, Naruto had also decided to up the ante. A dome of ebony and dark blue rushed out of his body, melting away the ice beneath his feet only for it to flash freeze due to the sub-zero temperatures of the ice dimension. The dome of energy died away and in the center of his own personal crater of ice, the son of Agnologia stood with his entire body coated with black scales with blue flame-like patterns on them. His white eyes shone even brighter than before and his claws and fangs glistened in the light of the lightning that arched across the stormy skies. His hair bore his magic energy swirled around his form and he roared, the phantom image of the black dragon of the apocalypse roaring behind him. Apocalypsu Doraibo. The 2 drive mode users then took a few slow steps, the ground cratering beneath their feet with each one. They then finally took off and a massive scar in the ground marked their respective paths. The 2 then crashed their fists against each other generating a massive crater as the force of their blows stretched across the ice dimension. Kinkaku's physical might won out in the end as his Millennium Gauntlets gave him a bit more of an edge. He drove his fist into Naruto's face before he lashed onto Naruto's pained form by the throat. Kinkaku flew forth and then dragged Naruto through the ice, tearing a massive trench in it before he lifted Naruto up and used him as a way to punch a massive hole the size of 2 elephants through the side of an ice mountain. The Void Dragonslayer didn't stop there though as he and his opponent now tunneled through the mountain. Naruto's white eyes shone with epic fury as he slammed his knee against Kinkaku's stomach and then aimed for the groin. The Void Dragonslayer winced, and though his durability reduced the pain of the blow, It allowed Naruto to reverse their positions and he pulled Kinkaku along for the ride through the ice mountain. The son of Zenu released a gargled cry of anger as the ice shattered against his scaled form. Naruto then delivered a furious barrage of punches to the face. "You think you can kill Tusan?" A crack echoed throughout the tunnel as Naruto managed to break the divine Dragonslayer's nose, drawing blood before he was slammed through the floor of one of the mountain's many caverns. Kinkaku managed to gain enough thought to make himself intangible and Naruto's moving body slammed by itself into the stalagmite-riddled ceiling above. He then glanced up and saw Naruto staring down at him from the ceiling. The two divine Dragonslayers growled at one another before they shot forth from their respective positions. Naruto was grabbed by his collar as he was flipped through the air and slammed into the ice, his scaled form shattering the stalactites as forming a crater. Mokashiryu no Zanso. His legs slammed chest and made the void Dragonslayer cough up a bit of blood and spittle, but Kinkaku rotated through the air and slammed his tail of space and energy against his opponent. Uchiryu no Kometo Shippo. With the force of a comet, the tail made Naruto's body rip a trench through the ice before he burst out the mountain and broke through to the interior of the adjacent one. Kinkaku flew out of the hole and slashed the air as his wings of warped space appeared around his arms. Uchiryu no Waramayoku. The wings tore a massive scar against the fabric of space and the ice mountain that Naruto had flown into was taken into its depths, its form lengthening and twisting. However, the void was forcibly shut as the magic energy supplied to the rip in space was taken in by the Apocalypse Dragonslayer. "You annoy me, energy dragon. Not energy." The sound barrier shattered as Naruto appeared in Kinkaku's visage with a massive energy make Wakusei Rasengan in his hand. Apocalypse. Kinkaku grunted in pain as the massive orb was slammed into his body and the three smaller orbs that orbited around the larger orb like moons to a planet began orbiting even faster before generating an explosive cyclone of energy that sent Kinkaku spinning through the air. He smashed straight through the summit of one ice mountain, shearing it off in its entirety before slamming into another with enough force to generate an earthquake and a shockwave that ripped through the blizzard of the ice dimension. Naruto followed after his opponent and the two beasts of battle roared as they clashed once more. The entirety of the mountain shook, massive explosions breaking through as the two divine Dragonslayers battled. Their magic energies flared outwards with each titanic clash. From the outside, the mountain they fought in was shown to have a numerous amount of holes and cracks across its surface until finally, one final epic burst of power literally blew the mountaintop off. They flew through it before breaking through the summit of the airborne mountain. Naruto then spun and threw Kinkaku away and Naruto summoned forth a great deal of magic energy into his outstretched arm. Kinkaku quickly warped the space around him and moved to teleport, but Naruto did the same as he did last time and followed after his golden-eyed adversary. Insert music. Fate Stay Night UBW 2014 Souls to Fight. The two burst out of the rip in space and were now in a burning land where volcanoes, molten lava, sulfur and clouds of ash decorated the landscape. The volcanoes erupted in tandem with the shockwaves that heralded the arrival of the two divine Dragonslayers. Kinkaku roared and he manipulated the space around a volcano, the entirety of the burning mountain being sucked into its depth. Naruto's magic energy was still pooling in his hands and a massive sphere of Dragonslayer magic, energy make and Fudon combined as he saw the void open up once more as Kinkaku used the falling volcano as an offensive-defensive weapon. As he launched it out of the void, Naruto now held a massive spiraling shuriken of energy and wind that was made structurally stable by the blue and black energy that outlined it. Ichi nin no otoko unison raid. Psycho Fuuton. Rasen's Hurricane. Naruto threw his third most powerful offensive spell at the Void Dragonslayer's incoming volcano, but the slicing winds of the Rasen Shuriken easily tore through the thick stone. Kinkaku's eyes widened in amazement and shock when he saw the volcano had been perfectly bisected, the winds generating a powerful and fiery explosion of lava that rained down upon the already burning lands below. Once that had been done, Naruto pulsed his magic energy and his spell responded in tandem, expanding outwards as a massive sphere of razor-sharp winds that were capable of cutting on the cellular level. The ash and sulfur-filled air along with whatever nearby volcanoes were swallowed up by the ultimate Fudon spell and turned into literally nothing, but a massive crater in the ground as the burning lands were ignited by the orb of cutting winds. "You're not getting away that easily, Void Dragon," Naruto yelled as he saw Kinkaku step out of the void he had used to dodge the Rasen Shuriken. Kinkaku quickly raised his arms, but that did little to stop the drive mode user. Kinkaku flew through the air and slammed into the side of one of the volcanoes, causing it to erupt. He quickly stepped to the side as Naruto's claws slammed into the side of the mountain where his head had been, a spiderweb of cracks racing out from the point of impact. A rock slide of magma-coated stone then came rolling down the side of the mountain as Kinkaku gripped Naruto by his hair and swung him around, crashing his face into the fiery mountain. Kinkaku then summoned the void and the rock slide fell into the darkness before falling out from the new opening in space that Kinkaku generated. You think you can find your way back home through the void? Kinkaku roared as he threw Naruto up into the air. Well, let's see you try. Uchiryu no Shinku Sume. The vacuum claw spell slammed against Naruto's body and sent him tumbling towards the void and the descending storm of burning rock. But Naruto quickly rotated his body and summoned forth another Rasen Shuriken. He hurled the powerful spell and turned the burning rocks to dust as he allowed the spiraling shuriken to expand. He then vanished with a sonic boom and slammed into the ground where Kinkaku was standing, the void Dragonslayer becoming intangible to avoid the attack. The crater caused veins of lava to rupture and send the molten earth raining down on them, but by the time the lava hit the ground, they had already caused 3 separate shockwaves in their attempts to kill one another. The two met each other blow for blow, shockwaves and craters filling the volcano-filled dimension before they kicked each other in the chest to gain some room. Magic energy swirled into Naruto's open maw, while magic energy and the visible space around Kinkaku did the same. Naruto had an orb of black and blue magic energy hovering over his mouth while a similar construct of black and silver formed in Kinkaku's. Mokashiryu no. Uchiryu no. The two divine Dragonslayers swallowed the energy spheres before their bodies bloated, steam escaping from the spaces in their mouths. Their eyes shone brightly as they reared their heads back. Hoko! The two roars rocketed across the burning lands, turning it asunder before they slammed into one another. The two of the 4 elements that governed the universe battled for supremacy, and suddenly the entire dimension of volcanoes suddenly appeared to fold in on itself as a massive void surrounded by bursts of energy appeared at the point of collision. Numerous pieces of burning rock flew into the void before a massive explosion that literally tore apart the fabric of the volcano-filled reality occurred. The two divine Dragonslayers were then sent rocketing through different dimensions as they continued to fight, the rip in space trying as hard as it could to seal itself in order to end its unnatural creation. But the energy from Naruto's own roar made sure the void stayed open for quite a while, enough for the two young men to take their battle through 4 different dimensions. One was a dimension made entirely of acid that would have burned their flesh had it not been for the scales of their drive mode. Though, Naruto lost his cloak, face mask and part of his shirt, while Kinkaku's vest and part of his right pant leg was lost. The second a dimension where gravity was increased to the point that it was capable of forcing even their forms to their knees, but they powered through it and continued their battle as they fell through the rips in space. The third was a mountainous region where the rocky formations were literally all that composed its landscape, only for the majority of said mountains to be torn apart by the energetic void and the Dragonslayers that fought within it. The fourth dimension they got through was a massive desert. Though their battle left no via mention, it was obvious that something had been through here, as the calm desert had never experienced a powerful sandstorm such as the one generated by the void's windstorm. Finally, they were taken through the void and released into the gravitational field of a moon, slamming into one of its many craters and made it larger in size. They pushed away from each other as the void that took their battle through dimensions finally consumed all of the energy that was required to keep its existence intact. Naruto and Kinkaku panted heavily. They were tired and exhausted, due to Naruto drawing energy from the very universe itself. His drive mode's constant energy output generated an aura that was strong enough to keep him breathing within the vacuum of space, and being the void Dragonslayer, Kinkaku had no trouble surviving the vacuum. Though despite their limitless magic, and their respective healing factors keeping their bodies intact, they were still fatigued. "Why won't you fall?" the two asked each other simultaneously. The two took off across the surface of the moon, their blows colliding with destruction force. Trails of blue, black and silver marked their paths as they toured trenches in the moon's surface before Kinkaku gripped Naruto by the wrist when the blonde Dragonslayer went for a hammer blow. He spun and threw Naruto to ground zero before firing off a roar. The beam of silver and black was batted aside, however, as Naruto slashed through it with his claws of energy. He then dug his claws into the ground and wrenched free a massive piece of the moon's surface before hurling it as if it were beach ball. The lesser force of gravity helped immensely in making the feat possible. However, the rock was shattered as Kinkaku punched through it. Naruto summoned forth the blades of Merlin and he swung Excalibur and Ascalon just as Kinkaku brought down the Millennium Gauntlets in a brutal hammer strike. The moon's surface ruptured as the two dragon-killing weapons clashed. A powerful stream of golden fire then raced towards Kinkaku, but he avoided it before slicing the very fabric of space apart to the tear through Ascalon's follow-up attack. "We're far too evenly matched," Naruto thought. "His durability, his strength, everything is practically equal to my own. Even if I were to use Doragon Fosu, knowing him, Zenu would have taught his Dragonslayer how to use it as well. There's only one thing I have left that I could hope to break through his defenses with." He glanced down at Excalibur, the sword that King Arthur had used during his reign when it was said Caliburn had broken. Despite Caliburn being the sword of kings, Excalibur was the true might of the three blades of Merlin. There was a reason it was once labeled the sword of promised victory. And now he would reveal to his newfound nemesis just why it was called that. He gripped the blades tighter before he placed a great portion of his magic energy into Ascalon, and he swung the blade across the moon's surface. Silver fire burned and melted the moon's surface, and Kenkaku's eyes widened, marveling at the beautiful display of power. He made his body intangible, but then he watched as the flames encircled him, and so he was forced to summon a void to remove the flames from his path. It will take a while for him to remove that much fire, just enough for me to do this. Naruto closed his eyes and resealed Ascalon. Insert music. Fate Zero Sword of Promised Victory. He held Excalibur tightly in his grip before raising the golden blade high into the air. Golden magic energy was drawn from the surrounding space and also fueled by Naruto's own magic energy to the point that his drive mode actually flickered for a moment. His eyes closed in focus and his sword shone brighter and brighter. A blade forged by dragons and fairies that was as brilliant as the sun of all of the 3 swords talked about in Arthurian times. Excalibur was always the most memorable. The silver flames of Ascalon were diminished, but despite being freed of his fiery entrapment, he found himself frozen in amazement for a moment. His golden eyes widened as he gazed upon the brilliance of Excalibur, and despite everything, he could not help but split his focus to watch the dazzling blade. The light. No sound traveled through the vacuum of space, but through his powers over the void, not a single world was lost to Kenkaku's ears as Naruto uttered the incantation of the Sword of Promised Victory. Her sword shines, a dream that all warriors scattered in battle, past, present and future, hold and mournfully exalt as their final moments approach. She carries their will as her pride, bidding them to remain steadfast in their loyalty. Now, the undefeated king sings aloud the name of the miracle she holds in her hands. Its name is... Naruto took a single step forward and a shockwave of golden light stretched across the moon's surface as his eyes snapped open. His blue irises shone within the sea of ethereal white, but were now encircled by a ring of gold. X. He swung his arms back before bringing the mighty blade down in the form of a tremendous swing. Caliber. A powerful blast of golden magic energy rushed across the moon, ripping it asunder as it made its way towards the void Dragonslayer. There was something about that mystical blast that made Kenkaku's draconian pride override his common sense. Open the void and make it disappear, become intangible and avoid it. Teleport out of its path and continue the fight to the bitter end. He could have done any one of those things, but his draconian pride and the fact that his father always told him he was stronger than any blade got to him. To be stronger than a blade of Merlin would be a testament to his strength, a testament to just how much greater he was than a sword that could fell dragons in a single swing. There was no greater glory for the silver-haired drive mode user, and so he fought back. You see Hyoryu no Hoko. The beam of black and silver slammed into Excalibur's attack, and the 2 attacks pushed against one another. A spiderweb of cracks raced out from the point of impact until rays of light peeked through the cracks. The 2 attacks fought, pushing and pushing in the attempt to gain dominance over the other. The titanic struggle was brought to an end when the massive explosion of the stalemate occurred. The moon literally broke apart in numerous places, and over a third of moon was shattered, a majority of which took Naruto and Kenkaku with it as they were pulled into Earth's gravitational field. As the meteorites heated up upon re-entry into Earth's atmosphere, Naruto's drive mode began to flicker. He resealed Excalibur and cloaked his body in as much magic energy as he could muster to protect himself, and the last thing he saw and felt was the darkness of the void as he was pulled into a massive opening in the sky. Biju Exceed versus Hashirama. The giant leapt out of the hole, but as it landed, Kakuo had jumped into the air. Chome grabbed him by the horns and then swung him around to build up the necessary momentum. He was thrown in a shroud of white magic energy coated his body. Gozen Tobi. The dolphin horse slammed his hooves upon the wood giant's form, but said wood giant managed to block the attack with the wood dragon that was wrapped around its torso. The force still channeled its way through the giant's body, and the earth shuddered as it cratered beneath it. Kakuo went into a backflip as he pushed off of the wood dragon, but his eyes widened when a massive orb of golden magic energy suddenly formed in the giant's palms as it spread them apart. He quickly converted his body to steam, and the orb of destructive magic passed through his body before blowing up a far-off area of the battlefield and rendering it to dust. Overpowered much? Says the giant tanuki with geokinetic capabilities, the power to spit out hurricane force winds and turn an area of land into a wasteland with one attack. Mutabi muttered. Well, aren't you sassy today? Shukaku countered. The tanuki then summoned to block the bombardment of energy bullets that the wooden Buddha unleashed. Explosions sent them skidding backwards as the shockwaves still managed to get to them. The roars of their defiance met the roars of the wooden giant, and the wood dragons Hashirama summoned forth to help him, but the Biju Exceed fought them off with their claws and fangs, ripping them to shreds. Mokuton. Mokuryu Kako. The giant Buddha then swung its 1,000 arms, and with the simultaneous swings came a wood dragon from each palm. A herd of 1,000 dragons roared as they descended towards their intended targets. Shukaku's eyes glowed with power as his magic energy flared. Sabaku Bakuhatsu. The sand eruption spell came to life as Shukaku had formed a massive mountain of sand to catch the multitude of wooden dragons. The dragons were then trapped as the sands bound their bodies tightly, leaving them vulnerable to the Nibi's attack. Gohinomi. Hellfire flared from her body before she manipulated the flames to swirl rapidly around the massive mound of bound wood dragons. True to its name, the Grand Fire Tower spell was indeed grand. A spiraling tower of ebony and sapphire that burned the dragons black and shifted the sands to glass. The mountain of glass was shattered by another swarm of wood dragons, but Kurama took the liberty of literally ripping them apart. His sharp fangs and claws were most effective in carrying that out. Shukaku, Kakuo. Time to heat things up, Kurama called out to his brothers. Really, heat things up? Shukaku raised a non-existent eyebrow at his older brother. Shukaku complied in the end, as the tanuki began to manipulate the underlying layers of the ground to raise the earth in front of them, as if he were shifting an entire tectonic plate. Kurama and Matabi then turned it into magma with their fires before Kokuo's steam traveled into the cracks beneath the earth and created towering explosions. Unison Raid. Ryuseu. The combined spell that was Meteor Shower made it seem as if the end of the world was occurring. Towers of lava stretched towards the skies and then arched through the air and fell towards Hashirama and his wooden titan like fiery judgment from the dark clouded heavens. With a roar, the wooden giant stormed across the battleground. It moved quickly for a being of its size and density, avoiding the splashes of lava, though smoke rose from its thick hide as it was caught by the splash zone. Bijudama. The Biju Exceed unleashed rapid-fire rounds of their most powerful spell. Explosions dotted the wasteland and tore the land asunder, but the Buddha kept its momentum, firing off a storm of energy bullets from its 1,000 hands to combat the bombardment of Bijudama. Shockwaves and explosions were spread out across the atmosphere. The attacks were so cataclysmic in nature that if one were to view the battle it would appear as if the heavens themselves were shaking. The Buddha then swatted at Chome as she attacked with a volley of ebony energy blasts. The Buddha was hit in the face and chest, sending it stumbling backwards before 17 tails burst out of the ground and wrapped themselves around the titan. However, that did little to stop it as it fired off energy blasts from its numerous free hands. Kurama, Matabi, Shukaku and Kakuo were sent skidding backwards from the impacts, but Matabi was the first to recover as she absorbed the fires from the explosions and turned it into her own. Goka Shuuha. She slammed her claws on the ground and a burst of hellfire rocketed across the ground before coming to a stop beneath the giant's feet. A tower of ebony and sapphire rocketed skyward and the giant and its wielder was wrapped in hellfire, but that lasted for only a short moment as the smoking, heavily burnt giant strode out of the fire without a care in the world. Get it at close range, Kurama ordered. Following their brother's command, the 4 other Biju leapt into the air and opened their jaws, magic energy pooling into condensed orbs of ebony destruction. Bijudama. The 5 Biju Exceed fired off the spheroids, but their eyes widened when the 1,000-handed giant ran right at them and lashed out with 5 of its arms, catching the orbs just as they were launched. The Biju Exceed seemed to be in an almost coma-like state as the giant pushed back their spells with an extreme amount of effort. Hashirama released a loud cry of effort, sweat pouring from his body and blood flowing from his nose due to the taxing amount of strain he put on his brain to tell his magical circulatory system to push more and more magic into his 400-foot giant. Some of the Buddha's arms were destroyed in the process, but other arms that moved to take their predecessors' places. In the end, the attacks were forced back and shoved against the faces of their users. The 5 members of the 9 were slammed into the ground as their attacks were used in a manner that Kurama compared to Naruto using a Rasengan. And it hurt. Hashirama then looked up at the sky and his feline features became more pronounced as he grinned like a certain feline from Wonderland. About time, he stated. The Biju Exceed shook their heads, groaning in pain as they shakily climbed back to their feet. Their eyes widened when they felt the massive concentration of magic energy in the sky and they watched in horror as the clouds above swirled and twisted. The sky was literally split open and a massive vortex hovered over their heads. No, Kurama howled with defiance as he dug his claws into the dirt. However, his and his siblings' attempts at resistance were futile as the powerful suction of the anima drew them in. It didn't help that Hashirama's wooden Buddha helped by pulling them along as he too was carried up into the rip in space-time. Time to go home. With that, the 5 Biju Exceed were pulled into the anima alongside their adversary before it closed shut.